This man is the top-ranked player on the server, a celebrated hero in the game who possesses absolute power, immense wealth, and no shortage of beautiful women. However, his reality is a pathetic contrast, as he took out a high-interest loan of 1 billion won just to purchase a virtual reality gaming rig, and his job writing game guides barely brings in any income. One must remember he was once a genius with an IQ of 200 who stood at the pinnacle of glory, but his life has plummeted from grace, proving that addiction truly leads to ruin. Today, he continues his journey as a hero, but upon logging in, a young girl suddenly appears before him and claims to be the game's administrator. Her name is Aquila, and though he initially thinks she is talking nonsense, she snaps her fingers and causes every character to instantly freeze in place. Jiagu feels a sense of dread, realizing she might be telling the truth as she begins to inform him about a new event celebrating the game's 7th anniversary. Open world has been initiated, and by becoming the first to clear it with a new character, he might finally discover the game's true conclusion. He is frustrated since he hasn't even finished the game with his current character, but his eyes light up with passion the moment he hears about the 25 billion won prize. Aquila transfers 30 million won directly into his account, making Jiagu scream with joy, oblivious to the fact that he is the top donor with over 500 million ZU as he accepts the quest. She suddenly sprouts massive wings and uses her power to tear through space and time, transporting them to another planet where a wooden door stands before them. Aquila points to it and explains it is the gateway to the new world, so he steps forward without hesitation, reminding her not to forget the reward because he is certain of his victory. Just as he crosses the threshold, she announces that dying in the game means dying in the real world, making him realize he has been cruelly tricked. Following a desperate cry, Jiagu crashes into the starting forest and struggles to stand, wondering if the pain he feels means the girl was telling the truth. He screams in rage, vowing to get back at that little girl, just as the system interface displays a notification titled The Ancient Golden Savior of Humanity, and the game begins. After his sudden fall into the woods, Jiagu is forced to travel on foot, and by midday, his entire body has begun to tremble with exhaustion. He uses a wooden staff for support, his face visibly gaunt as he grinds his teeth in anger, parched and cursing that wretched girl, Aquila. When he checks his status window and sees his current attributes, the resentment burning within his heart only intensifies. He is furious that she assigned him such a garbage character with only 20 health points and 3 mana, leaving his eyes bloodshot with rage. He is already dehydrated after only half a day, and wonders how he can reach the happy ending with such a weak character when he suddenly hears the sound of water in the distance. Jiagu immediately senses it and turns around to discover a stream with water so clear he can see the bottom, causing him to weep with relief. He feels fortunate to have read a survival guide by Bear Grylls, and despite his anger at Aquila, thanks the heavens for the game's realism before leaning down to drink greedily. Suddenly, another noise echoes nearby, and as a young woman appears, Jiagu catches the sound and looks up. He raises his eyes to see what is happening, and is stunned to find a young woman wrapped in a bath towel standing right before him. The young woman has an incredibly beautiful figure, and as the stunning sight unfolds before Jiagu, he unknowingly begins to suffer a nosebleed. Water spills from his mouth like a waterfall as the system notifies him of his excitement and blood loss, while he wonders who this girl is as she continues to bathe unbothered. Jiagu is completely entranced by her, failing to notice his surroundings until a display screen appears, asking him to pay to unlock the DLC. Enraged, Jiagu screams, asking why a VIP like him has to pay for DLC when he assumed he was playing the full version of the game. At that moment, a group of 4 mages approaches him from behind, and one of them tells him that he needs to pay if he wants to see what happens next. Without a second thought, Jiagu asks for the price, only to find himself with his hands bound and being tossed roughly onto the dirt. Jiagu grinds his teeth in agony and glares ahead, realizing that the young woman bathing in the stream earlier was actually a mage. So she and those 4 are a group, a contemptuous voice rang out. "Hey there, you naughty brat." Just then, the system warned Yi Gun that he was losing health. She leaned down close to his face and stuck out her tongue mockingly. "If you behave, I might even let you keep your pants." Then she stood up, turned around, and laughed triumphantly. He wasn't the only one captured. Another man was there as well. The man asked him with concern if he was all right, but Yi Gun ignored his words and gritted his teeth, questioning the witches. "At least tell me how much it is," he said. Hearing this, the other man asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Yi Gun forced a smile and replied, "It's nothing." The man looked at him and introduced himself. "I see. My name is Ruth, and I'm a monster hunter." He politely introduced himself in return. I am Yi Gun. How did you end up here? Ruth recalled the recent events and explained, I was just unlucky. I got lost near the witch's forest while I was chasing my prey. After hearing him, Yi Gun thought to himself that it sounded truly unfortunate. Then, Ruth asked Yi Gun in return, why did you come here? He answered vaguely with some embarrassment, my story is somewhat similar to yours. In his mind, however, he thought, I fell down here and had no other choice. Ruth let out a helpless sigh after hearing that. I don't know what you've been through, but that's quite terrible. You still look so young. Yi Gun happened to spot a sharp object nearby that could cut through the ropes. He smirked and replied, oh, it's fine. Looking toward the group of witches, he confidently continued, this kind of situation is my specialty. Hearing this, Ruth asked him in a whisper, sounding as if he found it hard to believe, do you have a way to get out? Yi Gun didn't respond, but he was absolutely certain. Of course I do. His gaze remained fixed on the group of witches. Because I am the one who wrote the guide on how to defeat these witches. Yi Gun recalled the time he had frantically worked on the game guide section for his company. It took me 3 whole days to finish writing it. They were called the 5 Witches of Havel because they appeared in the Havel Forest. Their names were Gunna, Kanjura, Andada, Fugun, and finally Haijuju. Although they were early game bosses that players were required to defeat, they were famous because thousands of people had died at their hands. A cunning and calculating smile suddenly appeared on Yi Gun's face. If one looked closely, they didn't actually work well together at all. Seeing him lick his lips like a starving man, Ruth felt a bit panicked from behind. Hey, your face! Yi Gun didn't hesitate for another second before speaking up. Now that I think about it, Lady Fugun, are you still alive? Fugun immediately turned her head with a look of astonishment. A system notification arrived. You have provoked Fugun. Yi Gun smiled and continued to stir the pot. I clearly remember Haijuju saying she was going to kill you. I told you to shut up. Hearing his words, Fugun's expression immediately shifted. Wait! She gritted her teeth in fury. Who is going to kill whom? The system announced. You have successfully provoked Fugun. Fugun's status note, hates Haijuju. Yi Gun took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. I definitely heard her say she would kill you to take all your wealth. Behind him, Ruth asked in a low voice. Are you serious? Fugun's rage exploded. Is that true? Haijuju, however, asked her very calmly, do you actually believe him? Yi Gun's expression was extremely tense at that moment. That's not all. Haijuju spread her hand, a glint of greed flashing in her eyes. It's not like you're going to spend all that money anyway. Why don't you give me some of it? The system sent another notification. You have successfully provoked Haijuju. Haijuju's status note covets Fugun's wealth. After reading it, Yi Gun thought to himself, excellent. Standing to the side, Andada clapped her hands happily and said, so that's why Haijuju is making acid bombs. Andada's status note does not understand the atmosphere. Gunna was only concerned about food. Well, whatever, is the food ready yet? Gunna's status note, very gluttonous. Kanjura shouted excitedly, what's this? Is there a fight? I want to fight too. Kanjura's status note, loves to fight. The witches of Havel were thrown into complete chaos by Yi Gun, with each of them saying things that didn't align at all. It was noisier than a rowdy marketplace. Food. So that's why you've been acting so insolent lately? Let go of my hair, you lunatic. Haijuju is always so disrespectful. Fight, fight. The latest system notification appeared. You have successfully provoked the 5 Witches of Havel. Seeing the dog-eat-dog scene unfolding before him, Yi Gun smiled with great amusement. Yes, everything is going exactly according to plan. People might think they coordinate well because of their reputation. But this witch coven has no coordination at all. Everyone is fighting each other without even realizing it. That is exactly how they managed to kill thousands of people. It was a piece of cake to make them fight each other. Seeing that the time was right, Yi Gun turned to Ruti and said, Brother Ruti, we should take this chance to withdraw. He looked at him with admiration and remarked that he was truly impressive. Yi Gun quickly untied them both, but instead of leaving immediately, he began rolling up the carpet. The Hawei witches were standing on it, but his face was filled with anger, as he had clearly devised a scheme in his mind beforehand. Immediately after, he yanked the carpet hard, tossing the entire group of witches into the air. All 5 of them landed squarely inside the boiling pot, screaming in agony. Having finished his revenge, Yi Gun pointed ahead and said with a smile, the exit is over there, Brother Ruti, to which the man looked at him warily and replied, all right, then made a hasty escape as new notifications began to pop up. Andida takes 100 damage, and Haijuju takes 100 damage. In his mind, Yi Gun secretly mocked the Hawei witches, thinking that while they were indeed foolish, they provided a significant amount of EXP. Suddenly, a snake lunged toward him and coiled tightly around Yi Gun's leg to prevent his escape, while the status window flashed a warning. Fu Zhen's snake has ensnared you, and your movement is restricted. Even as she struggled in the pot, she intended to drag him down with her. You cunning human, I won't die alone. Under Fu Zhen's control, the snake began its attack on Yi Gun. and the system issued continuous warnings as he fell into danger. Gun lay on the ground, struggling with the snake while shouting, "Damn it, let me go! Get off!" as he gritted his teeth and cursed inwardly. Blast it, I forgot how incredibly weak this character of mine is. At that critical moment, Ru-Ti turned back to save Gun, saying, "Let me help." He drew his sword and swung it with great force. Ru-Ti's decisive strike severed the head of Fu Zhen's snake, resolving the immediate threat. He turned to him and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Gun, still slightly shaken but composed, replied, "I'm fine, thank you," before asking, "Brother Ru-Ti, may I borrow your bow for a moment?" Hearing this, Ru-Ti looked quite surprised and asked, "You know how to use a bow?" Although he didn't answer, the man handed it over, and the system immediately updated its information. Ru-Ti's bow, attack 15. With a range of 30, Gun drew the bow and aimed directly at the Ha-Wei witches, his voice turning icy cold as he muttered, "Just a little more." He didn't shoot at them, but instead aimed for a large jar on the shelf right above their heads. The jar shattered instantly, causing the group of witches to look up in shock. Zhu was the first to realize the danger, her entire body trembling as she cried, "Wait, this isn't good," while Fu Zhen demanded, What on earth is this?" Zhu screamed in terror, "That's an acid bomb!" And Fu Zhen finally realized the situation and shrieked in panic as the acid began to spill out. The entire group of witches trembled with fear as the acid was about to come into contact with something. A second later, a massive explosion erupted, and bright red flames soared high. The Ha-Wei witch's home was now nothing but ruins, and a piece of debris happened to strike Gun's head. The system notified him, "You have been hit by debris, losing 1 HP, while Ru-Ti stood beside him, muttering anxiously. "Did we take them down?" Gun, with a bump on his head and a dark expression, shouted, "Don't even say that," just as a series of notifications appeared on the display. "You have earned the achievement. Witches are nothing. You have defeated Zhu, a witch of the Ha-Wei forest, and you have defeated Fu Zhen, a witch of the Ha-Wei forest. You have defeated Candu-La, a witch of the Ha-Wei forest. You have defeated Ndai-Da, a witch of the Ha-Wei forest. And you have defeated Gun-Na, a witch of the Ha-Wei forest. You have received a total of 323,760 experience points and 5,000 achievement points." After reading this, Gun shouted, "We took them down!" And Ru-Ti responded with an impressed exclamation, "That's wonderful." Looking at the numbers on the display, Gun couldn't help but feel overjoyed, as this was incredibly lucky for someone at such a low level. "Now I just need to get that item." Ru-Ti, finally remembering his contribution, expressed his gratitude, saying, "I thought I was finished, but you saved me." He took something out that immediately caught Gun's attention. Although it wasn't much, Ru-Ti smiled as he prepared to hand him a small pouch. "Please accept this as a token of my thanks." Almost immediately, the system notification rang out. "You have received a red dragon fruit." Gun's eyes lit up with excitement as this was completely unexpected. "Are you really giving me these? I don't recall this happening in my previous playthrough." Wu explained with a smile that he took those valuable items from the witch's place. But before he could finish, Yu snatched the bag and thanked him. Without hesitation, he poured the entire bag into his mouth, a sudden move that left Wu stunned and unable to react as Yu's muscular strength surged. "You are now a dragon bone possessor with immense power," he thought while devouring the remaining red dragon fruits and watching his stats skyrocket. With strength up by 100, agility by 120, and stamina by 150, he realized this was a stroke of luck an ordinary player could only dream of. Seeing this, Wu simply smiled with intrigue and reached out his hand, asking if he was interested in hunting monsters. However, Yu just stared coldly while chewing vigorously before swallowing everything in one gulp, leaving the older man speechless. After finishing his meal, Yu waved him off and apologized, saying he had work to do, to which Wu remarked on how busy the youth seemed. In response, a realization suddenly dawned on him that this was a golden opportunity, and he quickly began to process the information. Since he lacked a class, his massive hoard of experience would vanish in a month. So as Wu turned to leave, Yu confidently held up 3 fingers and said 3 months. When he asked if 3 months would suffice, Wu scoffed at his arrogance and suggested 3 years instead before they both headed deep into the forest. Dense green foliage obscured the path until they found a suitable spot where Wu leaned casually against a tree and told him to hide anywhere for 30 minutes. That request surprised him, as he realized Wu was using a high-level monster tracking skill from the hunter tree to make such rapid progress. While Wu stayed by the waterfall, Yu hurried off to hide, confident that he could navigate this familiar forest even with his eyes closed as his arm twitched with excitement. Remembering every single branch, He leaped over obstacles with ease, though the thick canopy made it easy for anyone else to lose their way. He navigated through toxic spores and past fierce beasts more dangerous than witches, swinging on vines with the entire layout of the forest etched into his mind. Furthermore, thanks to the red dragon fruits, his stamina was nearly at its peak, leading him to arrogantly believe that he wouldn't be found easily. But a moment later, Jia Yu froze in shock as Wu's intimidating figure suddenly appeared with a playful peekaboo, leaving him utterly bewildered. The man then began his evaluation, giving him 50 points and telling him to try harder, though he added 10 bonus points for his sheer effort. Still reeling from the shock, Jia Yu demanded to know how he had been found, a reaction that only served to further amuse the mentor. Wu rubbed his chin and chuckled, delighted to have found such an entertaining student, before leading the way to their next training location. The system immediately issued a notification that he had completed the Hunter's initiation quest, and updated it with a new one called the Hunter's Trial. A flood of achievements followed, announcing that he had obtained the Monster Hunter class and learned the herbalism skill. He also acquired the intermediate swordsmanship, survival, and musketry skills, all of which were displayed on his interface. Jia Yu watched the system screen with a satisfied smile that gradually twisted into something more cunning and devious. Training proceeded smoothly in the secluded forest, and 3 months later, a surprised Wu asked if he had truly mastered everything already. Jia Yu pointed toward the mountains and challenged his master to hide instead, prompting Wu to stand up and accept, admiring the youth's passion. Before departing, Wu whispered that if he wasn't found within an hour, Jia Yu would have to handle the cooking for dinner that night. Without a hint of fear, he accepted the challenge, and as Wu vanished, Jia Yu's face took on a menacing look of anticipation. Meanwhile, Wu clung to a high cliff face, feeling grateful to have found such a talented disciple in the twilight of his life. He considered lowering the difficulty slightly, but remained confident that hiding on the edge of the abyss would keep him hidden for at least an hour. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Jia Yu grabbed Ru's ankle, causing the startled man to look back and gasp involuntarily. Right at his feet, Jia Yu flashed a demonic grin and shouted peekaboo, leaving Ru stunned. In the next attempt, he was easily found again as Jia Yu remarked, "So you were here." He thought to himself that only 3 months had passed, yet despite his best efforts, he was only left pale with fright as Jia Yu found him again, saying, "So you were here." This left Ru even more bewildered, realizing the boy had already mastered everything. As their game of hide-and-seek continued, it felt like a mere stroll for Jia Yu, who eventually declared, "Found you." Meanwhile, he was in a state of total panic, reflecting that it had taken him 5 years to learn those skills, and the pursuit continued until Ru hid inside a dark cave. Shaking with fear, he told himself there was no way the boy could find him there, especially since a massive creature was sleeping soundly behind him in what was a hellhound's nest. But that hope shattered when Jia Yu spoke up. "Tip number 1 from the human guardian," Jia Yu said as he suddenly appeared from nowhere, startling Ru and noting that even an earthquake wouldn't wake a sleeping hellhound. After thoroughly intimidating Ru, he smugly asked if he had passed, receiving only a stubborn, sweat-drenched look from Ru in response. "Yes," Ru replied, and once they were back outside, he praised him, remarking how incredible it was that he had mastered all those skills in just 3 months. He humbly replied that it was all thanks to his master's guidance, but Ru disagreed, insisting it was due to his own natural talent. In reality, he had already maxed out his 5 consecutive strike skill. When he insisted it was all thanks to his master, Ru burst out laughing and asked, "Is that so?" Jia Yu thought to himself that he had leveled up all his skills, using the massive amount of EXP from the witch hunt, while Ru continued to offer his sincere admiration. "You are truly gifted," Ru said. "You even remembered the monster ecology tips I taught you, though I wonder if I ever actually mentioned hellhounds." He responded with a forced smile, knowing he was the actual author of Monster Ecology, while Ru awkwardly admitted his surprise. "I've never met anyone like you. You're destined for greatness," Ru remarked before curiously asking what his next move would be. When asked if he would pursue the mission he mentioned earlier, Jia Yu bluntly replied that he intended to make money first, as everything begins with capital. That ambition intrigued Ru, who suggested that since he had a close friend working as a mercenary, perhaps he would like to try becoming one himself. Considering the suggestion, he thought it sounded like an appealing offer, as being a mercenary was the most effective way to earn money in the beginning. Jia Yu excitedly reasoned that the job was flexible and free, and with any luck, he might even encounter the guardians of this game. Jia Yu enthusiastically shook Ru's hand and agreed to become a mercenary, to which Ru quickly consented before pulling out a shiny object. "Then take this, my old mercenary badge. My friend will recognize you immediately because of it," Ru said, sincerely wishing him good luck. He vigorously replied, "Yes, Master Ru," and then the two went their separate ways with different goals. Defeating the witch and obtaining this starting class was perfect. Looking at the badge, Yu felt confident that at this pace, even a happy ending was within reach, though a voice asked if he truly didn't want to see the conclusion. Meanwhile, the mysterious Aquila held a wooden block, wondering if it really existed, and if there were still clues leading to the true engine. As he prepared to log out, he reminded himself that not knowing when death might come was the true thrill of this life-and-death game. Yu told himself he had to capitalize on this tension, slapping his own face to bolster his resolve before taking his first confident steps forward. "Wait for me, Aquila. I swear I will reach the true engine," he declared as the system stamped his progress, confirming he had completed the hidden quest, Hunter's Challenge. A new quest was updated. Join the mercenary guild, and the scene shifted back to Aquila, who was laughing uncontrollably. She was so amused that she wiped tears from her eyes, thinking how hilarious it was that he had tricked the witches so perfectly, and she felt glad she had kept an eye on him. Suddenly, a pair of slender legs landed behind her amidst a noble aura as Wanfu-Jia slowly spoke, asking if it was him and noting he was certainly no ordinary person, prompting Aquila to tease him playfully. "What's this? Do you like him?" When Fuga's beautiful face gradually appeared behind her, he gently brushed his hair aside and replied, "Aquila, I am a god. How could I look at a human I'm supposed to protect in such a way?" Hearing this, she giggled and asked, "Why not? He's quite cute." But his stern gaze was the only response to her teasing. Aquila, still cheerful, remarked, "You're always so serious. You used to be much more fun in the past." Setting that aside, he rested his hand on the chair and changed the subject. "That was a long time ago. Anyway, did you really settle all his debts?" She quickly replied, "That was finished ages ago." When Fuga glanced over and questioned her, "So he's still working to pay off a debt without knowing it's already been settled?" Aquila simply laughed. "Exactly," she said, prompting him to exclaim, "You're truly cruel." Nevertheless, Aquila continued to watch the TV with delight. "Why not? It's entertaining, just look at him." On the screen, Yu was chatting with Ruth in a harmonious and lively manner, when Fuga slowly nodded and said, "You really are awful." Her playful voice rang out, "Thank you." Then he brought up another matter. "So, Aquila, is he a part of your plan?" This time when Fuga questioned her with a hint of suspicion, "Or is he just a toy?" In response, Aquila simply crossed her legs and fell into thought for a moment, but she quickly found her answer. "Perhaps he's a promising talent." As she spoke, her eyes glowed pink with excitement. Meanwhile, Yu was on his way to the next location. "Just keep watching." After his arduous journey, Yu collapsed to his knees from exhaustion. "My legs hurt so much." Simultaneously, the system announced, "You are in a state of exhaustion." In his dejection, he couldn't help but complain. "Why is this damn forest so difficult?" Despite that, Yu struggled to stand up. "It's only because of this body that I could make it out of the forest in half a day." It was time to move on. Before him lay a vast capital city and a mercenary group. Yu quickly entered the city and stopped at a tavern, causing a bell to chime. As he stepped inside, Susan walked out with a smile. "Welcome to Francois, the best tavern in Frankfurt." Claire greeted him at the same time, asking, "How can I help you, sir?" The system also updated immediately. "You have entered the Francois Tavern." As for Yu, their beauty left him dazed and confused. "Actually, I'm looking for someone," he stammered. She replied cheerfully, "I understand. First, let me show you to a seat." He then took note of the surrounding atmosphere. It was just as he had expected. A tavern is the best place to gather information. Good wine, happy people, and the fragrant aroma of food. If there's anywhere to find info on mercenaries, it's here. Yu's gaze quickly swept over the young men. People tend to talk more when they're in high spirits. Upon further thought, his face suddenly turned red. Above all, the waitresses were incredibly cute. Caught up in his excitement, Yu curiously said, "This is the place. By the way, do you know someone named Rebest Chat?" As soon as he spoke, the noise in the tavern died down. Beside him, Claire trembled with fear. "Sir, that name is forbidden here." Hearing that, Yu was even more surprised. "Huh, why?" Susan's panicked expression was his only answer. He's very dangerous. My boyfriend was once involved with him." Her subsequent hesitations were even more horrifying. "And he came back looking like a mummy." Susan even went on to say more. "Others here have also suffered because of him." At that moment, the system notified him that the tavern's morale had dropped. Meanwhile, the young men in the tavern said while trembling, "I heard you caught a rat again, didn't you?" "No, I only managed to kill a slime. A rat is still too much for me." Seeing that scene, Yu thought to himself, "Ruth, what on earth did you introduce me to?" But before he could recover, Claire hurriedly pushed him away. "Sir, run, he's coming." The situation left him in utter confusion. "Huh, what?" Suddenly, Yu's face collided with someone's hard muscles. The pain made him groan and clutch his head. "Who is it?" Meanwhile, the person in front of him growled in response. "It's me." Rebest Chat's stern and terrifying face then appeared. "My name is Rebest Chat." In a split second, he spotted the badge on Yu's hip. "Huh." Rebest casually grabbed it. "What is this?" Isn't this Ruth's mercenary badge? Then you must be the one. In return, Ziyu was stunned. When did he? As for Rebest, he suddenly burst into joyful laughter. Excellent. I was looking for a teammate, I mean a companion. However, Ziyu was now terrified. What did you just say? A teammate. That sounds wrong somehow. Ruth, you bastard. In contrast to him, the man flashed a wicked smile. Just kidding, but in that moment, he silently vowed that their next encounter would be the man's end, after which they both relocated outdoors. Ultimately, I became a teammate, or rather, an unwilling companion dragged into the conflict between the Elector and the Pizamut faction. Rebest nodded in satisfaction, praising his quick wit and sharp mind before letting out a loud laugh that made Jew feel suspicious. Even though it feels as if I am being conscripted into some foreign army, this is actually a magnificent opportunity. He carefully calculated his moves, knowing the Elector was one of this game's guardians and a key figure in the pantheist region. Jew stroked his chin with a smile, realizing he could find clues about other guardians through him, just as a loud horn blared nearby. Rebest grabbed his shoulder, remarking that speaking of the devil had made him appear, though that action inadvertently triggered the system. You have been ambushed. HP decreased by 30. A group of armored soldiers then marched past as the Elector's escort, while Rebest vainly claimed he belonged with them as Jew looked on in awe. This situation differs from my expectations since I was once on the opposing side, but he soon spotted Philip in the distance and wondered if that was the Elector. He truly looks like a villain, and the system confirmed he had just seen the Elector, a guardian. Jiu's expression then shifted to pure shock as he realized she was there. Jiu's gaze was fixed on a figure with long, flowing hair who held the reins tightly, a shimmering sword hanging at her side. He recognized her instantly by her appearance, shocked that Dan Wanfuji's was also there, just as Philip slowly turned his gaze toward her and asked in a low voice. He asked if something was wrong, and though Wanfuji seemed momentarily surprised, she quickly lowered her head and denied it, saying it was nothing. Addressing him as Sir, she watched as the army moved away from Jiu toward the impending battle, with Philip softly confirming their destination. Returning to Jiu, he recalled his past memories of her being his companion in previous playthroughs, followed by visions of a violent scene. He had failed to save her in every previous life, and Jiu could only grit his teeth in resignation as the outcome was always the same, until Rebest asked him a question. When asked if something was wrong, he quietly replied that nothing was, though he secretly vowed to succeed this time, even at the cost of his life. With firm resolve, he walked forward, determined to reach an ending where she survived. Their next destination was the mercenary training grounds, where everyone was competing fiercely. The intense atmosphere forced an awkward smile from Jiu, who wondered if this was the Marine Corps, just as Rebest approached and asked if it had begun. The system updated to show he had entered the Rebest Mercenary Corps training grounds, and the man then spoke with a cheerful tone. He explained that they were currently selecting a squad leader through duels, complete with a prize, leading Jiu to observe their combat styles. Despite the display of pride and greed, Jiu remained calm, reminding himself that his goal was to get close to the Elector and that he should stay quiet for now. Meanwhile, Rebest firmly gripped his shoulder and declared that he would be participating as well, thrusting his intimidating face close to his. He insisted that Vut wouldn't have sent anyone who wasn't formidable here, causing Jiu to tremble as he wondered if anyone was going to ask for his opinion. After making his declaration, Rebest shouted to the entire grounds, asking if anyone wanted to test their skills against the newcomer. He was immediately met with excited shouts from the crowd, with many eager to go first, leading to a series of loud arguments among them. Amidst the chaos, he could only offer a helpless smile, unable to even object. Since the feeling was familiar, he decided he needed to establish some influence first. An opponent was quickly selected to face Jiu, and he began with a polite greeting, introducing himself as Mark and saying it was a pleasure to meet him. Simultaneously, the system announced that the mercenary Mark had challenged him to a duel, though the man's next words were laced with contempt. He mocked Jiu's physique, claiming a single blow would break him in half, while Jiu introduced himself as Velasquez Valor and noted how rude the man was being. If I post my photo on Starbiz, I'll get 1,000 likes, he boasted. But the long-winded greetings ended abruptly when Rebs asked if both sides were ready. Following that prompt, both grew serious and took their battle stances. Good, begin! A second after the signal, Mark charged with great speed, but his recklessness resulted in his sword being knocked away. The expressions of the onlookers and Rebs instantly shifted to surprise. While on the battlefield, Mark lay defeated as a notification appeared. You have defeated the mercenary Mark. Reputation plus 15. Cheers erupted everywhere as people wondered how Mark could have fallen after just one blow. Meanwhile, Jiu gave a cold snort, It made sense, as eating the red dragon fruit had given him the strength of an ogre, yet he had no time to rest. A crowd of people immediately swarmed him, shouting, "I need to know what you're using. Fight me." "Me too." Amidst the chaos, he began to sweat profusely from the pressure, asking them to go one at a time. Thus, Ju defeated another opponent using intermediate swordsmanship. Reputation plus 15. The next person was bound tightly by his monster binding technique. Reputation plus 15. Not stopping there, Ju even unleashed a monster headbutt into his opponent's face. Reputation plus 15. After many had failed, a confident voice suddenly rang out, "What is this? You're all embarrassing yourselves in front of a newcomer." The updated status window appears beside the mercenary Sa Ki Luo, who is taunting you as he aggressively approaches to challenge you. In stark contrast to his opponent, Jai Sa is paralyzed with fear, questioning if such a giant could even be human as he frantically opens the settings. Unable to endure any longer, he tries to log out of the game, but the button is unresponsive and he finds himself trapped. Feeling utterly powerless, Jai Yu tiredly raises a finger and pleads with Aquila for just a moment of rest. Instead, he is confronted by Jai Ki Luo's massive frame and stands there helplessly, cursing his terrible luck. He slowly closes his eyes, deciding he must settle this once and for all, before his eyes snap open in the next moment. Determined to finish the fight, his small but strong hand seizes the opponent's wrist and shirt, using the momentum to bring him down with a monster slam. Sa Ki Luo is slammed into the ground with enough force to crack the earth and knock him unconscious, leaving Jai Yu to wonder about the power of that move. Jai Yu pants heavily after his victory, gaining 30 reputation while Bu Lai Qi and Lai Bei Si watch in amazement at the captain's new recruit. Bu Lai Si and Ken rush over in disbelief, calling him a monster for being so powerful despite his scrawny appearance. They boisterously grab Jai Yu's shoulders and demand a match, but he is exhausted and just wants to be left alone. Suddenly, Lai Bei Si appears with a fierce aura and orders everyone to move aside, which briefly makes Jai Yu feel relieved. He is touched, thinking the man is showing concern because he is Wu Shao's disciple, but his joy is short-lived when the man points at him. The man appoints him as the squad leader for the upcoming battle, causing Jai Yu's entire body to freeze in shock as he hears the words "Valor State Valor." Jai Yu is unable to say a word before being thrust onto the battlefield among the muscular warriors. He leads the way with a knife in hand, as a notification confirms the completion of the hidden quest to join the mercenary group. A new quest to reclaim Halfham Hill is updated, while the battlefield is filled with soldiers and obscured by thick smoke and dust. Lai Bei Si waits for the perfect moment to order a charge, prompting the human army to roar and raise their weapons high. Their sharp spears are aimed at the orcs to encircle them, while Jai Yu has already taken down an enemy with his dagger. He tells himself they are currently fighting on the same side as the front line, as his mind flashes back to Lai Bei Si's strategy meeting. They were facing the Demon King's goblin army from the Pai Za Mu Ti faction, and Lai Bei Si had clenched his fist with determination. He explained that their simple mission was to capture the enemy commander's flag once the main force broke the enemy's formation. The plan was to exploit any gaps to collapse the enemy lines, though he warned that these goblin warriors were incredibly proud. He noted their strength and superior coordination before pointing directly at Jai Yu to lead the charge with the cry of "Valor State Valor." Now Jai Yu finds himself facing 2 orcs alone, tasked with holding them back in his role as the squad leader. He evades a barrage of spears that tear his clothes but fail to hit him, lunging forward while questioning his unwanted leadership role. He instantly destroys their weapons and frustratedly declares that his only intention was something else entirely. He had only planned to gain some merit and escape, just as Delay Qi arrives with news that their spearmen are being routed. Ding refuses to believe his volunteer spearmen could be defeated and roughly seizes the binoculars to see for himself. As Ding observes the distant battle, he is overcome with shock at the unfolding situation. "What on earth is that? DU's soldiers on this side are fighting like madmen. Crush them all!" Ding shouted, sweat pouring down his face as their abnormal fervor terrified him. In a state of panic, he barked out a desperate command. "Form ranks, line up the rifles and fire." You and your comrades quickly raised your shields as the durability dropped by 10, leaving it at 220 out of 230. You even felt a sense of smugness. Those rifles were far too weak. Do you even know what a K2 is? Without a rapid-fire mode, those rifles had to be fired in alternating rows. Meanwhile, the enemy's formation shifted. As the first row finished firing, the second row prepared to aim, and at that exact moment he was certain the time had come. In the next second, Ji used his shield to single-handedly pin the orcs into a corner, and with the path cleared, the others charged forward effectively, shouting, "Advance and tear them to pieces." Drake stood opposite them, completely stunned. It was impossible that a mere brat had sent everyone flying, and now he was forced to face the overwhelming crowd all by himself. These bastards aren't human, but I absolutely cannot let them seize this, Drake thought, his grip tightening around the wooden staff as the pressure mounted. His flag carried the glorious history of his tribe, yet until his final moment, he remained helpless against the coordinated assault. I will never. A wretched scream followed, quickly drowned out by the team's cheers as they immediately shouted, Team Leader Valor has captured the enemy flag. System also immediately congratulated you. You have successfully seized the military flag. Leadership plus 30, achievement plus 20, G thought to himself with joy. Indeed, if he could just hold out a little longer, the victory would be his. But just as that thought surfaced, it was interrupted by the resounding blast of a horn. Maki, who was standing nearby, suddenly reported in a panic. Leader, there's more bad news. Their forces had been split into two, and their allies were currently retreating. During this, Ju could only gasp, what? While Maki added another warning that the goblin reinforcements had already reached their position. He saw them too and grew even more frantic. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Ju's mind began to spiral into chaos. Victory was within his grasp, so why were they fleeing now? Maki suddenly began to tremble, stammering, Leader, what do we do? Should we just drop the flag and run? But he immediately rejected the idea, snapping, What the hell did you just say? Facing that harsh reaction, he slowly looked around. But there are only 4 of us left now, and we're completely surrounded by the orcs. The hidden boss, General Yuting Ka Lion, appeared with an overwhelming aura. It was over. With bloodshot, murderous eyes and a mouth full of jagged teeth, he slowly began to speak. Brave human warriors, he said, standing directly before them. Surrender and withdraw. These are my proud volunteer soldiers. If you retreat now and leave the flag behind, I will acknowledge your courage and spare your lives. However, Ji suddenly pulled out the flag and threatened, In your dreams, take one more step and your precious flag is going straight into my underwear. Upon hearing that, Ka Lion gnashed his teeth in rage. You dare! Our sacred military flag. You intend to put it in such a filthy place. He responded with a mocking sneer. Did you think war had rules? For the sake of victory, I'll drag your flag through every disgusting place I can find. The system chimed in. You have attempted to threaten Ka Lion. This time, one of the orcs couldn't contain himself and let out a roar. Captain, even he was becoming agitated. What? Damn it! Ka Lion paused for a moment with an unreadable expression before finally issuing a decisive command. All units prepare to fire. The sudden shift in the situation left him stunned. As for Ka Lion, he pointed directly at the target and gave a brief instruction. Fire! As soon as the word left his lips, countless shells rained down upon them. At that moment, the system announced, Your attempt to threaten has failed. Ji was bewildered. In his previous playthroughs, they had never abandoned their beloved flag so easily. In this dire situation, his eyes darted around, and he quickly spotted the mercenaries struggling to hold their ground. Some were holding on while others screamed in terror. Seriously, they even brought out a general? That's cheating. Furthermore, the situation for the other units was no better. With his current reputation and rank, there was no way he could defeat that monster. Jiu's world turned dark as despair set in. What should I do? What can I do now? Suddenly, a memory of him admiring the scenery with his comrades flashed through his mind. Jiu's face had been full of joy as he soaked in the atmosphere. But then, Aquila's mysterious laughter seemed to shatter the very space around him. It was followed by the chilling words she uttered. You would have died in the real world as well. Faced with that brutal reality, Jiu snapped back to his senses in horror. Behind him, Mark urged him on. Leader, you must give the order or we'll be wiped out. Jiu hesitated before a faint smile touched his lips. He suddenly burst into laughter, startling his comrades who wondered if he'd gone mad. Then he roughly snatched the horn away, demanding, Give it to me. Despite the lack of reinforcements, he confidently told the confused man to shut up and watch, then took a deep breath to blow the horn. In the next moment, the horn's sound echoed across the battlefield filled with orcs, leaving Mark completely bewildered by the choice of direction. Leader, our troops aren't even over there, Mark cried out, but Jiu irritably snapped back. I know, damn it, just shut up and cover me. He let out a smirk, thinking to himself, This is it, Aquila. If you have any conscience left, you won't abandon me now, right? Even in this crisis, Jiu shouted boldly about being a VIP just as Kalyan's order for the spearmen to charge rang out, with Drake readying a powerful strike. Drake roared about their eternal enmity as he lunged, leaving Jiu with no choice but to face the lethal spearhead head-on. Suddenly, the tide turned when an arrow struck Drake, followed by the silhouette of a knight leaping through the air as he fell. The surrounding orcs looked up in astonishment at Vanpergiz, whose horse landed gracefully and safely on the ground. Vanpergis pulled the reins tight and encouraged the troops not to lose hope, pointing her sword at the enemy to rally their spirits. "Raise your swords, soldiers," she cried, while Kalyan fiercely declared that no one should interfere in this duel between the Tava. Facing him, Vanpergis calmly drew her blade as the Countess of Niederbayern, accepting the noble duel before whispering softly. "So you appreciate a bit of romance," she said, launching a surprise attack that Kalyan barely parried as Jiu watched their fierce exchange in awe. Incredible, they're perfectly matched, Jiu thought, amazed that Vanpergis was already this powerful so early in her story. As she and Kalyan broke their clash to reset, a look of pure shock suddenly crossed the commander's face. His surprise was justified as Vanpergis leaped directly in front of him, delivering a powerful kick to his head that left him dazed. Kalyan stumbled back, instinctively clutching his injury, and muttered that she was as impressive as expected. He noted that both her swordsmanship and hand-to-hand combat were elite, guessing she belonged to the Vanpergis monastery. He remarked that such a military order suited her, but she coldly replied that she simply served the gods with a devout heart. Her explanation made him smirk, but Vanpergis merely gripped her sword tighter, noting the falling darkness before leaping into the air again. Their blades clashed violently once more, and though Kalyan used his superior strength to gain the upper hand, he left a fatal opening. Vanpergis seized the moment to deliver a precise downward slash, leaving a defeated Kalyan to mutter that it was a good fight before he fell. A heavy silence filled the air before the orcs began to scream in panic, calling for a full retreat now that their commander was down. Jiu stood there in shock, watching the paladin Vanpergis and marveling that she had defeated such a terrifying general with a single decisive blow. As the enemy forces scattered in a frantic retreat, Vanpergis turned her attention toward him. "You must be the leader of these mercenaries," she said politely, adding that she had sensed his bravery from a distance. "My name is Vanpergis," she introduced herself, and Jiu quickly shook her hand, replying, "It is an honor, I am Valosted. It is a pleasure to meet you, Sir Valor," she said warmly, while Jiu felt a deep sense of gratitude as she bowed to him. "If not for you, Lady Vanpergis, we would all be dead," Jiu said, inwardly blaming himself for not being more cautious now that he was no longer a pro. Suddenly, the mercenary troops rushed toward them. As they approached, Moki, holding a flag, said with a smile, "Why do you keep staring at the ground, Lord Waluo?" Then, with a tone of absolute trust, he added, "Take this." Immediately after, a system notification appeared. "The mercenaries' faith in you has increased." Meanwhile, Jai Yu was utterly bewildered. "Am I really getting credit for that?" Stunned, he recalled their life-and-death struggle as bullets rained down against the shields. Images of determined faces enduring the assault flashed by, and he remembered his own unyielding will. Suddenly, Jai Yu began to tremble before bursting into a hearty laugh, his heart filled with joy. He grabbed the flag and shouted, "This banner of victory belongs to me." His outburst startled the others, who cried out, "Captain, snap out of it." Did the captain get shot in the head? Eventually, the fierce battle ended, and the scene shifted back to the familiar Fang Siua Tavern. However, today a guest burst through the door violently. "Brother!" Ba Dai Ct panted, looking around the room in a panic. Sha Luo T, who was eating greedily, was startled by the commotion. Ba Dai Ct rushed over and asked, "Did you go to battle again? Are you hurt?" He replied awkwardly, "I'm fine, Ba." Jai Yu, watching from the side, wondered who the girl was and if she was his daughter. Rui Bei Ct immediately shook his head at the thought. "Don't be ridiculous, Zia Li is only 15. He firmly denied it, yet the man's insistence left him utterly shocked. "That is Ba Dai Ct, Sha Ki Li's younger sister." Suddenly, she grabbed Jai Yu's shirt and yelled, "My brother ended up like this because of you. Pay for his medical bills." Sha Ki Luo T tried to intervene, but Ba Dai Ct snapped, "Brother, stay out of this." At that moment, a system prompt appeared. "You have entered a state of confusion." Rui Bei Ct, sitting at the same table, calmly ordered, "I'll have another serving of this." Su Shan replied softly, "Ba, that's enough." Sha Ki Luo T finally explained hesitantly, "Stop it, Ba. It's thanks to Captain Waluo that I returned safely." Hearing this, she paused and asked, "What did you say?" Others in the tavern chimed in, "That's right. Without the captain, we would have been the main course at a goblin feast. We're only alive because of him. Hurrah for Waluo." The joyful cheers continued. "Long live Waluo." Jai Yu grew increasingly embarrassed, muttering, "Just eat your food, you brats. This is so humiliating." They teased him further, shouting, "Look, Captain Waluo is blushing. You're so cute, Captain." Amidst the lively atmosphere, Banpei Jai Si appeared at the tavern again and called out, "Waluo Ct Waluo." Still grinning, he instinctively turned toward her. Jai Yu's tone turned to surprise at her hurried appearance. "Countess Fan Pei Jai Si." A while later, the two were walking through the Ha Mu garrison as she explained the situation. "Your Highness, the Elector wishes to see you. He likely intends to reward you for your achievements in battle." He nodded in understanding, then blinked. "I see. Wait, what?" Noticing his lukewarm reaction, she asked, "Isn't that something to be happy about? It's the highest honor a mercenary can receive." Still, he thought to himself, why does this feel strange? Isn't she a bit too excited? Then Jiayu remarked, "It seems the Countess is even happier than I am." She suddenly requested, "Please call me Fan Page IC, just Fan Page IC, not Countess." Jiayu readily agreed. "Oh, all right, Fan Page IC." Fan Page IC gestured to their surroundings and said, "Look, Lord Waluo, if not for your courage, all those people would have perished. Those soldiers owe you their lives." Her sincere words stunned him as she continued, "They are also citizens of this empire. You saved every single one of them. Do you really need another reason to be happy?" Suddenly, a familiar memory flooded back to him. Indeed, back then, only Fan Page IC had stood up and reached out to protect him. With her bright smile, she hadn't changed at all. He gradually accepted the truth. The only thing that had changed was their relationship, as he was now merely a mercenary. Soon, they stopped before a secluded tent. She stepped inside to announce their arrival. "Your Highness, I have brought Waluo CT Waluo," a voice from within echoed back. "Very well, excellent work." As Jiayu looked closer, a shimmering gemstone caught his eye. Philip and his aides were already waiting at the desk. "So you are the one they call Valor? It is a pleasure to meet you. I am the Iron Elector." He spoke his name with a deliberate air of mystery, met by Jiayu's cautious response. "It is a great honor to meet your Highness. So this is the renowned warrior." Just standing near him felt oppressive, but then Philip spoke up cheerfully. "Valor the Mower." Praise continued to flow from his lips. "Your bravery truly impresses me. You fight as fiercely as a lion." Hearing this, Jiayu immediately showed humility. "You flatter me, your Highness." However, he still gave a cunning smirk. "Not at all. Those who distinguish themselves on the battlefield must be rewarded. For your comrades, I grant 100 florins. And for you, 300 florins." Upon hearing of such generous treatment, he bowed at once. "I shall never forget the favor your Highness has bestowed." Philip was quite pleased. "Good, is there anything else you require?" His tone was somewhat hesitant as he replied, "There is one matter I wish to ask." He readily agreed, "Speak." Then he spoke plainly, "I wish to reunite with my comrades in Wittenbox." After hearing the request, Philip complied. "Wittenbox, that is quite deep behind the lines, but I permit it. I will have a carriage prepared for your use." Jiayu replied cautiously, "Thank you, sir." Then he paused briefly before asking further, "Is there anything else?" Jiayu did not speak immediately, thinking he should have stopped there. Slowly, his golden eyes glanced to the side. Juan Peiji, who was standing there, gave a faint smile of encouragement. Thanks to that, Jiayu felt emboldened and smiled back. Now the attendants and Philip were all watching him. "Your Highness, I have a question." Philip responded with excitement, as if he had been waiting for this. "What is it?" Despite his lingering hesitation, Jiayu spoke up. "What are your thoughts on this war?" The atmosphere turned solemn. Philip rested his chin on his hand in thought. Juan Peiji stood stiffly, her cheeks flushed red with sweat. Jiayu forced a smile, sensing everyone's awkwardness. It made sense, as he was still just a lowly mercenary. His face darkened as he looked down and asked, "Then what do you think?" He looked back directly without fear. "From my limited perspective, though I cannot see the whole picture, there is one thing that concerns me." Just then, Friedrich interrupted. "Oh, what absurdity is worrying you? Do not think you are qualified to advise the elector just because of a single achievement." Those discussing strategy joined in the mockery. "Indeed, sir, he likely just picked up some scraps of gossip somewhere." Suddenly, a gentle voice spoke up. "Sir," Juan Peiji finally joined the discussion. "It would not hurt to listen for a moment. Why not hear what he has to say?" Friedrich openly showed his displeasure. "A lowly countess dares to speak in front of the elector?" She ignored him, silently listening as Philip intervened. "Uncle, she is the daughter of the elector of Bayan. Show some respect." Jiayu watched the scene unfold, thinking, as expected of Juan Peiji. Even the Iron Elector could not ignore her. He resumed his arrogant posture. "Fine, go on." Hearing the prompt from Philip, "Tell me, how do you view this war?" He broke into a cold sweat. Jiayu slowly took a very deep breath. His words left both Friedrich and Philip stunned. "There is an ambush, sir." He muttered the word ambush under his breath. "What is your basis for this?" Jiayu bowed and replied calmly, "Yes, the primary strategies of Demon King Pizamut always revolve around ambushes and betrayals." Images of monster swarms ravaging towns appeared. Even Anhin had not found it easy to defeat them. Based on the war with the Kingdom of Toa 10 years ago, the sinister smile of Pizamut flickered, and the battle with Marquis Anhin 6 years ago. We can see that ambush tactics played a decisive role in both battles. His gaze sharpened as Philip's group listened intently. "We must also not underestimate the other tactic, betrayal," he slowly concluded. "Are you saying?" Philip spoke without expression. "Are you suggesting there is a traitor among us now?" Jiayu was not entirely certain. "I am merely presenting the possibility." He smirked with satisfaction at those words. "One can never be too careful." Philip crossed his legs and continued, "Indeed, caution." He suddenly leaned forward in anger. You have quite the nerve. Wan Peiji and Jai Yu felt an immense pressure. Listen closely. The only reason your head is still on your shoulders is because I allow it. Do you understand? Know your place. She urgently tried to speak, but he cut her off. I understand. Wan Peiji watched Jai Yu as he bowed beside her. She bit her lip nervously as he stood to accept the blame. Please forgive me for overstepping, Jiu said as he turned to leave. I shall take my leave then. He walked away with suspicion, thinking that the man was indeed questionable. In his previous attempts, the Steel Elector had been much more cautious, but this time he was far too arrogant, Jiu thought as he gazed into the distance. Indeed, something was clearly different this time, and he began connecting seemingly unrelated events, starting with the unusually early appearance of the Red Dragons. Then there was Van Pergis, who shouldn't have appeared yet. Everything was different from his hundreds of previous attempts, Jiu thought, accidentally speaking aloud. A voice suddenly called out to him, Lord Valor. He instinctively turned around to see Van Pergis drenched in sweat and panting, yet she looked happy. I've finally caught up to you, she said. Before Jiu could understand what was happening, the knight Van Pergis quickly spoke up. You certainly move fast, she remarked. He took a guess and asked if she had run all this way out of concern for him, and she replied innocently. Of course, she said. Jiu felt a bit happy, thinking how cute she was as she stepped forward to apologize for her superior, Elector Philip. I apologize for his words and actions. If there is anything else you desire, I will make it happen, Van Pergis declared, telling him to just say the word. His eyes gleamed as he began to have mischievous thoughts about getting whatever he wanted, and Jiu's imagination began to run wild with various scenarios. Aren't you being a bit too confident? What if I ask for something outrageous? He asked, but she remained steadfast. Don't underestimate me. My family is one of the wealthiest in the empire, she replied. He grew more excited, thinking that money would not be an issue. In that case, you must have plenty of clothes, right? Jiu paused and smirked meaningfully as he decided he wanted a writing brush and a pistol. Is that all, Valor? Van Pergis asked in astonishment, stepping closer to remind him that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's fine, Knight Van Pergis, he said. She hesitated, but then tears suddenly began to stream down Jiu's face as he claimed his dream was to be a cavalryman. I wanted to use this chance to learn to ride, and the pistol is also part of my dream. Van Pergis ruined the mood by asking why he was crying. These are the tears of a man, he declared. She marveled at how he lived for others, while Jiu clenched his fists and tried to stay composed. I have given up so many things, Knight Van Pergis, he said. She readily agreed, saying this wasn't the place for heart-to-heart talks before pulling him away. Jiu silently watched the smiling girl as he followed her, his cheeks flushing red as he remained speechless. Some time passed after that. Two opposing sides faced off on a vast field for the battle to reclaim Halfham Hill, where Elector Stein Philip confronted the Demon King Pizimut. Philip boldly declared he would finish Pizimut today, while the Demon King disgustedly covered his nose and asked if someone could shut him up. His breath is so foul I can smell it from here, Pizimut complained, as Vincent stepped forward to report that everything was ready for the battle. Vincent asked his master if he really intended to use Haya, to which Pizimut replied impatiently, asking why he was bringing that up again. Vincent stammered as he recalled his trauma, noting that she was too cruel and that the Elector would be a valuable hostage if captured. If we give him to that madwoman, Vincent started, but Pizimut said he would handle her himself just as his ring began to glow, signaling her arrival. A familiar voice rang out, It's me. Greetings, my lord. A dark figure with a fluttering cloak stepped across the backs of the subordinates and announced she was ready, prompting Pizimut to tell her to be careful. Yes, she replied curtly. Pizimut hesitated and then asked if she could try to be a bit more gentle, causing Haya to shift her weight. What, I'm never rough, she claimed. He shouted back that she was always rough, but she just laughed playfully and turned around. Haya's expression changed instantly as she claimed to be gentle, her eyes gleaming with delight as a sense of unease filled Pizimut's side. She always says she's gentle, Vincent muttered before screaming for his lord as the scene shifted to Jiu galloping through the night. He couldn't believe the speed of the horse named Philly, and as he looked at the black steed, he was filled with amazement. Jiu marveled that this was only a spare horse, noting the style of a Bavarian noble as a system window appeared offering a full recovery potion for 1,000 florins. He looked at the vial and smirked. She even gave me this red clay medicine. A single bottle costs 1,000 florins, which is as much as a whole building. Suddenly, from right behind, a massive explosion rocked Jiu's position, and he instantly grasped the situation. Damn it, it's already begun. I have to hurry. Recalling Philip's smug expression made Jiu uneasy, as that arrogant Steel Elector stood no chance of winning this battle. He will surely charge and completely unprepared, and it is highly likely that he will be severely wounded on the battlefield, unable to stand. Friedrich had betrayed him to join Pizamut, and they laughed together as cold, murderous eyes stared at Philip, who was kneeling before them. Just as Jew predicted, he was being utterly crushed, and his voice trembled in disbelief as he asked, "Do you still not realize your situation? Uncle, why did you betray me like this?" He stroked his chin judgmentally. "And you still dare call yourself a knight of the Empire?" Friedrich then revealed the full truth of the matter. "Listen closely. Philip, you are currently committing treason against the Emperor. Pizamut and I have joined forces, and we are arresting you for your betrayal." He stepped close to Philip in a provocative manner. "How does this feel?" Friedrich's face twisted with a despicable expression. "Can you feel it now?" He remained in a state of shock and confusion. What on earth? Who could believe such nonsense? A moment later, Philip was kicked in the face. "Do you think you're still a 12-year-old child? Stop your delusions and open your eyes to see exactly what is happening in front of you." Pizamut leaned down with a faint sneer. "You truly are an incurable fool." He snapped his fingers and ordered, "You lot bind him at once." "Yes, sir." The subordinates rushed to obey. Terrified, he backed away. "Don't touch me." Philip's face turned pale as he trembled. I am a noble elector, you fools." Pizamut was irritably giving orders, unaware of Van Pergis appearing from above. "Hey, gag him, he's too noisy." She delivered a powerful kick to the man's face. Van Pergis landed safely while Pizamut gnashed his teeth in pain. She urgently commanded, "Take this chance to escort His Highness away immediately." The soldiers behind her replied, "Yes, understood." In the canyon behind them, more figures appeared, galloping toward them. "Pizamut, at this rate, Philip is going to escape." He barked back furiously, "Shut up. You're giving me a headache." Pizamut sent a transmission. "Hedja, he's heading your way." Her voice sounded as if she were thoroughly enjoying herself. "What, so soon?" he asked, wondering why she hadn't acted yet. Hedja was using people as a chair while gazing at the night sky. "I'm just having a little fun." Pizamut repeatedly warned her uneasily. "I'm telling you, stop playing games, damn it." He began the operation in earnest. "Start the campaign for me now," she replied. "As you wish, my lord." Hedja smiled brightly and mischievously like a beautiful demon. All right, it's time to eat, my good little ones." Hedja summoned a pack of carnivorous beasts and set Philip as their target. "You all must be very hungry, aren't you? Go and tear him apart to your heart's content." They sprinted through the forest along the same path where they encountered Jew. He fired a single shot, easily taking one down. Hugh glanced to the side and thought to himself, "I knew it. Undead hounds." Looking at the drooling dogs, he immediately understood the plan. She was using these creatures to exhaust her opponents before slowly finishing them off. Suddenly, a beast lunged at Jew from behind to attack. He swung his arm in a contemptuous counterattack. What a disgusting tactic! With Jew's weapon, he easily sliced it in two. "I know your dirty tricks all too well, Hedja." According to his calculations, there were almost none left here. The rest must have gone to pursue Philip. Jew rode his horse, his mind filled with concern for the battlefield. "I don't care about that bastard. The one who matters is Van Pergis." Jew spurred his horse to a gallop, rushing forward. "I have to hurry, deep within the forest." The undead hounds had caught Philip's scent and ran ahead to intercept him. Philip ignored everything, determined to gallop forward as his face turned pale with fear. His internal mana wasn't functioning normally. Could this be Pizamut's doing? With no other choice, Philip was forced to stop his horse. That absolute bastard! While he was distracted, an undead hound lunged with its tongue lolling out. "Your Highness, watch out!" Philip couldn't react in time and could only stare wide-eyed. Van Pergis reacted swiftly, rushing forward to slice the dog in half and save him. Despite the horse's high speed, she bravely stood up and with a series of fluid movements, transferred herself to the horse beside Philip. "You all right?" Van Pergis asked, maintaining a high state of alert. "This is uncharted territory where no one has set foot. We must remain extremely vigilant." He stammered, "I understand, Van Pergis." Philip then noticed a desperate cry from behind. "Your Highness!" The female knight accompanying them was surrounded by the pack of hounds. "Please, help me." He stood there dazed, his face turning pale at the sound of the agonizing screams. "Your Highness!" Juan Pagesy shouted, trying to steady his nerves. "Please try to hold on a little longer." "I'm coming." Philippou suddenly interrupted. He shouted her name, "Juan Pagesy." Philippou trembled all over as he forced a smile. "Just leave that girl behind." She cried out in disbelief. "What do you mean, that girl, Your Highness?" He decisively spurred his horse and rode away. "Isn't it perfectly clear? That girl's life and mine are not on the same level at all." Juan Pagesy fell into a state of mental turmoil. Was this truly the responsibility of a ruler? Gritting her teeth in self-reproach, Van Pagesy thought back to the scenes in the barracks, wishing she had listened at the time. If she had heeded Hua Luo's advice then, instead of Philip's arrogance, a solution might have been found. She vividly recalled that face. It was all because they had ignored it that day. Suddenly, a rope tightened around Van Pagesy's neck, cutting off her thoughts as a voice mocked how pathetic they looked. Hia was there, ruthlessly overpowering her. Van Pagesy reached out in desperation, crying for His Highness with wide, panicked eyes. Fan Pagesy stared in shock at the man before her. Philip, drenched in sweat, glanced back but ultimately chose to turn away, leaving her to be dragged off. Unable to keep her footing, Fan Pagesy collapsed heavily, her fingers clawing into the dirt as she realized she had trusted the wrong person while he only cared for his own safety. Speechless that such a man was called an elector, Fan Pagesy struggled to stand as Hiya tightened the cord and joined the conversation. "No," she insinuated, touching her lips. "That is exactly what defines a true elector. You agree, don't you, sister?" Chapter 9. Fan Pagesy shouted in indignation, demanding she take it back, for the electors had held the power to choose the empire's next emperor for generations. Each of them was essentially a sovereign within their own domain. As she reaffirmed this, Hiya sighed and turned to issue an order. Her subordinates obeyed immediately as she ordered them to keep trailing Fei Li Pu. Holding her whip, she approached slowly, noting that her captive also possessed elector blood. "Isn't that right?" Hiya asked with a cold gaze, growing more smug as Fan Pagesy remained silent, mockingly asking if she had hit a nerve. Unable to endure it any longer, she lunged at the wretched woman, but Hiya was completely unfazed and easily evaded her. Fan Pagesy was stunned by the miss, and before she could react, Hiya struck her across the back with a painful lash of the whip. Laughing maniacally with triumph, she urged her to scream more, claiming it only made her want to toy with her victim even further. Fan Pagesy lacked the strength to withstand Hiya's assault, finally collapsing onto the floor after another brutal strike. Suddenly feeling fragile, tears streamed down Fan Pagesy's cheeks as she thought that if Hua Luo were there, he would surely find a way to overcome this. Believing she had reached her limit, she saw that Hiya had no intention of stopping, raising her whip once more while saying it wasn't over yet. However, something caught Hiya's attention, her expression turning bewildered as she noticed a strange object nearby, which turned out to be a dog's carcass. While Hiya stood dazed staring at the dead animal, she failed to notice a figure appearing behind her, wondering why a dog's corpse was there. Ziyu unhesitatingly threw a punch directly into her face, sending the startled Hiya sprawling onto the ground as Fan Pagesy turned around, her body trembling. Unable to believe her eyes, Fan Pagesy eventually whispered Hua Luo's name, her face lighting up with uncontrollable joy. Calling him a true hero, Fan Pagesy then collapsed to the ground. Ziyu silently picked her up and prepared to depart. Ignoring Hiya's presence, he walked away while she sat there watching them, realizing he had killed an undead dog. He had circled behind her before she even noticed, proving he was no ordinary man. Ziyu then turned back, holding a firearm. "You're as grotesque as ever, Hiya," he remarked, prompting her confused inquiry if he knew her, though Ziyu's disdainful response told her not to call him brother. Despite the gun pointed at her, Hiya showed no fear, mockingly noting that a firearm certainly had a better range than her whip. Warning him to aim well because her whip was faster than a bullet, she lunged forward as Ziyu unhesitatingly pulled the trigger. Before he could act, her whip had already coiled tightly around Ziyu, surprising him as it constricted around his neck. Hiya laughed like a maniac while pulling the cord, beckoning him closer as Ziyu stood motionless, forced to endure the assault. She slammed her head into his face with all her might, then followed up with a punch to his jaw. Hygia tried to shove Ziyu away, but the fight was far from over. She lashed out with her whip again, shouting that she wasn't finished, but Ziyu nimbly evaded Hygia's strike this time. He charged forward with unwavering resolve. Hygia remained unfazed, laughing mockingly as she asked if he really thought he could close the distance. Despite the relentless barrage of whip strikes, Ziyu dodged every single one perfectly. Hygia's expression twisted into one of disbelief. She couldn't fathom how he dodged everything, given her whip skills were elite even within her unit. As Ziyu drew closer, Hygia vowed to fight to the end, showing no mercy. Suddenly, Ziyu vanished and reappeared behind her. Now it was his turn to smirk. Sensing his presence, Hygia turned around, her body trembling with fear. Ziyu drove his blade into her, a triumphant grin playing on his lips as he taunted her, asking if she was nervous and revealing his specialty in close combat. She shrieked in agony as he slashed her eye. She spread her wings to flee, but his gun was already cocked and loaded. With a thunderous bang, she collapsed onto the ground. Ziyu stared down at the item he had recovered, a bottle of potent antidote. He reviewed the system notification. Effect: completely heals all injuries and ailments. Note: applied directly to the affected area. Reading that it would fully restore the target's condition, Ziyu's hands began to shake. Applied directly to the wound. Realizing he had to apply it beneath her armor, his face flushed deep red. He tried to compose himself, insisting it was merely a medical necessity. He pushed aside any indecent thoughts, telling himself it was strictly professional. At that moment, Ziyu began to drift back into his past memories. His real name, which most had long since forgotten, was Han-du. His father had died of illness when he was a child, and his mother had collapsed from overwork. By 18, he was utterly alone. He recalled a blue-haired man sitting dejectedly on the ground, cursing about being swindled and wondering why he was being hunted. Ziyu showed no interest in the man's plight, dismissively asking if he was a novice and stating he was only there to fulfill his contract. Ziyu, the fixer of Han and Zhonghen, Li Kang approached him with deep gratitude, offering a small token of appreciation. Ziyu stood there counting the cash he had received. After confirming the amount, he questioned the man, noting that this was only a temporary solution. He suggested the man pay off his debts if he had that much money. Sweating profusely, the man explained he had a high-stakes mission that week. Ziyu's face twisted in a look of pure disdain. Li Kang turned pale, trembling as he begged Ziyu not to look at him with such contempt. He claimed the mission would pay 10 million won. Ziyu found himself intrigued by the prospect of such a large sum. Li Kang insisted the mission was vital. Ziyu wondered what kind of game offered such rewards, prompting Li Kang to ask if he'd heard of Protect Humanity. Ziyu reacted with annoyance, calling it nerdy. Li Kang then formally introduced the game, asking again if he was truly unaware of it. Protect Humanity was a massive open-world game with ultimate freedom, featuring beautiful anime girls and world-renowned character designs. With 1 billion players in this VR RPG, those at the top of the rankings could easily earn tens of millions of won. Li Kang mentioned his upcoming mission, but Ziyu remained skeptical that a game could be so lucrative. Li Kang, however, remained entirely confident. He invited Ziyu to try it out, but Ziyu's phone suddenly rang. He declined, saying he was busy and checked his messages. The message said the meeting was canceled because the couple had reconciled. Finding himself with nothing to do, Ziyu decided to log into the game. Standing amidst the strange scenery, he marveled at the advanced technology, surprised that he had actually logged in on a whim. The sky looked incredibly realistic, and the streets and people seemed truly alive. He wondered if this was really just a game as he noticed people by the road. He couldn't help but marvel in his heart at how lifelike they appeared, even noticing their pores. It felt so real until the shopkeeper suddenly shouted, "Are you not going to pay?" the man asked, making Han Yu realize he was too immersed before the man dismissively shoved him aside. "If you have no money, then get lost because I have other customers to serve," the man barked just as a system panel appeared before Han Yu. He saw a balance of 10 florins on the screen and realized it was the local currency, so he decided to save it while apologizing to Cloud. "I'm sorry I don't have any," he said, just as a boy named Dennis appeared looking hungry, though his mother quickly called him away. "Come on, son, let's go," she said, and though the boy was reluctant to leave, Han Yu stepped forward to ask the price of an apple. Cloud quoted a price of 1 florin, so Han Yu bought the apple for Dennis, whose mother bowed repeatedly in deep gratitude. "Thank you for spending your precious money on my son," she said, but Han Yu waved it off, thinking it was only game currency anyway. Dennis was thrilled to receive his favorite treat and thanked him, while the boy's mother spoke up to share some local information. "Even so, 1 florin is enough to buy a whole day's worth of food here," she noted, leaving Han Yu scratching his head in awkward silence. As the pair departed, they expressed their gratitude once more, and Han Yu waved back as the boy promised they would meet again. "Listen to your mother, kid," he said, recalling his own past as a stubborn child who always pestered his mother for fried chicken. Han Yu smiled at the memory and looked around, thinking the game was truly captivating before he began to immerse himself further. He played Protecting Humanity more often to relieve his real-world stress, finding comfort in the affection he received from the people in the game. After completing missions and receiving thanks, he logged in more frequently to vent his real-life frustrations and recharge his spirit before returning to reality. As the exhaustion of his daily life mounted, 5 years passed within the game, and a voice suddenly startled him from his deep thoughts. "So you are the one they call Han Yu," Walpurgis said as she introduced herself, and asked him to help hunt a mad boar in Havad Forest. Han Yu hesitated at the mention of a wild boar, prompting Walpurgis to ask if he was afraid, but he confidently waved her off. "What perfect timing, as I was just thinking of having boar for dinner," he replied, while she challenged him to prove his reputation. Walpurgis was delighted that he defeated the beast in a single strike, though Han Yu couldn't help but criticize her lack of involvement. And you didn't even lift a finger, he noted, but she simply replied that he was so powerful there was no need for her to intervene. When she asked to form a party, a system prompt appeared from the night Walpurgis, but Han Yu suspiciously asked if she just wanted to boss him around. Walpurgis's sharp retort silenced him, and after he admitted his lack of trust, she laughed and told him he was quite an interesting man. She promised to recommend him as an imperial knight if he joined her, and as they teamed up, a voice echoed within a distant castle. Han Yu, she called out as she woke with a flushed face, and he soon found himself with a swollen cheek from her punch while she giggled. The two returned to town to rest at the monastery, but they were met with opposition from a nun despite Walpurgis's best efforts to explain. "What are you saying, Sister Angela? Lord Valor is an honored guest of our monastery," Walpurgis argued, but the nun refused to listen. "We have no other choice because the monastery is currently under an emergency lockdown, so Lord Valor is strictly forbidden from entering," she declared. At an inn near Linfelton, Han Yu lay in his room staring at the empty hallway, frustrated that his plan to obtain the angel's heart was failing. The angel's heart was a sacred S-rank relic that had been preserved within the Walpurgis monastery for centuries, overflowing with divine blessings. It can summon a soul back from the brink of death, essentially serving as a second life. Jia Yu sighed, his heart filled with turmoil. He truly required that item for his upcoming plans. At that moment, Wanpujisi suddenly approached and said, "Lord Hulyu, it is I." Her sudden appearance startled him. "Lady Wanpujisi," she bowed her head with a look of deep regret. "I am truly sorry for making such a distinguished guest stay in this humble place." However, she was surprised to see him hanging upside down. "What are you doing?" Jia Yu gave a concise explanation for his behavior. Wanpujisi lowered her voice and whispered, "Lord Hulyu, this is a grave matter. It is a secret." Knowing her concerns, Jia Yu reassured her, "I swear to keep this secret for the rest of my life." She nodded in agreement. "Yes, I trust you." Wanpujisi took a deep breath to summon her courage. Only then did she speak the truth. "The High Priestess has been corrupted by darkness. But I just spoke with High Priestess Angela. That implies there is a traitor among us." Jia Yu was confused by the news. "Wait, she means the current High Priestess is Magalita." Wanpujisi continued to vent her emotions, unaware of his thoughts. "It must be that bastard Pizimu." Jia Yu felt a throbbing headache. "Unbelievable, she's still alive. Magalita is still alive. Hulyu. I had assumed she was dead all this time, so I never gave her another thought." Wanpujisi noticed his strange behavior. She asked worriedly, "You don't look well, Hulyu." Jia Yu was now deep in thought. She was the most powerful woman in the history of the empire, a living icon of strength who could crush mid-tier demons with ease. It was she who had turned the Wanpujia convent into a formidable army. There was no scenario where they could afford to lose her. Suddenly, Jia Yu stood up, frightening Wanpujisi. She recoiled in fear. "Why so sudden, my lord?" Jia Yu shouted with joy. "You said the High Priestess was attacked by darkness." Wanpujisi nodded to confirm. "Indeed." He could no longer wait and urged her. "We must leave at once, Wanpujisi. I have a deep understanding of the darkness." They headed to the Wanpujia convent headquarters. Elsewhere, someone said, "He claims to be an expert on darkness." The informant confirmed, "Yes, that is correct. Hulyu is a trustworthy man. Iron Faith has a strong background, so why not try trusting him just once, sister?" Vice Priestess Angela looked extremely irritated. "It seems you have disclosed quite a lot to him." Jia Yu could feel it too. The tension in the air was palpable. The sound of a table being slammed made them jump. Angela's expression was dark. "Wanpujisi, you are aware that a traitor is behind this incident. Yet you suggest we place our trust in an outsider." She coldly ordered them out. "This is not worth discussing further. Leave this place immediately." Wanpujisi refused to give up. "But Vice Priestess." Jia Yu cut her off. Wanpujisi turned around and saw his confident, smiling face. Jia Yu spoke. "I heard the High Priestess is in a life-threatening condition." Angela remained hostile. "That is not a matter for an outsider like you to get involved in." However, he did not yield. "Please hear me out. Believe it or not, I have read the 7 holy scriptures." Her body began to shake uncontrollably. You have read it. The scriptures written by Saint Anchuanyuo himself." Jia Yu became even more confident. "So you are familiar with it, sister." The scriptures were said to record every detail of the darkness. The 7 holy scriptures had vanished after the dark army of death was sealed. Angela broke into a cold sweat, her face filled with visible stress. "Incredible. Tell us at once how you know about that. Even mentioning its name invites a curse. It cannot be spoken of lightly." Jia Yu continued to persuade her. "But please trust me. I know every method to counter the darkness." He flashed a confident smile while Wanpujisi stood there in shock. Angela tried to stop her trembling. "Fine. In return, you must never speak a word of this until you die, if you dare reveal even half a word. She gently crushed the object in her hand, while Angela warned that she would bury him in the Lai River. Jai Yu and Wampujisi were now standing among a group of priests. He thought to himself with annoyance, "These muscleheads." She crushed the edge of the table with her bare hands. "And what is this overwhelming smell of sweat? I have never seen Magalita's face, but she must be able to lift at least 2 tons. Wampujisi, standing behind him, noticed something was wrong and asked, "Lord Hualuo, you look quite pale," Jai Yu said, suppressing his own anxiety. "No, I am fine. By the way, Lady Wanpeji, is this physique your ideal form? I long to be like that, but my uncle disagrees, so I am holding back. To be honest, I feel relieved." Before long, they reached a mysterious location. "We have arrived," Angela said, offering a warning. "As you can see, the evil energy here is too thick. If you lose focus, you will easily lose yourself." Jai Yu nodded immediately. "I understand." She turned and gave orders to her subordinates. "Everyone, wait here," and the group responded in unison. "Yes, sister." Upon entering, a powerful darkness surged out, startling him. The high priestess lay unconscious, being eroded by black energy. Jai Yu immediately began instructing Angela. "Use the monastery's sacred relic on the high priestess." Angela gazed thoughtfully at Ma Jayalita, gently stroking her cheek. "So the sacred relic here is the angel's heart, correct? I see you intend to extract the curse from the high priestess, transfer it to another person, and seal it within them." However, Angela felt concerned. But divine power and curses are inherently incompatible. During the transfer process, the high priestess is almost certain to die. Jai Yu nodded, confirming that this was why the angel's heart was indispensable. Such a curse was a death sentence for any cleric, so no one in the monastery could perform the ritual. "Now you have me, a mere mercenary. This means I am the perfect vessel for the curse. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it?" Angela nodded in agreement. "That is true. However, Lord Hualuo, that plan will not work." High Priestess Ma Jayalita left a message. She once recounted these words. "This is my darkness. No one is permitted to sacrifice themselves for me. If that happens, the Empire will lose everything. Furthermore, this is a curse born from darkness." Angela questioned Jai Yu. "Its origins and symptoms are unknown, a mystery shrouded in shadow. Do you truly believe you can survive this?" She walked slowly toward Jai Yu. Angela did not forget to warn him that this curse would haunt him for the rest of his life. Wanpeji, standing nearby, also voiced a warning. "The sister is right, Lord Hualuo." However, Jai Yu ignored them all. "You have no reason to do this. Wanpeji, I will be fine. Angela, I am the best candidate. I know the darkness from the Great Holy War well. Since I am not a cleric, I am not easily attacked by it. And it must be admitted that I am merely an outsider who appeared today." Angela remained silent, waiting for Jai Yu to continue. He spoke with confidence. "To put it bluntly, I am an ideal pawn." She sighed in frustration. Angela was now in a very difficult position. "If the High Priestess wakes up, she will surely tear me to pieces for this." "Sister Angela, just do what you believe is right, Lord Hualuo." At that moment, the system screen displayed information. The angel's heart resurrects the user's soul once after death. Jai Yu took the angel's heart and placed it on his hand. Normally, it would be wiser to save it for later, but this might be the only chance to recruit Ma Jayalita as an ally. Wanpeji was still worried and tried to advise him. "Are you certain you want to do this? It is not too late to—" Her actions were quickly stopped by Angela. "Wanpeji, he is a man, let him decide for himself." Jai Yu then announced, "Preparations are complete. Now the ritual begins." He started chanting strange words that no one could understand. He then gently placed his hand on Ma Jayalita's forehead. Streams of evil energy began transferring into Jai Yu's body. Angela and the others nearby were so shocked their jaws dropped. A spatial rift quickly appeared shortly after. Jai Yu was thus teleported to an unfamiliar place. He observed his surroundings in confusion. "Is this the dark realm? It is as pitch black as an abyss. I cannot tell front from back." Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoed. "I am the one hidden in the deep grave. Who dares to summon me?" Jai Yu also shouted his demand. "My name is Hualuo Ct Zai. Lift the curse that has fallen upon Ma Jayalita." However, the other being only laughed contemptuously upon hearing this. "A mere mortal who cannot even see my form dares to set foot here. You have even lost your own shell." Jai Yu silently observed the other figure. This was his final form. The other being continued, "You are not the one I wish to meet. Get out of my sight." The mysterious figure's scream shook the heavens and earth. The system immediately activated protection mode. Player's soul is protected. At this moment, the mysterious being also began to notice something strange. "Wait, are you immune to soul absorption?" Jai Yu shouted back in anger. "Quiet, break Margaretta's vow and transfer it to me." He didn't yield in the slightest. "Shut up. If you don't tell me who you are, I'll tear out the souls of everyone who ever stood by you." He was stunned upon hearing this. Damn it, using hostages as a threat. Then I'll play dirty too. Ziyu didn't hesitate to reveal. I have already read the 7 holy scriptures. The Gravekeeper King was shocked. What did you say? He continued to mock him with a distorted expression. I made a deal with struggling death and traded for the dog he used to keep. Ziyu's words drove him into a frenzy. You insolent beast! However, he did not stop what he was doing. Right now, he's likely selling copies of the scriptures to other sages for a pittance. Don't you think? If this continues, I might accidentally reveal the color of your underwear. The Gravekeeper King finally agreed. Fine, I will grant your request. Ziyu smirked inwardly. You've walked right into this. But then he added, in exchange, I have a condition. Ziyu replied without hesitation. That's exactly what I was waiting for. He got into a ready stance as a glow of divine light quickly enveloped his body. After an unknown amount of time, he woke up to find himself still at the monastery, the blue ring still on his finger. His body shook with excitement as the system announced he had acquired the S-rank skill, Necromancer, Summon Undead. He had a satisfied yet somewhat creepy smile on his face. Just then, his companion brought him medicine, making him feel awkward for being caught in his own world. She wept with joy, asking if he was insane for being so reckless. She explained that after the ritual he had collapsed, and she was the one who brought him there. She scolded him, telling him never to risk his life like that again, while he just scratched his head in confusion. Clutching her hands in anger, she asked if he knew how worried she was. Valo reached out to comfort her, promising he wouldn't do it again. I promise, he said, his face turning red. Just as things were getting intimate, a loud warning sounded from outside. They both rushed out, panicking and asking if they were under attack, only to see ancient trees snapped and hear a thunderous roar behind them. A voice called out from above, "Oh, you're awake." Holding a massive tree trunk, she continued, I was just warming up while waiting for you to open your eyes. My savior. She formally introduced herself as the high priestess of the Van Pergis monastery. He looked at her power and felt a bit intimidated. She looked small but was incredibly strong. She tossed the trunk aside and shouted her name. Just call me Marie Margareta, as she led a group of people through the tunnel. Ziyu walked in silence, scratching his chin. By now, Philip must have left that deep forest. He recalled the power he had recently obtained. He had finally reached the highest rank of the necromancer system, a motionless warrior. With this strength, he intended to assassinate Philip. As he thought this, Philip's face appeared in Ziyu's mind. However, since the man was a guardian, without the angel's heart, the chances of success were very low. He couldn't afford to be careless until the very end. While he was lost in thought, she suddenly shouted, It's time for an adventure. Seeing Margareta like this, Angela sighed and reminded her, Margareta, please maintain some dignity. She immediately glared back at the older woman. Dignity, Angela? That's the true evil of the nobility. You're just old and always nagging. Angela's face darkened as she trembled. Please don't say that. Ziyu couldn't help but lean in and whisper to the person next to him. Van Pergis, is she always this dramatic? Or is she just naturally this energetic? Van Pergis blushed and stammered as he leaned close. Forgive me, Lord Valo, she has always been like this. Meanwhile, Margareta's eyes were already sparkling. What's this? Are you two flirting in secret? Caught in the act, she panicked. Lady Margareta? Only Ziyu felt helpless inside. Do we really look like that? His gaze shifted toward a large door. That must be the underground vault of Van Pergis. She also quickly approached it. They had arrived before they even realized it. Margareta couldn't hide her excitement as she bragged to Ziyu about their high-grade weapons. Valo, this place is filled with magical artifacts beyond the monastery's imagination. It's perfect for someone cursed like you. He felt a bit awkward at her words. Is that so? Thank you for bringing me here. She took the opportunity to flirt with Ziyu again. Don't mention it. If possible, I'd even like to go on a date with you. Before she could finish, a furious roar from behind interrupted her. Van Pergis, radiating a fiery aura, growled out every syllable of her name. Margareta. Margareta turned pale with fear. How terrifying. Don't worry, someone's going to lose their mind, so I won't do anything. Immediately after, she hugged the door to change the subject. Anyway, let's go inside. I'm so excited. He looked at her expression with a sense of helplessness. Yes, it's a total mess. The door soon swung open, revealing a blinding light. Seeing that glow, Ziyu breathed a sigh of relief. So far, everything was going smoothly. From now on, I'll pick up the pace and then the hunt for Feilapu will begin. The scene shifts to a rooftop under a clear blue sky. Feili panted, her face flushing at the words of the person before her. Feili, what do you think? Does my new gear look cool? He appeared wearing a new set of gear provided by the system, the S-rank Cursed One, which nullified any curses of a lower rank than the equipment itself. With the equipment's skilled dark critical strike, Joe excitedly brandished the dagger in his hand. It's not inferior to anyone's, is it? This was a high-grade weapon the system had rewarded him. It was crafted from the gamma arts of the A-rank monster KK enhancing the user's life-slaying skill. Just as Joe was enjoying its lick on his face, a female voice reached his ears. "Are you leaving already?" Joe looked toward the masked figure in surprise. It was Wanpujisi, who stood with her arms crossed, feigning a complaint. "You're just going to leave without a word? That's a bit sad. How about one last walk together?" Following her suggestion, the two of them soon arrived at a new area. Wanpujisi spoke first to break the silence. "Even though we only met recently, it feels as if we've known each other for a very long time." He replied somewhat curtly, "Is that so?" Meanwhile, she continued to chatter incessantly in Joe's ear. "Perhaps it's because you've helped me so much." Wanpujisi instinctively recalled the time he risked his life to help her during the battle against the 7 Aelyus. The moment Joe appeared in the forest was etched in her heart, as was the final duel with Hija. "You were truly magnificent and reliable back then." He humbly returned the compliment to Wanpujisi. "Your assistance was also invaluable." Wanpujisi thanked him for saying that. After those words, neither of them dared to look at the other to continue the conversation. Finally, she spoke up first. "You don't seem very curious, do you?" Joe glanced away and stammered. "Curious about what?" Wanpujisi chuckled as if she knew him well. "Don't pretend." She touched her helmet as if giving a silent signal. Regarding her true face beneath the visor, Joe could only scratch his face awkwardly. "Ah, your helmet. I assume there must be a reason for it." Wanpujisi suddenly fell silent at his words, so he didn't press further. Then, she gave a soft laugh and began to explain. "I see. Actually, beneath this helmet lies a large scar, the mark of a curse." Wanpujisi's great secret was finally revealed by her own lips. "Even I don't know what kind of curse it is. My uncle tried to hide it at all costs, constantly saying that no one should ever know about it." Joe nodded, slightly moved. "So that's how it is." Hearing that, Wanpujisi continued to speak of the cruel faces in her memories. "That's why people call me the Ugly Knight. It's a nickname given by those who know nothing of my situation." Now, she gathered all her courage to express her feelings to him, worrying. "Could you look at my face?" Wanpujisi reached up to remove her helmet but hesitated. "I feel a bit anxious, but if it's you, I feel like you would be able to see through to my true self." But before she could finish, Joe's cheeks flushed as he stared in a daze. Wanpujisi had no idea how much her sculpted, beautiful face had captivated him. "How do I look, do you think?" "That I am very ugly." Seeing no response, she grew even more embarrassed and covered her face. Only Joe knew how deeply moved he was by her beauty. Wanpujisi clenched her hands slightly and pleaded. "Please say something." Realizing his rudeness, he hurriedly praised her. "I'm sorry, you are truly very beautiful." Hearing this, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Really? That's such a relief." At that moment, Joe still couldn't believe his eyes. Unbelievable, Wanpujisi took off her helmet. Meanwhile, Wanpujisi shyly covered her mouth. Thinking back on it, he remained immersed in her beauty. "I've always looked at Wanpujisi, but I never imagined she looked like this." Wanpujisi, feeling a bit bashful, suddenly cried out. "I have something to give you." Joe was startled and stammered. "What is it?" She quickly pulled out a pendant. "This is a treasure of the Bai Yan family, passed down to me by my uncle." He watched her movements with curiosity. "Why are you giving such a precious item to me?" Wanpujisi took Joe's hand as a confession of her feelings. "This is a token, a proof that I will always be by your side." His heart suddenly skipped a beat as he gazed at the radiant gem. It was so dazzling that Joe could only repeat her words. "A token to remind me that you will always be with me?" He immediately pressed it to his chest as a response. "I will treasure it." Wanpujisi looked up at him with a slight sob, acting coy. "You promise?" Feeling too shy, Joe turned directly to look at Fei. "All right, it's time for me to go." She felt a bit regretful but still offered him her best wishes. "Yes, may luck always be with you." Joe hurriedly extended his hand. "Yes, then please, you go first." Wanpujisi refused, feeling even more embarrassed. No, you go first." They continued to go back and forth like that, while Fei stood to the side looking bored. No, Wanpujisi, you should go first." No, I'm too shy to lead the way." "Oh, come on, it's fine. Wanpujisi, you go first." No. And lo, 10 days ago, the system simultaneously issued a new alert. The hidden bloodline storyline for the Ban electors has been unlocked. Wanpujisi's romance route has been unlocked. Night soon descended amidst the sound of crisp laughter, while Fei felt a bit weary from the constant monologues in his ears. Good grief, what is a man like me supposed to do? He glanced at the system, and thinking of her caused his face to turn bright red. A romantic plot with the rigid Van Perges. At this rate, only the wedding ceremony is missing. While basking in joy, Jia Yu suddenly catches a strange scent. Beneath his horse's hooves, numerous corpses lie scattered about. What is this? Damn it, just when everything was starting to go smoothly. Jia Yu looks at the faces with unclosed eyes and assesses the situation. Judging by the scene, it appears that Philip and Pizamut engaged in a fierce battle. Both men and horses are strewn across the ground in a pathetic state. It seems neither of them has the strength to continue. Without hesitation, he draws his sword on the spot. Pergis Jai delivers a slash and gallops forward, thinking he must search this area. His gaze shifts back toward the familiar system interface. A smile spreads across Jai Yu's lips. How interesting. He tightly grips his sword, which is radiating a dense, murderous aura. Activating the skill. Very quickly, Bai Fan led an army of vampires forward as Jai Yu spoke. Bloody believers become my minions. Summon. Vampire. He turns and loudly commands him. Your first mission is to search this entire area and hunt down Philip. Glory belongs to our Lord. Then Jai Yu points at Anna. She bows respectfully and replies, yes, master. He glances at the corpses with a sinister smile. Collect all the scattered uniforms here. They will be useful. The scene shifts to a gloomy, abandoned house. Philip, following Ding and Zeus, manages to hide in a house before finally daring to breathe heavily. He grows even more furious remembering Friedrich's face. Damn it, I the Steel Elector never expected to see this day. Pizamut, you are unforgivable. Seeing this, Philip's subordinate worriedly hands him a bag. Your Highness, that is for emergencies. However, Philip snatches it back without a hint of gratitude. Give it here. He proceeds to greedily shove the mysterious medicine into his mouth. Outside, Jai Yu wanders about, calling out, Prince Philip, I've come to get you. Prince Philip, it's the mercenary you met before. He even shouts his own name. Valistek Valor. Hearing Jai Yu's voice, Philip brightens up as if he has found a lifeline. Oh, Valor, of course I remember you. However, his subordinate is more alert and advises him. Your Highness, it's dangerous. Let's observe the situation first. That's right. However, Philip slaps Ding across the face. Shut up, you useless fools. He points outside and questions them. While he has come to save me. What on earth are you doing? The two are stunned by Philip's heartless words. Truly a bunch of vermin not worth stepping on. He flashes a devious smile, deciding their fate. They will all be demoted to subordinates of that mercenary after this. As soon as he finishes, the door behind Philip is kicked open. Seeing him, Philip is overjoyed. Valor, I'm here, Valor. Jai Yu calmly leads the vampires to Philip. Your Highness, I missed you. I crossed that deep forest just to get here. Hearing this, he is even more grateful and praises him. Thank you, Valor, and thank you for bringing such reliable reinforcements. His subordinate is still whispering behind him. Your Highness, wait for us. But he doesn't care, looking at Jai Yu with bright eyes. You are the only one I can trust. I will ensure you receive a worthy reward. He smiles brightly and acts polite. Oh, please, there's no need. Immediately, Jai Yu's army charges on command. Blood splatters, leaving Philip stunned. He rubs his head to hide a growing, sinister smile. Because I won't be needing you anymore, Your Highness. Jai Yu leads his men to take the upper hand. Philip holds his sword, not forgetting to provoke him. A mangy dog dares to stand before a tiger's claws. Philip's face turns even uglier with rage. I raised a dog only for it to turn and bite its master. Jai Yu shows no fear, even mocking him enthusiastically. That's right, I'm a filthy dog, and I'm going to bite someone like you, Philip. Philip's blue eyes instantly bulge. His sword is drawn in a flash. With just 2 moves of the Moon Shadow sword technique's first form, the new Moon Slash, Philip decimates nearly the entire vampire horde. As they press forward, he slashes even more violently. Jai Yu watches this scene with a look of disapproval. Indeed, it was useless to only send 1 minion, wasn't it? He glances at the bodies on the ground, unable to hide his disgust. Fighting this way is merely a waste of mana. With that thought, Jai commands the army behind him. Everyone fall back. They respond in unison. Yes, Your Majesty. Watch the scene with smug satisfaction, mocking the death of Jai Yu's lowly subordinate. But the young man retorted that he was nothing like him. Jai Yu circled for a moment before drawing his blade, claiming his heart was as vast as an endless plain, while dodging Philip's debris with a smirk. Philip recoiled with wide eyes as Jai Yu grabbed a nearby wooden fence and hurled it forward, letting the man slash away at it. As Philip shredded the surrounding wood with his sword, Jai Yu blocked the strikes, marveling ironically at the supposed power of a Steel Elector. It was a sword technique he once held dear, appearing elegant and refined on the surface. Yet Jai Yu lowered his head in a moment of silent reflection. Beneath that beauty lay a lethal counterattack. Though Philip was weary, he maintained the dignified posture of a Steel Elector master. Philip paused to negotiate, questioning if Velasquez's valor truly believed he could survive here after committing such a betrayal. Unimpressed, Jai Yu smirked and mentioned his close ties to the convent sisters, prompting Philip to burst into mocking laughter. Philip scoffed at the idea of him having backers, claiming he had no fear of armed religious sects before pivoting his stance once more. A second crescent moon appeared as he unleashed the Moon Shadow sword style's second form, channeling a surge of power into his blade, triple fire. But Philip's eyes soon turned to shock as Jai Yu's small sword blocked his strike. Despite Philip's trembling effort, he couldn't budge him as fear of the golden dog and Pizamut resurfaced. Sensing Philip's weakness, Jia-yu laughed triumphantly and declared the melodrama over before sending him flying with a powerful kick. Philip spat out blood as he fell, while Jia-yu's glowing foot loomed over him, warning that he was the one to truly fear. Clutching his broken body in resentment, Philip hissed that he would have crushed Jia-yu long ago if he were in peak condition. Desperate, he screamed, asking why Jia-yu would kill him despite the favors and admiration he had received, while Jia-yu coldly cracked his neck. "Do you truly not realize your mistakes?" Jia-yu asked coldly, stepping forward to clarify the man's transgressions. First, he noted that Philip had ignored every warning, only to be met with betrayal as he drove his blade into the ground before the man's crotch. Second, he condemned Philip for heartlessly discarding Van Pergis, who had sacrificed so much for his sake, as he raised his blade once more. Third, he asked how many lives had been lost because of him, his expression darkening as a demonic glint appeared in Jia-yu's eyes. "And yet you still dare call yourself an elector," Jia-yu spat, while Philip desperately pleaded for Velasquez's valor to reconsider. Philip wept piteously, claiming everything he did was for the people and asking who would provide for them if he were gone. He spat out vile excuses, arguing that his demise would only serve to delight the other electors. "Won't they just devour this territory once I'm gone?" he ranted, to which Jia-yu calmly replied that he had a point. Jia-yu feigned compassion and offered him a single chance while dangling a precious recovery potion before his eyes. He explained it was a full recovery potion and offered it in exchange for one condition, which the terrified Philip immediately accepted. "What do you want? I'll agree to anything," Philip cried, leaving Jia-yu slightly surprised by his desperate haste. Seizing the moment, Jia-yu ordered him to get on his hands and knees and beg Van Pergis for forgiveness. To save his life, Philip even offered 10,000 florins to the Bayan family as a formal apology for his actions. Satisfied with the offer, Jia-yu handed over the bottle, praising the man's sudden resolve and giving him the entire thing. Philip lunged for it like a starving beast, thanking him before gulping down the rare medicine in a single breath. He dropped down with Jia-yu's glass bottle, watching Philip struggle to keep his mouth shut against the medicine. Jia-yu was thrilled, asking, "Well, how does it taste?" Then he looked at the stains on the floor and explained them, noting it was the venom of the demon-bellied poison dragon. Now, the man was so stunned he began to cry. "You bastard!" Philip muttered, clutching his aching throat as he questioned Jia-yu, "How dare you mock me like this?" He lifted the potion bottle, pretending to cherish it, and asked, "This poison, even a demon king once died from it. I obtained it from the Hara hand." Philip took advantage of Jia-yu's distraction to launch a sneak attack, shouting, "You will die, Valor." However, a dark shadow lunged ahead of him as Penham mercilessly drove a sword through Philip. At that moment, the man cried out, his eyes rolling back. Before he could speak, Philip screamed through a fit of dry heaving. He stared at the other man in shock, asking, "You're Penham? Why are you still alive? Weren't you torn apart by those undead dogs that day?" Penham turned back to give Philip a look of pure loathing as he recalled his own tragic fate. "Yes, I was left to die by you that day, but afterward Lord Valor Stead Valor granted me a second life." He had officially joined Jeyus vampire group, declaring, "I no longer serve you. I serve Lord Valor now." Penham stepped closer to him, adding a few more words. "Because of your arrogance, you have always dragged everyone into danger." He didn't hesitate to press the sword against his former master's throat in a threat, saying, "And now it's time for you to pay for that with your own life." Philip silently watched his own pitiful reflection in the blade, unwilling to accept his fate. Meanwhile, he suddenly received a system notification. "Warning, do you allow Penham to kill the Guardian? Killing a Guardian may affect the game's progress. Continue killing the Guardian." Jia-yu stared at the words with curiosity, wondering if it would disrupt the game, then looked at the man's pathetic, pleading state. His face instinctively contorted at the thought, all because of that bastard. "Forget it, I wouldn't want him even if he were handed to me." Acting on his thought, he waved his hand to give Penham the order and turned away. "Penham, kill him." The man obeyed instantly, replying, "Yes, my lord." With permission granted, Penham raised his sword high. Simultaneously, Jeyu's system flashed a red alert. "Error, error, error, error. The Guardian has been defeated. Error, error." Seconds later, the system reset the program. The hidden scenario, "Kill the Guardian," has been activated. Kill all Guardians to unlock the Transcendent rank. You have interfered with the world's will. The game difficulty has increased. He looked back for a moment and felt a surge of interest. A sudden difficulty spike. A provocative smirk immediately played on Jeyu's lips. He ascended into the sky with a sense of triumph, thinking, You didn't foresee this either, did you? From above, Jeyu's eyes flashed like bright stars. At the same time, the moon shone upon his position. Aquila watched toward the earth like a celestial sailor. Her eyes couldn't help but light up with excitement. Aquila turned on the screen while offering an implicit compliment. Did you really break the seal? Valor is quite the naughty one, isn't he? She chuckled as she watched Jeyu dancing with joy. Look at that smug face. How thrilling. Then Aquila stood up and pressed a button on the remote. Now let's see what you can do. The screen that had just brightened went dark again as she turned away, for everything had only just begun. The system continuously displayed bright notification screens. You have obtained the S-rank skill, Moon Shadow Sword. You have obtained the A-rank skill, Princess in Quran. You have obtained the SS rank skill, Imperial Incitement. You have obtained the SS rank skill, Mephistopheles Performance. You have obtained the skill, SS rank, Majesty of the Great Leader. Ju looked at the white text with excitement. As expected of a high-tier level, the rewards were far too good. 3 SS rank skills, 1 S rank, and 1 A rank. His eyes quickly fixed on the top screen. You have obtained the SS rank skill, Undead Resurrection. Ju was very satisfied with that skill. Above all, he had also received 2 exclusive S-rank skills as level-up rewards. It was perfect, but the system didn't stop and continued to grant more. You have obtained the S-rank skill, Blood Tear Absorption. After acquiring the skills, he focused on the golden pouch in his hand, wondering if this was the only thing that dropped. Ju reached out to open it out of boredom. It looked no different from an ordinary magic drawstring pouch, yet what he touched was a lightning barrier. Ju winced in pain as the barrier scorched his hand, and the system immediately confirmed his suspicion. You have been blocked by a barrier. Ju helplessly put the item away, deciding to ask Margaretha to open it later. But a new notification caught his eye just as he turned to leave. You have obtained the Guardian's Essence. Collecting 5 will allow you to transcend. However, each Guardian's death weakens the seal protecting the world from darkness. Ju processed this new information, a transcendent existence and a world seal, as he began to consider the motionless figures behind him. In other words, I must be extremely cautious when hunting them, he thought, as his mind quickly began to map out a new future. Visions of his comrades flashed through Ju's mind. Would he stay with the other Guardians or forge an entirely different path? While Ju remained silent, Piffin II ran over with an item, shouting, "Master, I found it." He held up a rolled-up parchment and reported, "Just as you suspected, we searched the ruins left by Philip's men and recovered this." Ju's eyes sparkled at the sight of it. "Excellent work," he exclaimed, excitedly unfurling the paper. "This is undoubtedly the primary reward for this quest. Look at how it glows. It's on a completely different level. By the way, Piffin II, have you completed the side task I assigned?" Piffin II bowed with a slight smile. "Yes, master." He then quickly brought the disguised Ding and Zeus before Ju. "As you ordered, we dressed Philip's subordinates in Bizamut uniforms and disguised one of them as a perfect demon." Ju clapped his hands in satisfaction. "Superb, they look fantastic." Elsewhere, a piece of rotting wood snapped in half with a single blow. At that moment, Grau was intimidating a surviving soldier who begged, "Please spare me. I'll do anything you ask." Zeus walked over curiously and asked who the man was, and Piffin II quickly interjected to explain that he was one of Philip's hiding subordinates. "Master, how should we deal with him?" Ju hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, but a brilliant idea soon flashed through his mind. As Loser continued to weep and plead for his life, Ju felt reassured by the man's desperation and let out a mysterious smile. He looked at his clenched fist with excitement. "Dear Bizamut, I hope you enjoy the gift I'm sending you." Meanwhile, at a roadside camp, Lauren, the Royal Guard captain under Jalin, was leading a patrol. Lauren's gaze swept the area before stopping at a specific point, a smirk playing on his lips as he signaled his troops to halt upon seeing bodies on the ground. His subordinate surveyed the scene and remarked, "Sir Lauren, it seems there was a battle with Bizamut forces here." Lauren gave him a dismissive glance and replied, "It seems so," just as another soldier brought a survivor forward. Lauren took one look and gave a quick order. "Very well, handle him with care. I'll need to interrogate him later." The soldier immediately obeyed. "Understood." Inside the camp, as the fire crackled, Lauren rested his chin on his hand and questioned Loser. "So, you're saying that item was stolen?" He could only answer honestly. "Yes," Loser said, clutching his cup sadly. "We were surrounded by Bizamut forces and in a desperate attempt to save Prince Philip." Before he could finish, Lauren cut him off. "So, what you're saying is that you abandoned your comrades to die while you ran away." Loser timidly confirmed the accusation, and Lauren suddenly drove his sword into the ground, causing the man to flinch. Instead of being angry, Lauren looked regretful. He rushed over and shook Loser, saying, "To think you risked your life like that for your superior. You are a model knight." He then pushed Loser toward the crowd and shouted, "Soldiers, listen up. The troops all gathered around Loser as Lauren spoke. This man risked everything to protect his commander. Even in defeat, the knightly spirit remains unshaken. Follow his example and begin the search for Prince Philip immediately. Understood. Sir, Loser could only stammer in confusion. The scene then shifted to the sun-drenched rose palace of Jostin. Sunlight streamed through the glass into Jalen's garden, where Lauren suddenly appeared, interrupting her peaceful moment. Master, it is Lauren. He gritted his teeth as he reported. As you commanded, we pursued the Bizamut forces and found traces of Lord Philip, but he has already escaped. Jalen fell silent for a moment. Is that so? She remarked, stepping into the courtyard while continuing her interrogation. And what about that item? I'm certain Prince Philip was holding on to it. Lauren then hesitantly recounted how those Bizamut bastards had seized it. Jalen's fingers tightened at the mention of the name. Bizamut, that name is becoming increasingly irritating. Sensing he had failed, Lauren took the initiative to admit his fault, saying, "Please forgive me, master. If you wish, you may punish me." Instead of showing anger, she offered Lauren some comfort. There is no need. Right now, that object is of far greater importance. It is the only way to restore Prince Philip to his position as an elector. Unable to contain himself, Lauren slammed his hand against the floor. But the prince back then. Jalen narrowed her eyes slightly, her voice turning cold as she reminded Lauren, "The prince is not someone who dies so easily." She rested her chin on her hand and spoke with indifference. "Go to Bizamut and deliver a message for me. Tell him to hand that item over." Jalen flashed a smile that perfectly captured the essence of the Rose Demon King. Otherwise, things are going to get very unpleasant. The scene shifted to Bizamut dust-covered base, where his expression was twisting with mounting rage. "What did you just say? That madwoman has been resurrected." Vincent tilted his head in confirmation. "That is correct, sir." Upon hearing this, the man grew even more frantic, muttering, "That's impossible." Bizamut turned pale with fear as he recalled Margaretha's eerie face. "That monstrous woman has returned, but my trap was supposed to be flawless." Vincent quickly cut him off. "But back then she was merely a human," Vincent remarked. Bizamut's face turned a sickly shade of purple. "You simply don't understand." His voice couldn't hide his terror as he remembered the time she had faced an uneven battle alone. "I can never forget it. She once stormed his territory by herself and slaughtered every single one of his subordinates." The image of Margaretha strangling and beheading his men was burned into Bizamut's mind. He began to wrap his arms around himself in fear. "Do you have any idea what triggered that massacre?" Vincent couldn't yet empathize with Bizamut and asked, "What was it?" The man immediately envisioned the sight of a crumbled snack before him. One of his subordinates stepped on her snack. With a sharp gaze and a voice he couldn't stop from trembling, Bizamut continued. "Since then, the Demon Kings have all referred to her as Margaretha, the Storm of Destruction." Just as he finished speaking, another demon rushed in frantically. "Master, a message from Demon King Jalen has just arrived." His face went white as he saw the messenger approaching with a letter. "What is it this time?" The demon trembled under Bizamut's gaze as he reported, "I am not entirely sure, sir." He stared at the paper being offered, falling silent and not daring to take it, feeling the timing was wrong. The messenger still insisted on holding it out. Bizamut kept wondering to himself what kind of rage she was flying into now. Despite his fear, Bizamut eventually forced himself to unfold the paper. His eyes widened instantly as he stammered, That woman," he roared in a fit of rage, sounding as if he were on the verge of tears. "That item, why does she think I'm the one holding on to it?" Seeing him screaming in a frenzy, Vincent stepped forward to ask what was wrong, only to freeze in silence. "That madwoman is demanding I hand it over." He slightly covered his mouth, hiding his thoughts as he suddenly remembered Hesha's death. The thought of Margaretha and the white scroll left Vincent feeling deeply unsettled. Why would Jalen assume we have that item? We haven't even managed to get close to it. In fact, we lost track of Hesha while we were pursuing Philip. This is highly suspicious. Margaretha's resurrection and the sudden disappearance of that object. The outcome is clear, but the cause remains a mystery. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Vincent's mind, leaving him stunned. It can't be. Could there be someone pulling the strings behind all of this? The scene shifted to Jiu, who was sneezing repeatedly as if someone were talking about him. He had sneezed so much his jaw felt tight and he was becoming dizzy. Seeing this, Beast asked, "Master, are you ill?" Jiu could only offer a brief reply. "No, my nose is just a bit itchy." Hearing that, Beast didn't press further and got straight to the point. "In any case, what do you plan to do with Philip's corpse?" He thought for a moment before speaking. "What else? I'll eventually turn him into a living corpse to serve us." Beast felt a bit stiff but still agreed with Jiu's words. "Ah, that is indeed a fitting fate for an elector. I look forward to it." He ignored the flattery and held up the paper in his hand. "Put that aside for now. This is what matters most right now," Jiu explained with excitement as he opened it. "The Golden Decree." At that moment, the system provided information regarding the treasure. The Golden Decree, a document bearing the golden seal of the Empire. It serves as proof of an elector's authority. With that confirmation, his heart began to race with excitement as he recalled Philip's face. He never expected to hold both Philip's decree and the Golden Edict. Unconsciously, Jiayu called out to him, and Biffenheim was immediately ready to respond. Yes, master. Yet Jiayu didn't stop there and continued to call for Biffenheim. Without a hint of complaint, he followed Jiayu's lead, repeating, yes, master. That reaction only made his laughter more joyful. Jiayu raised his hand again, repeating his catchphrase, and Biffenheim joined in with a loud laugh. Yes, master. On a rugged path leading deep into the forest, a carriage rolled slowly along, followed by soldiers in light armor. Two soldiers sitting at the front of the carriage chatted and complained until Kai spoke up. The guild master is going to make a fortune this time. Sitting beside him, Wade nodded in agreement. Indeed, with this economic blockade, this is our final opportunity. We have to grab everything we can. As the carriage entered the dark forest road, he chuckled and spoke firmly. When we return, we must drink until we drop. He was incredibly excited, mentioning a perfect spot he knew. But at that moment, two mysterious figures trailed them from the shadows. Kai was about to say something more, but before he could finish, an arrow pierced the back of Wade's neck. He recoiled in shock at the sight. His eyes widened at the sight of the flowing blood. Suddenly, a banner unfurled as a group of black-clad assassins streaked past like lightning, and Zane roared, "Seize everything! Strip them bare!" The soldiers turned pale as they rushed forward. Kai screamed tremulously, "We're under attack! Get your weapons out!" A warrior with cold eyes charged, swinging his sword at his opponent. His comrade was attacked immediately after. The screech of clashing blades filled the air as he struggled to block the man's powerful strike. Zane smirked wickedly and spoke with heavy sarcasm. "Hey, you merchants made a lot of profit, didn't you? That must be what you traded with the soul spirits." Hearing this, Kai growled. Furious, he shouted at the man, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you have any idea where this money was supposed to go?" Without hesitation, Zane lunged forward. Gripping his hilt tightly with a determined gaze, the two clashed in an explosive moment. The man gritted his teeth and retorted, "So what?" He was knocked backward, eyes clamped shut in pain. Kai tried to regain his balance, but a powerful vortex of force swept toward him instantly. Surrounded by the dark forest and the bodies of his comrades, a man approached him with a weapon raised, sneering, "If you have a problem, go cry to Van Pergis." Zane's face was full of murderous intent as he hissed through gritted teeth, "And make sure to bring your master along." The scene shifted abruptly to a brightly lit room. Van Pergis was disinfecting Jiayu's wounds as he groaned softly. She looked at him with concern and commanded, "Stay still." His face flushed red as he winced in pain. "It hurts, Van Pergis." Her eyes were filled with worry, her voice soft yet firm as she said, "Just endure it a little longer, after all. What on earth did you do to get hurt like this?" Suddenly, the door burst open and Margaretha rushed in frantically. Her shout made him tremble as she cried, "Is Jiayu back already?" Both looked toward the source of the noise in confusion. An eerie silence fell over the room. Her golden eyes were wide with bewilderment, and Van Pergis stood frozen. The scene then shifted to a large building. A piercing scream echoed through the air. Van Pergis had finally removed her helmet. A moment later, she refreshed herself by draining a glass of water, looking quite apologetic. Margaretha teased gently, "Van Pergis, are you trying to give an old woman like me a heart attack?" Van Pergis bowed her head and whispered, "I'm sorry, Lady Margaretha." She smiled indulgently, cupping her face as she spoke cheerfully. "Well, I understand. The desire to stop hiding oneself. Isn't that just how a woman feels? Youth is truly wonderful." Hearing that, she hesitated, and Jiayu's face turned just as red. A moment later, Margaretha lunged forward and growled, "Jiayu, you had better take good care of Van Pergis. If you ever dare to make her shed a single tear." She paused abruptly, making him swallow hard. He recoiled and asked, "Then what?" The atmosphere darkened as Margaretha's eyes glowed a menacing red. "I will fold you in half," she threatened. Terrified, Jiayu quickly replied, "Yes, ma'am." Dropping the subject, she sat with her legs crossed and arms folded, questioning him. "By the way, you said Philip is dead." Hearing Margaretha's question, he calmly explained, "Yes, his body is currently with my subordinates." In his memory, Jiayu shouted, "Take him away." The subordinates quickly replied, "Understood, sir." He glanced over, shrugged, and concluded, "I mean my allies are taking care of him." Upon hearing this, she stifled her emotions, her voice trembling as she asked if he was truly dead, while a probing voice questioned the gravity of the matter before the air darkened and Margaretha's eyes glowed with lethal intent. "I really wanted to handle him with my own hands," she declared, her sudden change in temperament causing a voice to stammer while Jiu sat relaxed, his confusion deepening as she spoke. "Regardless, he is dead now, so that is fine," he said with a strained smile. thinking to himself that it might have been better if Philip had perished by his hand. Jiu turned toward her and spoke cheerfully, mentioning he had a gift for her, which immediately piqued Margaretha's interest. "What is it?" he asked calmly, confidently presenting the gold he had salvaged from the remnants of Philip's gang, a revelation that left her quite startled. Jiu pointed to the shimmering pile of gold and assured Margaretha she could buy any snacks she desired, leaving her wide-eyed and stunned. "What did you just say?" Margaretha asked, staring at him and showering him with praise, wondering if Valo was actually some kind of saint. Jiu whispered a question about whether Angela often starved her, while Margaretha's face lit up as if she were witnessing a vision of paradise. "You're actually quite handsome," she exclaimed, prompting him to shout for her to stop just as Wanpujisi arrived, looking puzzled by the scene. She frowned and asked Valo about the pile of papers, to which he glanced over and sheepishly explained they appeared to be letters. She stepped forward to examine the letters as he explained they were exchanges between Philip and Jalin, suggesting Jalin intended to make Philip the emperor. A black and red frame appeared, outlining the majestic figures of a king and a woman, as Jiu noted that the relationship between the current emperor and Jalin had soured over tax disputes, a point Margaretha agreed with, comparing it to the ongoing economic blockade. He frowned at the mention of the economic blockade, while she turned to Jiu with a surprised look, asking if he was truly unaware of it. Amidst the chaos of the hall where many had collapsed, Margaretha explained that the emperor was seizing all goods from guilds linked to Jalin, seizing them all. This had left the local knightly families in a difficult position, and as images of bandits appeared, she continued her explanation. That was the reason the Ritter family attacked the Ignis Guild. Hearing this, he felt a prickle of realization as Margaretha concluded her point. Because of this, our poor Wanpujisi has been under immense mental strain, causing her to cry out, "Margaretha," in worry as her face turned red with embarrassment. Margaretha gave a strained smile and stammered in agreement, while Jiu watched her with a mixture of concern and bewilderment. "Is something the matter?" he asked as she stood behind him holding the papers, while Margaretha softly admitted the truth, her lips pressed together in silence. Wanpujisi, dressed in her habit, looked up and offered a reassuring smile, promising to explain everything to Lady Margaretha in the quiet of the dark room. Darkness filled the room as a soft sigh escaped his lips. Jiu bit his lip, sweat forming on his brow as he realized how complicated things had become. Recalling the image of a wrathful king surrounded by purple lightning, he remarked that he hadn't expected the emperor's economic blockade to escalate into such a massive conflict with the Elector of Bayhan, just as the door opened and a familiar voice called out to Valo. Jiu sighed in relief to see Wanpujisi, who sat at an elegant tea table and spoke to Valo in a steady, cautionary tone. "I hope you will forget everything you heard today," she said, sitting formally with a calm but slightly worried expression. "This matter has nothing to do with you." He looked at Wanpujisi firmly and shook his head, stating he couldn't ignore it if it involved her. "I truly want to help," he said, causing her to pause before she softly thanked him, though her gaze soon turned somber. "But this has become far too significant," Wanpujisi said with a faint, half-joking smile, adding that she would feel terribly guilty if he helped her again. Jiu stood before her and watched her intently with a pensive look, the image of Wanpujisi standing strong in her armor echoing in his mind. Jiu took her hand, thinking to himself that while Fan Pagesi was dependable, her lack of experience and gentle nature were still a concern. Gazing straight ahead, Jiu called her name softly, his expression wearing a tired but genuine smile as he continued. "This matter is indeed quite overwhelming for a mercenary like me," he admitted as Fan Pagesi appeared before him with a look of deep gratitude. Sitting in the large chair, he tilted his head and declared with firm resolve that he still intended to provide his assistance. Iyu's inner voice echoed his desire to become her strength, and he let out a soft, playful chuckle. He joked that even a mercenary could be useful, prompting Fan Pagesi to look up with a faint smile and wonder how he could still be so lighthearted. Iyu's lips curled into a knowing, confident smirk as he leaned forward, his expression turning provocative as he added, "Besides, I have quite a bit of faith in myself." Fan Pagesi tilted her head in skeptical wonder at his confidence, just as a magnificent white cathedral with towering walls came into view. Jiu strode down the stone corridor, the light reflecting off his stern expression as he neared the end of the hallway. Two nuns turned slightly at the sound of his hurried footsteps. Within the vast hall, Jiu dashed forward with ferocious speed. He burst through the door with a loud shout. Inside the warm, brightly lit room, Margaretha looked up in surprise, her face filled with confusion and worry. Jiu tightly gripped a shimmering magic zipper. Out of breath, he explained that it was the same magic zipper Philip once possessed. It contained countless gold coins. As he looked up, Jiu piqued Margaretha's curiosity, asking if she wasn't interested. He held the zipper up defiantly, declaring that if she could open it now, the reward would be doubled. Jiu leaned forward, His voice was provocative as he challenged her to try. Margaretha's bright golden eyes reacted instantly as she shouted with determination, "Make it triple." Standing at a distance, Jiayu looked ahead and exclaimed in surprise, "Wait, what's the deal with that glove?" While Margaretha excitedly hugged the pile of gold, Jiayu stood seriously, listening intently to her words. "This is an upgraded version of the magic zipper I just opened." With a simple flick of the palm, an intense blue light erupted. Jiayu lifted a bottle as Margaretha's voice continued steadily, "Just like this." On a lush forest path, he sat atop his horse, staring down at the bottle in his hand. Jiayu laughed in amazement, wondering if they had snuck in an update before smiling playfully. "Convenient patches are always welcome," he remarked. Suddenly, the horse jerked unexpectedly, splashing water directly into Jiayu's face. He glared at the horse and shouted angrily, "What's gotten into you, filly?" The horse looked back helplessly, gesturing toward the path ahead. Jiayu watched the animal with unease, his expression suddenly freezing. Before him hung a banner that read, "Welcome to the great city of Bluesen." Amidst the dense crowd, Jiayu looked forward and gasped in shock. "What on earth is this?" Under the vast blue sky, stage lights flared as he stepped forward with confidence. "I finally made it inside," he declared. The scene revealed a packed amusement park, and a voice remarked that it felt like waiting 3 hours at Disneyland. The estimated wait time was 3 hours, a fact that caused Jiayu's expression to darken. In the crowded square, a young man held up a red sign. This caused him to pause as the man's voice boomed, "Welcome to the city of the Great Lord." Jiayu continued walking, observing his surroundings. "Whoa, this place is exactly as it used to be," he muttered. In the bustling city, a tavern owner bowed hospitably to welcome him. Beside him, a girl waved cheerfully, inviting him to their tavern. At that moment, a thought crossed his mind. Bluesen was a city where various races lived together, and the great lord they spoke of was the demon king, Kuban. Nearby, a man was showering a lady with compliments about her skin. "It's all thanks to the great lord," she replied happily. Soon after, Kuban appeared with a heroic presence. He had played a major role in cultural unification. Known for his vast knowledge and eloquence, he was considered the friendliest demon king toward humans, second only to Ku. Jiayu watched thoughtfully. He realized Kuban was a vital figure who could assist him. "I must meet him," he thought. His eyes widened as a figure approached and said, "Hello." A goblin stood before him, arms wide. "An adventurer with such an extraordinary aura," the goblin said. Surprised, Jiayu asked, "You know me?" The goblin continued with a hint of irony. "Oh no, but your presence is so powerful that it's impossible to ignore." A skill notification appeared in the air, catching Jiayu's eye. "An extraordinary aura? Is it because of this skill?" he wondered. The goblin chatted amiably, asking if it was his first time in Bluesen as a notification for Majesty of the Great Leader appeared. It was an SS rank skill that boosted charisma and authority as proficiency increased. The thought of being a guardian made him smile inwardly. "Not bad, this might come in handy later," Jiayu thought before replying, "Yes, I've come to see Kuban." Hearing this, the goblin jumped up in excitement. He clenched his fists and cheered. "Oh, as expected of someone so remarkable. Is this what it's like to see great figures drawn to one another?" he shouted as he ran. Unable to hide his excitement, the goblin said he also had business with him and offered to lead the way, leaving Ziyu looking quite perplexed. Inside the massive and majestic Cuban castle, a grand hall appeared with large doors adorned in luxurious golden patterns. The small figure bowed politely to Ziyu, asking him to wait while tea was brought out, to which he smiled and agreed. Suddenly, a skill notification flashed before Ziyu's eyes, startling him as he wondered how that goblin recognized him when he was only at level 1. Seemingly exhausted, he dismissed the thought, muttering that it didn't matter for now as he stood before a statue. He stared at it, wondering if the man was still a narcissist for having artwork based on his own image, when the goblin suddenly appeared behind him to make an announcement. "Your tea has arrived," the goblin said, making Ziyu jump and let out a shout, though the creature only chuckled and bowed in apology for startling him. Still shaken, he told the creature to give him a warning next time, but the goblin simply shrugged and nonchalantly replied that he was, after all, a monster. Once the atmosphere settled, Ziyu sat down and asked directly what brought him there, to which the other replied with a half-joking smile. "I've come to register my marriage to him," the goblin said, blinking before acting dramatically about their sweet relationship, while Ziyu sighed in exasperation from a distance. It was happening again. Ziyu recalled the earlier welcome and thought about how everyone else referred to him as Lord Cuban. Only this individual called him that, leading Ziyu to narrow his eyes and decide to test him with a probing question. "So that must be a wedding ring, then?" he asked, causing the goblin to pause briefly before regaining his confidence and proudly boasting that he had spent 10 years of wages on it. Ziyu merely smirked in response, glancing at the timid goblin behind him and praising the impressive performance, calling him Cuban. His pale green hand trembled as a glittering red ring spun on his finger, and as the goblin began to stammer, Ziyu cut him off. Pointing at the ring, he spoke sharply as if exposing a secret, noting that it was the ruby ring Cuban cherished, and that his comments about him being extraordinary were suspicious. He added that it was strange since few people knew him, and above all, no one ever referred to themselves as Lord. At that moment, darkness and blue smoke erupted as a voice remarked that the information was indeed accurate, and through the swirling mist, he flashed a meaningful smile. "Your intuition is quite sharp," said Cuban, standing in the mist with short platinum hair and piercing eyes, identifying himself as Step Valor, the ruler of Progen, with a stern and determined expression. Cuban, the Dark Demon King, sat sipping his tea and asked if he had come to see him regarding the Walpurgis incident. Ziyu quickly confirmed this, looking directly at Cuban with a smug smile and suggesting that the man might possess some useful clues or information. Setting his teacup down thoughtfully, Cuban stated he knew what was sought, but added there was a condition, causing Ziyu's expression to darken as he admitted he had expected as much. Still, he gave a faint smile and asked what the condition was, as an image appeared of a man surrounded by an endless sea of letters. Ziyu thought about the man's clear obsession with knowledge from the early chapters, remembering him as the notorious pervert who would even pay to discover the color of the emperor's underwear. Pausing for a moment, he recalled scenes of war and peace, his eyes gleaming with cunning as he realized he held all the latest scoops. From future conflicts to real estate trends, Ziyu felt a surge of excitement, believing he had finally grasped Cuban's weakness. He urged him to speak, claiming to know everything, but Cuban simply maintained his gentle smile before making his request. "Become my friend." Ziyu agreed without hesitation, but soon realized something was amiss. Seeing his confusion, Cuban explained that he would soon become the center of attention following the conquest of Hesses. Cuban knew all his secrets, including his relationship with that rigid female holy knight, a revelation that made Ziyu freeze and ask if they were truly that close. "Are we close?" he asked, to which the man smiled brightly and noted that befriending someone like him would be very profitable, leaving him with no choice but to agree. Joe fell into deep thought, wondering how to prove their friendship. Before he could ponder further, Guban presented a glowing ring and told him to take it. That ring carried an immense surge of energy. As he could see, it was a communication device meant only for reaching out when one felt bored. Every word he spoke made Joe suspect he was plotting something. He recalled a painful memory of a study session that filled him with sorrow. It was like someone smiling while preaching that he should study harder, with Gu Ban constantly reminding him from under the desk to put in more effort. The more he thought, the less Joe believed in the friendship he mentioned. His confusion regarding Gu Ban grew, yet he didn't hesitate to speak when offered information as a gift. Suddenly, a snap of fingers echoed. Gu Ban admitted he had something, and hearing this, Joe curiously asked what it was. The clue lay within Dresden, the capital of the Saxon Duchy. A voice resonated, identifying the location as Dresden within the capital's electoral district. Joe walked straight toward the gate, leaving the guards in a daze. They immediately demanded to know his identity, as his expression was far from pleasant. Joe summoned his system interface and thrust it at them, causing them to cry out in agony. With a dark expression, he growled every word. He warned them not to stand in his way. Carrying his system screens, Joe marched forward while the terrified citizens screamed and fled to avoid him. He wanted nothing to do with them. Later, as rows of people knelt before him, Joe shouted in frustration for them to get out of his way. At the Velia Merchant Guild, an urgent cry rang out. Lena pushed the door open and entered, her voice trembling with sheer panic as she called for the guild leader. She reported a terrifying pressure advancing toward the guild. Yan was stunned by the news, while she seemed to lose all composure in her frantic state. She screamed in terror that he was almost there. As Joe drew near, Lena fled while continuously shrieking for him to stay away. Upon seeing him, the guild leader looked just as terrified as she did, his entire body trembling. Yan questioned why someone of his stature had come there. Joe didn't answer immediately, instead quickly operating his system interface. He then gave a sinister smile and declared he had come to conduct a trade. From those words, Joe vaguely guessed the destination. Guban gracefully held his teacup and confirmed that his assumptions were correct. He confirmed it was the Velia Merchant Guild and the Ritter Knight family, further revealing that they were burdened by a massive debt. They were locked in a debtor-creditor relationship. Joe was stunned by the information Gu Ban provided and secretly marveled at the man's reach. He had been completely unaware of such details. Joe understood Gu Ban's current capabilities well, as the man had crushed him in countless information wars. With his immense power, he truly could know everything, as his intelligence network spanned the entire continent. That was the Dark Demon King, Gu Ban. Gu Ban anticipated Joe's thoughts and noted that he seemed pleased with the news, but added that there was one more matter to discuss. Joe looked confused and asked what it was. Yan stood silently watching the young girl on the bed, placing a hand on her forehead as he introduced her. He addressed the extraordinary adventurer, identifying the girl as his daughter, Marine. His eyes filled with sorrow as he spoke of her lying there. Yan remembered when his daughter was still healthy and playful. Not long ago, she had been a vibrant and radiant child. But then, something strange happened. She began to wither away until she lacked even the strength to hold anything, leaving them in this dire situation. They had summoned every famous doctor across the continent, but they all gave up. His daughter was his weakness, and he collapsed into tears. He sobbed that he would lose her forever if this continued. Suddenly, Yan stood up and shouted directly at Joe's face. He insisted there must be a way to save her. Breaking into tears again, he stammered and begged the extraordinary adventurer for help. He pleaded for Joe to bring back his daughter's smile. Joe suddenly placed a hand on his face to comfort him, telling him to forget that ridiculous title. Just call me Valor. Yes, the Valor Merchant Guild. He wiped his face while explaining to James that this was his reason for coming to trade. I apologize if I went too far. Jiayu turned serious as he approached and placed his hand on Marine's forehead to check her condition. Indeed, it was obvious to the naked eye that his daughter's state was extremely critical. Based on the girl's condition, Jiayu diagnosed a clear loss of muscle mass and a persistent, unrelenting fever. Marine's situation had truly reached a state of emergency. This illness cannot be cured with ordinary medicine, Jiayu revealed while looking at the girl behind him, but there is still one way. Hearing there was a cure, James became agitated and shouted, asking what it was. Jiayu informed him of the remedy to save his daughter, an elixir from Rose Glockner. Upon hearing the name of that place, James's hands began to tremble. Oh no, he was so shocked that he collapsed to the ground, asking if it meant the girl couldn't be saved. That's right, Rose Glockner is exactly that kind of place. Two boys once challenged each other, saying that if one returned from Rose Glockner, a wish would be granted. In this world, that is equivalent to saying it is impossible. The demon dragon of Rose Glockner. The place seemed deserted and terrifyingly gloomy, a massive canyon famous for its majestic scenery. Something seemed to be lurking there in the Empire's southeast, within the territory of the demon dragon Swarstilfen. The ancient dragon there is incredibly powerful and aggressive. Though few ancient dragons remain on the continent, his strength is immeasurable, making him a difficult opponent even for the Demon King. Furthermore, many magic beasts reside there, and the canyon he rules is home to countless demonic creatures. James fell into despair upon learning the medicine was there. Simply put, it was a living hell for both humans and demons, a hopeless challenge for ordinary people. Yet, Jiayu smiled as if he found the place intriguing. That only applies to ordinary people. He stepped forward, placed a hand on James's shoulder, and the guild leader Jiayu confidently declared to him, "Don't worry, I will go." Hearing those words, James felt a glimmer of hope as Jiayu appeared like a sun shining upon him. At the same time, he had acquired a new skill for himself. Mephistopheles' acting skill has been activated. With this demonic performance ability, you can deceive and mock your opponents. James grabbed Jiayu's collar and insisted that if anyone should go, it should be him. No, Jiayu replied, using a tone of sincerity to explain the situation to James. What your daughter needs most right now is not the elixir. He told him what he should be doing instead, which was providing her with sincere love. A father's love. James was deeply moved by those words and asked Lord Valor what he could do to help. Upon hearing that, Jiayu flashed a faint smile. He feigned awkwardness as he told James it wasn't anything complicated. I heard the Ritter family owes a massive debt to the Velia Merchant Guild. With tearful eyes, James waited to hear his request. Regarding that debt, Jiayu seized the opportunity to ask if he could take over the obligation. Before James could object, he gripped his shoulders and spoke loudly. Guild leader Jiayu used a moral argument to pressure him, telling him to do it for the sake of his only daughter. His daughter, Marine in her weakened state, tried to call out to him, "Father." James recalled the times his daughter used to play and call him Daddy. The little girl had innocently suggested to James back then that she would marry him when she grew up. Thinking of his daughter, James agreed to Jiayu's proposal. Very well. After reaching the agreement, Jiayu set off for Rose Glockner, remarking that it was a perfect moonlit night for mountain climbing. He couldn't help but feel delighted as he looked at the surrounding scenery. "How beautiful this view is," Jiayu exclaimed while continuously pulling rare herbs from the ground. This one is truly massive. He held the herb in front of Philia and asked if she knew what it was. Philia sniffed the herb repeatedly. Jiayu revealed that this was a precious herb that only grew there. He then fed it to Philia, saying, "Go ahead and eat. Listen carefully, Philia, this forest has some very reliable guardians. Because of the excellent security here, no wicked humans or demons can enter." Philia's stats suddenly skyrocketed. Even the weeds growing here possess spiritual power. Every blade of grass in the canyon is infused with the demon dragon's mana. Outside of this place, they are considered rare medicinal ingredients. Jiayu bent down to scoop some up from beneath his feet. In other words, he seemed fascinated by everything with spiritual power here, there, and everywhere. A single handful of soil here is a precious treasure. Jiayu continued to gather all the herbs, exclaiming, "Herbs here, herbs there. Philia, every patch of land here is worth its weight in gold." He calculated his profits while harvesting herbs, realizing he would not only rescue the Merchant Guild president's daughter, but also earn a fortune. Z stuffed a handful of herbs into his mouth and chewed vigorously, savoring the fragrance, when a stone suddenly struck him in the head. Yu turned around in a fit of rage, only to see a monster emerge and chase him, shouting for the human to get out. Ziyu was taken aback as a group of hobgoblins appeared to claim the territory, declaring that this land belonged to them. The system disclosed all the details of the area to the protector of humanity, identifying Grossglockner as a canyon located at an elevation of 3,798 meters. This was the territory of Mo Long Zhu Si Dai Fen, a place considered extremely dangerous despite being filled with rare herbs and elixirs. Access was restricted to magical beasts permitted by the magic dragon, regardless of their race, as a tearful hobgoblin struggled to uproot the medicinal plants. Ziyu sat comfortably drinking water served by Ki-La, while the hobgoblins twirled at digging, and Ziyu, looking sharp in his glasses, noticed something. He pointed at the hobgoblins and barked orders for them to work properly, even showing them a sample for reference. He demanded they keep the plants clean and warned them not to damage the roots, leaving the hobgoblins trembling at his threats. Ziyu roared like a sovereign, threatening to send them to their graves if they failed. Then the scene shifted back to an hour prior when the hobgoblins were still fierce. Ziyu had been slightly concerned by their numbers as they charged at him, but he stopped holding back and immediately unleashed a technique. He activated his skill, his eyes turning a piercing blue, and with a single move, Ziyu annihilated the approaching hobgoblins. Using Life Drain, he slowly siphoned their vitality, mocking the fallen creatures as fools for attacking him without cause. His Life Drain skill level increased, and he unleashed a new power that caused the hobgoblins to rise again with transformed eyes. They stood up slowly and began obeying Ziyu's commands, prompting him to clap and praise their performance. Ziyu licked his lips with a sense of longing as a wine glass hovered in the air, and he sat back to drink tea and converse with Ki-La. He asked Ki-La why they attacked when defeat was certain, and Ki-La admitted they had failed to recognize his master's true power. Ki-La expressed deep gratitude for being recruited despite their lowly status, and Ziyu replied that he was pleased they were willing to serve him. Ziyu asked for a report on other inhabitants of the canyon, and Ki-La shared everything he knew without reservation. He revealed that besides the hobgoblins, the canyon was home to werewolves, frost worms, giant spiders, and a massive population of ogres. Ziyu praised him for his knowledge and expressed his satisfaction in choosing him as an assistant, which Ki-La called a great honor. Suddenly, the communication device on his hand glowed as someone called, and Ziyu answered with a hint of annoyance, greeting the stern master Hua Luo. The person on the other end reminded Ziyu that he was the one who provided the device and welcomed him to the city of Pai-Er-Jan. Ziyu realized who it was and joked about nearly forgetting, while Kubai inquired about the situation at his current location. Ziyu ate fruit while describing the pleasant weather and beautiful moon at Grossglockner, leading Kubai to remark on his keen intuition. Kubai mentioned that Pai-Er-Jen was busy preparing for a festival and invited him to visit, to which Ziyu agreed if he found the time. He added that Lady Fan Pei Jai Si had arrived and presented a massive compensation claim of 100,000 flan, exactly as Hua Luo had anticipated. The cunning merchants were behind the scheme, even threatening to seize the goods intended for trade with Ru Lin. Ziyu was displeased by the news of such injustice, noting that they were going too far and that this was likely only the beginning. Ziyu asked Kubai to relay a message, instructing her to pretend to agree to the deal, but to stall for as much time as possible. Kubai smiled sinisterly after hearing that, remarking he had to achieve at least that much since it was a matter between him and Lord Valoma Jiayu, before cheerfully offering a suggestion. "I will certainly reward you handsomely upon your return, That sounds good, Kubai replied from the other side, having already anticipated this. I am quite eager. I heard Grossglockner is a gold mine, right? Yes, you can look forward to it. He suddenly hung up, leaving Jia Yu bewildered. By the way, it seems quite noisy on your end, so I will hang up now. Jia Yu did not expect Kubai to hang up so quickly. What did he really just hang up? He leaned back and sighed to himself. I am only enduring this for Walpurgis. Kubai. Lord Jia Yu noticed Keela's agitated state and asked with some annoyance, why are you so panicked? Do you need to use the restroom? No, that is not it. Something terrible just happened. After seeing that reaction, he opened the window and looked to the side. What is going on? Giant monsters had surrounded Jia Yu without notice. Keela jumped in fright at their appearance. Jia Yu stood up to protect him. Keela, get back, but I must protect you. He pushed Keela behind him and commanded, I said get back. Jia Yu turned his head to the side. The hobgoblins had been defeated by the ogres. All of them were down. Seeing the massive size of the ogres, Jia Yu still had no plan. With his current life-drained skill level, these monsters were too high-level and would resist it. It seemed it would be useless against them. He knew that approach was not feasible, and even if he summoned the undead, they would just end up like the others. At that moment, the emblem on Jia Yu's hand began to glow. Very well. Feeling a surge of power, he prepared to face the ogre. I should get a bit more serious, shouldn't I? The mercenary emblem radiated a massive source of power. That energy enveloped Jia Yu's body as a sword of terrifying strength slowly began to manifest. One of the 12 great swords of the Empire and an indestructible treasure of the fantasy family, Jia Yu now possessed that blade. Obtaining Ljubljana felt like gaining an extra surge of power. The S-rank Ljubljana was a fantasy family heirloom passed down for 200 years. It enhanced the mastery of the Moon Shadow sword art, the fantasy family's exclusive technique. Do you all also recognize the true value of this sword? This sword was the specialized weapon for the Moon Shadow sword art. That fool Philip chose another flashy blade and left this one to rust in storage. Moon Shadow sword art, form 0. The energy Ljubljana emitted made even the ogre wary. Jia Yu seemed to manifest countless Ljubljana blades, striking forward with moonless radiance, wounding one of the ogres. After being hit, the ogres quickly became alert to their surroundings as Jia Yu darted back and forth right in front of them. Like a lingering ghost, he appeared right beside the ogre. The ogre's eyes suddenly became bloodshot, and very quickly Jia Yu had wounded all of them. Jia Yu stood boldly atop an ogre's head before suddenly leaping off. With his agile movements, Jia Yu finished off the ogre. Just as he took down the last one, Keela rushed over in a panic. Jia Yu looked at the fallen ogres and felt a sense of relief. It was a success. I was worried at first since I hadn't used this move in a long time. Seeing him wipe them all out, Keela clapped in admiration, saying it was wonderful. Jia Yu laughed loudly, his pride swelling at the praise. It was nothing, he said, confidently boasting. Previously, I could maintain it for 10 minutes, but now it only lasts 30 seconds. Your pride is even greater than mine. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared and questioned him. Was it you? Hearing the voice, Jia Yu turned around as the mysterious person lunged at him and growled. I asked, was it you? He kept backing away to avoid the mysterious figure, wondering when they had arrived. Suddenly, a set of massive claws lunged forward and squeezed. It gripped Jia Yu's neck tightly. Xiao Fen threatened him with an expressionless face, saying he would break his neck before using the full force of his arm to hurl him. In a fit of rage, he threw Jia Yu far away. The system also issued a warning to Jia Yu. You have been attacked, and your HP has dropped to 10%. He was shocked to hear his strength had decreased so significantly. Are you kidding me? Just one hit and already. Xiao Fen stomped his foot on the ground and spoke. You. His dark silhouette growled each word strong. Mortal, why are you here? Jia Yu fearlessly questioned Xiao Fen in return. And you, who exactly are you? If you want to know someone's identity, you should introduce yourself first, shouldn't you? Xiao Fen did not hesitate to reveal her identity as the master of Grossglockner, leaving Jiu completely bewildered by her lack of decorum. He recalled the majestic form of Grossglockner and found it impossible to believe that this person was the master of that demon dragon. Jiu stared at Xiao Fen with a mix of confusion and jealousy, wondering if she had been that massive dragon since the previous round. Noticing his persistent gaze, Xiao Fen questioned him before closing the distance with incredible speed to criticize his idle nature. She claimed he was far too lazy and noted that she could sense a strange energy within him originating from another dimension. As he pondered her words, Kla stepped forward to shield him, wondering if this self-proclaimed lizard could actually break the fourth wall. Kla vowed to protect his master, but Xiao Fen dismissed the arrogant display and raised her hand to deliver a death sentence, prompting Jiu to plead for his life. Jiu begged her to listen, but Xiao Fen ignored his excuses and lunged to strangle him until he revealed that his death would mean her end as well. Her sharp claws stopped just inches from his eyes as something caused her to freeze in sudden realization. Xiao Fen realized that Jiu was not the individual she expected, allowing him to regain his composure and explain his situation. He explained that he often had prophetic dreams and had seen a vision of the demon dragon meeting a gruesome and tragic end. Xiao Fen looked stunned and sought confirmation of their shared fate, while Jiu pointed to his head to guarantee the truth of his words. He challenged her to read his memories if she doubted him, causing Xiao Fen to hesitate before raising her hand again, much to his terror. Xiao Fen eventually sighed and agreed to his proposal, though she threatened to kill him instantly if she discovered he was lying. The monstrous scales on Xiao Fen's arm began to crack and peel away, revealing her true hand as she gently placed it on Jiu's head. She warned him that any trickery would result in his head exploding, and as she made contact, a powerful wind began to swirl around them. A brilliant seven-colored light erupted as Xiao Fen entered Jiu's mind, though she initially dismissed his human memories as cluttered and trivial. As she delved deeper into his consciousness, she demanded to see more specific memories, catching Jiu off guard. Jiu insisted that looking further was unnecessary and directed her toward a specific orb of memory, which clearly displeased her. She found his behavior suspicious and rude as the blurry images in his mind finally began to sharpen into a clear scene. Xiao Fen was shocked by the unidentified origin of the memory and asked if it was real, to which Jiu replied that she had seen enough. Jiu pushed her out of his mind, feeling physically drained but relieved that she hadn't discovered the secrets of his previous lives. In a state of panic, Xiao Fen struggled to process the confirmation of her own future corpse. Her eyes went hollow as she wondered who could possibly kill her, before she waved her hand to grant Jiu a reward for the information. She told him he would not die but would be banished instead, expressing her sudden distaste for the mountain before glaring at him. Jiu stood up and proposed a deal, leading to a petty argument where he insisted on calling her Subai because her full name was too long. Jiu confidently declared that he could help Subai survive, a claim that left her visibly shaken and unable to accept the possibility. Subai argued that she was 3 millennia old and shouldn't have to listen to modern slang, but Jiu told her to just accept the new reality. At that moment, the system updated with a new quest titled Dragon's Fate, slightly increasing the overall game difficulty. A thick mist settled over the forest as a small snake searching for prey was suddenly crushed under someone's foot. That figure strolled along, chanting loudly as the master of an abyss deeper than the shadows and the king of chaos and turmoil, flexing his biceps and confidently roaring that his name was none other than Otka's. "Great Demon King Otka's, sir," Ganek reported from his side. "We are almost there." Otka's, his mood ruined by the interruption, grew furious that someone dared to cut off his grand introductory speech while the weak man pleaded for mercy by the roadside. "Forget it, my mood is already spoiled." Another figure spoke up, pleading with Otka's. "They are my subordinates, please spare them." He appeared quite surprised to see that person showing up. Calihuan stepped toward August. "My daughter, Calihuan," he said. She bowed respectfully and said, "Calihuan greets the master." He recalled the promise he had made to Calihuan. "Indeed, I vowed that once this campaign ends, I will fulfill one of your most fervent wishes." "Yes, Lord, thank you." August seemed to dote on Calihuan. "No, you are my beloved daughter. This is only natural." He immediately summoned his attendants. "Hear me, my subordinates." August issued his command with authority. "We shall now advance toward Grossglockner, where the magic dragon stands guard. Those low-level beasts are of no concern, but the magic dragon will not be easy to handle." He also cautioned everyone there, urging them not to falter. August assigned them their tasks. "All you have to do is devour everything that comes into your sight." Furthermore, he permitted them to do even more. "I allow you to trample every living soul beneath your feet," August declared with a confident smile. "As for the soul stealer, I, August, the third-ranked demon king of greed, shall claim it." The demonic horde let out a roar as if responding to August's words. August exuded an overwhelming aura of power. Wherever he went, the demons followed. "Now move out, my children of darkness." Echoes resonated through the dark, rocky crevices in the night. "Assemble, assemble," Xiu muttered, a faint smile on his lips. "A new night has begun." He glanced over at the impatient goblins. "Although we were harassed by strange monsters and a dragon speaking in broken tongues, our mission remains to gather as many rare medicinal herbs as possible for Dresden." As their morale peaked, he shouted, "Now move out." The goblins shouted in unison, "Move out," Xiu signaled with his hand. "Good, everyone get into position, move." Afterward, he collapsed onto a makeshift chair, panting heavily. Eventually, Jella walked over slowly and handed him a drink, a sympathetic glass of cricket and centipede cocktail. Xiu took it and replied cheerfully, "Thank you, Jella. Bring a glass to Philly as well." He immediately bowed, "Yes, master." Xiu took a sip and noted the strange flavor. An unexpected encounter with a dragon in a place like this, if not for his memories of the previous cycle. I likely would have had my neck snapped long ago. He frowned slightly. Why is it so strange this time? Simultaneously, he mentally gathered every clue, starting from Philip's betrayal to the sudden change in the dragon's design. Thinking of Van Pergis, he couldn't help but chuckle. He even recalled Van Pergis's beautiful face. Xiu's eyes widened as if he had just remembered something. He reached out and activated the system interface in front of him. Xiu immediately initiated Open Main Script. A flurry of notification windows cascaded down. His suspicions were confirmed. Xiu did the math. Nothing that had occurred so far aligned with the previous cycle. Compared to his past memories, everything was entirely new. Han Xiu No, the rank 1 protector of humanity, Han Xiu. He remembered nearly every inch of the Grossglockner map, down to the last stone. He crossed his arms skeptically. There was no way he could have mistaken the dragon's nesting grounds. Something isn't right. Let's reorganize. As he spoke, the major script surfaced in his memory. The Battle of Hapham between the Steel Elector and Bahamut. The betrayal of Friedrich, the Steel Elector's aide, and the crisis at the Van Pergis Great Abbey. The pivotal scripts remained the same. However, the minor details and internal events were different. This wasn't just a new world. Why is there such a discrepancy? He wondered, tapping the table lightly. Did I overlook something? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the distance. Beside him, a timid goblin spoke up. See, I told you to be careful. I'm sorry, Xiu asked. What happened? Jairu clutched his bleeding hand and offered a reassuring smile. It's nothing, master. It's only a minor injury. Xiu's voice sharpened in warning. Watch yourself. You know the consequences of damaging the roots, don't you? The goblin hesitated before answering. Yes, I will keep that in mind. He sighed helplessly. The moment he looked away, something went wrong. Immediately after, the two goblins turned to leave, hurrying each other along. Be careful. I know. Brimo leaned down anxiously. Is the wound deep? Jairu shook his head slightly. I'm fine, brother. I'm perfectly okay. Watching them, Xiu suddenly realized they must be siblings. This triggered a memory of Seiklot, who also had a younger sister. He hadn't known that in the previous cycle. Suddenly, he paused. The image of Baptiste constantly clinging to him flashed vividly in his mind. She was always trying to get close to him. Then, the image of a cheerful Margaretha appeared. The girls in his subconscious, like the lovely young Van Pergis, finally made sense to him as he realized his perspective had shifted. As his viewpoint changed, Jiayu watched an insect crawl past, trembling, while he remained lost in deep thought. In his previous life, he was known as the Iron Sovereign, the Emperor of the Empire and the heroic savior who had rescued the world. He recalled his past arrogance, always starting with extraordinary powers and maxed-out stats, but looking at his current self, Jiayu let out a soft sigh. There was nothing remarkable about him now. He was just an ordinary person with nothing but memories of his countless past lives. He gave a self-deprecating laugh at his pathetic state, yet a part of him felt relieved that he could finally notice the small connections he once ignored. His thoughts drifted to Baptiste before the name and beautiful face of Van Pergis suddenly flashed through his mind. Starting as a commoner finally brought everything into focus. In previous cycles, he had merely settled Van Pergis's debt without ever understanding the true situation. He suddenly snapped out of it, realizing his memories led him to Aquila and her unexpected offer of a puzzle piece that could unlock the true ending. As Aquila's magic circle glowed and her mysterious space unfolded, Jai Yu held his glass, pondering the sudden unlocking of his commoner class. He whispered Aquila's name in his mind, overwhelmed by questions and wondering if everything thus far had been a form of guidance. A sharp crack echoed as he crushed the glass in his hand, just as the frantic sound of footsteps approached and Kila rushed toward him. Master, a dragon is heading straight for you, Kila cried out, followed by a massive explosion that shook the earth as Xiao Fen charged in. Jiayu, it's here just as you said, Xiao Fen shouted, while Jiayu calmly stretched and thanked Aquila for the predicted outcome, leaving Xiao Fen stunned. With a knowing wink, he remarked that the situation only proved how well this game knew how to catch people off guard. Confused, Xiao Fen asked what he meant, but Jai Yu simply waved him off and told him it was time to go, leaving the other man bewildered. While Kila remained equally puzzled, Jai Yu felt a surge of clarity, vowing to Aquila that he would now savor and fully experience every aspect of this world. He suddenly shouted that a new strategy was beginning, laughing with excitement while Xiao Fen stared in shock, thinking he had lost his mind. Kila could only offer a quiet, "Yes, master," while his diary meticulously recorded every one of Jai Yu's erratic and unpredictable expressions. Every time Jai Yu did something unexpected, Kila's heart skipped a beat, forcing him to tread carefully whenever his master's temper flared. When Jai Yu laughed to himself like a madman, Kila trembled in fear, while elsewhere, the crazed Wu Ga charged forward with his axe, destroying everything in his path. "Come on, magic dragon Xiao Fen," he roared, as the Oroch crowd cheered wildly for the demon king Wu Ga. Sensing something unusual, Caliwan immediately informed him that something was approaching their position. "Is it the magic dragon?" Wuga asked, just as a human and a goblin crashed onto the ground right in front of them, leaving him perplexed. "What is this? Just a human and a goblin," he muttered, but Caliwan warned him that others were still coming, much to his surprise. Amidst his confusion, a massive explosion erupted, and a grin spread across his face as a dragon's claw emerged from the dust, accompanied by a voice praising its beauty. "This is the dragon's domain," Zio Fen warned coldly, telling them to get out, which only made the man scream with excitement upon seeing him. "It's been a while, magic dragon. I have a proposal for you," Wuga said eagerly, though Zio Fen met his offer with a cold and blunt rejection. "I refuse everything you say," Zio Fen declared, deploying his display magic while the man continued to insist that his offer was irresistible. "Just like you, then? Fine, let's begin right now," Zio Fen muttered, nodding as a powerful aura began to radiate from his entire body. With murderous eyes, Udgard smiled and nodded at the command to charge, assuming Jiu wanted to speak privately and calling him a coward. After speaking, he dashed away with Piffin following closely behind, while Jiu watched them and let out a soft sigh. Jiu realized he had anticipated Udgard's strike, though it came much sooner than expected, and wondered if he would eventually need the magic dragon. He remarked on how honored he was to have the continent's greatest beauty, Lady Caliwan, standing before him as her metal mask began to retract. Her cold, emotionless blue eyes stared at him, accompanied by Sarah, Mara, and an army of ogres, as Jiu considered her high-risk nature. Depending on a player's choices, she could become either a powerful ally or a deadly foe, and she was even stronger than Bahamut. Known as the Ice Queen, she was no ordinary opponent, and Jiu planned to recruit her for his future strategy while telling Van Pergis he would arrive soon. Jiu began to tease her, noting she looked even more beautiful in person, but the hot-tempered woman responded by pointing her spear at his throat. Mara looked on with a scowl, prompting Jiu to mockingly ask the mute subordinate to step aside so he could speak with the princess. Without a word, Myra lunged forward with a sword, causing Kolak to scream in terror for the wretched devil to get away. Holding his weapon in front of Jiu, Kolak trembled as he shouted that the enemy was lower than earwax and would have to kill him first. Jiu smiled and noted that Kolak had grown, reminding him of the time he had fled alone during the battle against the magic dragon. As Kolak apologized in embarrassment, Jiu looked back and remarked that the man was actually braver than the enemy, just as something blurred past. Mara was suddenly bound by a rope before she could react, and a figure appeared holding the restraints tightly. Jiu smiled at Hedja, who stepped closer and licked her lips with a look of intense desire before violently jerking the rope. Jiu could only grit her teeth in pain while restrained, her eyes burning with rage as Piffin appeared like the wind and struck her, drawing blood. Piffin threatened to cut down anyone who dared to menace his master, leading Caliwan to realize with a frown that he was a vampire. With his subordinates now fully assembled, Jiu smirked and noted that their numbers were finally even before asking for her thoughts. Caliwan tightened her grip on her sword and declared that as Odgard's army, they would tear the enemy apart, reactivating her full armor. Her subordinates shouted their obedience to Lady Caliwan, while Jiu's own forces rushed forward to protect their master. Jiu did not hesitate to join the fray, clashing with Caliwan in a display of violent and overwhelming power. After leaping back to create distance, Jiu listened as Caliwan expressed her impression of him for blocking both her summons and her direct strike. Jiu replied that he was honored by the princess's praise, but his tone turned mocking when she referred to Odgard as the Demon King. He claimed her father would weep blood if he knew, identifying her as the daughter of the first-ranked Demon King, Kamers, which left her questioning his knowledge. Jiu sneered at her confusion, openly mocking her for being so foolish. He shook his head in disappointment, revealing that she was following the very man who had murdered her father, leaving Caliwan thunderstruck. Memories of Kamers flooded back to Caliwan, recalling the man she respected more than anyone and the warmth in his eyes. She remembered the peace his presence brought her, and how he gave other demons the strength to believe in themselves. To her, he was a radiant figure who filled her with immense pride, and the more she reminisced, the happier she became. Her father had been her source of joy, but the vision suddenly turned into a blood-soaked scene of demons celebrating over Kamer's severed head. Kaima was slain by Goro Kangam and Kanto, while Caliwan was helplessly restrained by Otkas. From this moment on, we are the supreme demon kings. Overwhelmed with joy, they paid no attention to the others, so he whispered into her ear with suppressed rage, "Caliwan, I loathe them just as much as you do. Lord Kaima was not only my sole master, but also my closest friend," Otkas said, as tears of resentment began to well up in his eyes. "But now we must endure. When the opportunity arises, I vow to assist you," he said, glaring at Goro, Kangam, and Kanto while emphasizing the word revenge. Everything then returned to the present, where Caliwan was losing her composure. That is what he said. Shut up. How dare you defile my master's name? Killed whom? I will rip you to shreds. In contrast to her, Ji Yu gently placed a gemstone on the ground and said, You truly are pathetic. He then allowed it to roll away naturally. Fine, take a look at this first. The small gem quickly reached the tip of Caliwan's boot. What happened next immediately caused her to recoil in shock as Otkaz's smug face suddenly appeared. It is quite romantic in its own way, isn't it, Mo Long? He then spread his arms wide and declared, Just the two of us alone in a place like this. It is truly moving. Conversely, Xiao Fen asked curiously, No, you, Kai Ma. Killed, but why? Kai Ma's daughter, Caliwan? You, why? Facing that interrogation, Otkaz merely sneered. You think I killed Kai Ma? How laughable. He was clearly killed by Goro Kangam and Kanto, but that explanation was exposed as he said, Sophistry is useless. I know you are all traitors. Otkaz frowned at that reaction and said, You are quite stubborn. Yet he took the initiative to confess, Fine, you are correct. There is no way those fools could have killed Kai Ma. That scene was immediately captured by Xiao Fen, and his image was replayed at the perfect moment. It was all my doing. Unaware of the situation, he continued, When they realized I knew Kai Ma's only weakness, they craved that chance. Those unimaginable words left Caliwan stunned. No, it cannot be. The sword in her hand fell heavily to the ground as she collapsed in despair. No, this is impossible. Lord Otkaz was my father's most loyal subordinate, Caliwan said, her tone filled with confusion. He was even my father's sworn brother. Meanwhile, he thought to himself, Excellent, she is breaking down. The scene shifted back to when they were discussing strategy. Listen carefully, Subai. I will explain the plan. You have a magical projection screen at the nest, right? She immediately nodded. Seeing this, Ji Yu replied with satisfaction. Very well, then snapped his fingers to signal her. Use it to broadcast the shocking truth about Kai Ma's death and force Otkaz to confess. Ji Yu looked at her with complete confidence. It is simple, isn't it? That was the entirety of the plan. Meanwhile, Xiao Fen was still somewhat skeptical. Is that all? He replied nonchalantly. Yes, that is it. Can you do it? Returning to the present, Caliwan sat motionless in her helplessness. He watched her closely. Well done, Subai. Half the plan is a success. The gem he threw was now reclaiming its power. I will handle the rest. As for Caliwan, her tears were flowing uncontrollably. So everything until now was nothing more than a performance. Memories of their initial happiness after becoming so close suddenly flashed through her mind. As for Ji Yu, Hedger appeared at just the right moment. The cleanup is complete, master. He nodded. Excellent, stay in position as instructed. She beamed at his praise. Ji Yu then slowly took a soft breath before speaking. Think about it. You served him for 50 years without ever knowing who your true enemy was. Your loyalty is truly remarkable. However, Caliwan did not respond and only continued to sob. Seeing her sorrowful state, Ji Yu's expression gradually softened. He then stepped toward her. Do you intend to just stand there forever? Do you not want revenge? Once he was close, Ji Yu reached out his hand. From now on, I will teach you Kai Ma's true name ritual. You may use it however you wish. Caliwan was stunned. It has been a long time since I last heard of that. A few remaining memories brought back thoughts of Kai Ma. A spell that borrows the vast power of the universe, strong enough to wound even a great archdemon. It was this very power that made my father the supreme demon king. She then asked suspiciously, How could an outsider like you know about that? Only my father knew the details. To her questioning, Ji Yu thought, because I studied everything from start to finish using the strategy guide. I now recall Kaima's better than anyone, meaning I know him inside out, from the overwhelming power of his true name ritual to his only fatal weakness. However, Yi Hao was concerned about something else. It was best to fabricate a story for now, so he began to improvise. I have read through the chronicles of the 7 demon wars. Explains methods to counter great demons. Yi Hao maintained a calm facade. One of those methods is Kaima's true name ritual. It was truly useful. Fortunately, Caliwan actually believed him. I see, no wonder you are so extraordinary. He smirked inwardly. The chronicles of the 7 demon wars was the ultimate cheat code. Suddenly, her mood turned to disappointment. But it won't help. He is immortal. Caliwan then recounted a story. Before becoming my father's subordinate, he took a direct hit from that spell. Naturally, he was incapacitated for a while. She continued to mutter. But if even father couldn't finish him off, how could I? This time, he interrupted her directly. You are dead wrong. Yi Hao slowly approached Caliwan. Listen carefully, Caliwan. Following his words, she looked back at the comrades who had once protected her. They have all been neutralized by my vampire legion. No matter how strong you are, you cannot stand against such an army alone. By the time she looked back, he had knelt down to speak with her. So, listen to me. Yi Hao pointed to himself to emphasize his point. I am offering to become your new ally. Those words struck her confused heart. Make your choice. Follow me or perish in this place. At that moment, tears once again streamed down Caliwan's cheeks. The promise she had made to Kaima's echoed in her mind. Father, when I grow up, I want to become a great demon king just like you. Hearing that, he had chuckled. Is that so? Then Caliwan must become even stronger than me. She had been surprised. Do you really think I can? Suddenly, Kaimas gently lifted her up. Of course you can. A cool breeze blew past, making the scene even more poetic. Kaimas had told her with pride, because you are the daughter of Kaimas. It was those memories that brought Caliwan to tears. Can I really kill Odegas? Yihao could only react with panic. Are you crying? Bifenham whispered a reminder. My lord, that was a bit too much. He stammered in confusion. What else was I supposed to do? Even Heza added her input. Master, you were indeed too harsh. Having no choice, he tried to comfort her. Hey, stop crying. You are the operations captain after all. Caliwan replied resentfully. You should be the captain instead. Bifenham scolded him further. Master, please remember that by demon standards, she is still just a child. She then pressured him. You really do enjoy making children cry. Yihao let out a desperate cry. No, meanwhile, Ji Luo asked hesitantly. What about Lord Malong following his inquiry? Odegas's battle had just ended, leaving his body covered in wounds. However, those injuries healed at an incredible speed. In contrast to him, Xiao Fan appeared battered and weak. Odegas spoke coldly. How disappointing Malong to fall so pathetically. But he showed no fear. He even smirked in contempt, giving Odegas a middle finger. You're pathetic. Chapter 24. In midair, a fierce stalemate unfolded between Odegas and Xiao Fan. He then took the initiative to break away, but the man pursued him closely. During the chase, he exclaimed excitedly, How disappointing, Malong. Unlike him, Xiao Fan turned back with rage. I thought you would happily accept my offer. But that arrogant expression immediately froze for some reason. At this moment, Xiao Fan took a deep breath, causing flames to erupt in his mouth. A second later, he unleashed a stream of searing fire directly at the man. When the technique ended, Xiao Fan stopped, with wisps of smoke still lingering at the corners of his mouth. Everything the attack had swept through was now submerged in a sea of smoke and fire. Get lost, but suddenly, a very familiar blue light flashed from behind him. Moving faster than the wind, Odegas retaliated with a massive pillar of lightning. Then his muscular physique and powerful aura slowly emerged. A satisfied smirk played across his lips. Odegas stomped his feet firmly onto the ground. If that is what you want, then so be it. With a single leap, he soared high into the air. Otgas had already gripped his axe and suddenly materialized in front of Xiao Fen, delivering a heavy blow that sent him crashing down. Xiao Fen lay flattened against the earth, groaning in agony, but the pain only fueled his rage as he vowed to kill his attacker. Massive wings unfurled amidst the thick clouds of dust as Xiao Fen reverted to his true form, consumed by fury. He let out a deafening roar at Otgas, causing the very space to tremble violently, while Qi Luo hurriedly clung to Jai Yu. Qi Luo cried out about the earthquake, but Jai Yu told him to move back for obstructing him, while Heza gleefully remarked on how cute the dragon was. Heza's suggestion of keeping it as a pet was immediately dismissed, just as Biffin too reported that Subai's mana was surging. Jai Yu nodded in understanding, noting that Subai was even breaking past her current physical form. He turned his gaze toward Xiao Fen's massive silhouette, while Biffin too watched with growing curiosity. Biffin too wondered if someone like Subai could endure it, but Jai Yu coldly replied that she didn't understand the nature of the battles at Gross Lochner. Jai Yu's voice grew more cryptic, as he described it as a massive punishment for Subai before falling into deep thought. Once he reached a conclusion, Jai Yu called out to Caliwan and stopped to instruct her, emphasizing the importance of her mission. Caliwan remained silent with a serious expression before confidently accepting the responsibility placed upon her. The tide of battle shifted again. Otgas remained mocking even under fire, while Xiao Fen lost his composure and attacked wildly. However, Xiao Fen's sharp instincts warned him of an immediate threat as Otgas raised his axe, prepared to unleash a technique. That man continued to boast about the clash of demon dragons, while Xiao Fen focused on gathering magical fire within his maw. Both unleashed their attacks simultaneously, resulting in a powerful collision that created a wall of pure madness between them. Otgas laughed incessantly while charging forward, whereas Xiao Fen focused on wide-range strikes that scorched the surrounding mountains. Yet the man's body healed instantly. He expressed disbelief at losing a contest of strength, which only made him want Xiao Fen more, earning him a look of disdain and a charge of arrogance. Xiao Fen sternly declared that even the collapse of the world meant nothing, and suggested they should cooperate. His words only strengthened Otgas's resolve to refuse, as the man channeled even more mana into his weapon. Without hesitation, Otgas changed his tactics and swung his arm to release a bolt of electricity that tore through the air toward the mountains. The energy surged forward, quickly reaching the far side of the peak as Otgas's signature blue light filled the cavern. A brilliant flash suddenly flickered through the darkness, followed by a massive explosion that sent debris flying everywhere. Caught off guard, Zyro Fen took the full force of the blow and collapsed, prompting the man to laugh at the pathetic state of the demon dragon. As Zyro Fen lay defeated, his massive form vanished into the smoke, forcing him back into his wounded human state. Otkas slammed the butt of his axe into the ground and remarked that there must be a reason why Zyro Fen was bound to this place. Steam continued to rise from the nearby crater after the ultimate move, though the man admitted he didn't truly understand the nature of the area. Zyro Fen slowly pushed himself up and flashed a mysterious smile, confidently mocking his opponent with a defiant gesture. Otkas viewed this as a joke and raised his weapon to cleave him in two, while Zyro Fen silently noted that his role was finally over. Jiayu suddenly blurred past and slashed through the man's body, announcing that it was now his turn to fight. The move was so unexpected that he only had time to glance over before his wounds erupted violently. As for Zyro Fen, he spotted Ziyu's figure from behind and happily cursed him as a brat under his breath. Ziyu appeared right before them, mocking Zyro Fen's pathetic appearance and teasing him for being late. Zyro Fen irritably told him to shut up while Subai helped him up, though he still snorted coldly and issued a warning. He warned him never to let his guard down as a furious Aojia Si demanded to know where Ka Li Wan was. Ziyu glanced aside at the question and took a deep breath, shouting Ka Li Wan's name with all his strength. Following that resonant cry, a soft light appeared in the air, and Ka Li Wan emerged with her flowing white hair. Her current state was entirely transformed by a powerful magic circle, as she slowly asked if he had nothing to say. Aojia Si looked at her with a troubled frown, but immediately hailed her as his daughter, Ka Li Wan. He declared that she had finally mastered the true name ritual, and urged her to use that magic to eliminate the nuisances. Ziyu interrupted him and pointed in annoyance, asking her if she planned to let him ramble or if she wanted to be fired on her first day. He emphasized that this man was her sworn enemy who killed her father, causing Aojia Si to look on in astonishment. Aojia Si laughed it off as a joke, wondering what the human was babbling about as he tried to justify himself. He claimed he and Ka Ma Si were drinking buddies, but his growing awkwardness betrayed him as he recalled the past. He remembered the truth of Ka Ma Si's death and Zyro Fen's words, realizing that any denial or rejection was now meaningless. Realizing everyone knew he was a traitor, Aojia Si finally admitted that he was the one who had orchestrated everything. His lips curled into a smirk as he released his mana like a madman, laughing hysterically before speaking. He realized they were playing him, while Ziyu urgently told Subai to bind him before he went completely insane. Zyro Fen was flustered by the rush, but commanded thorny vines to surge from the ground. The vines tightly bound Aojia Si's limbs as Ka Li Wan formed a magic array around him, yet he remained ecstatic. He challenged them to come at him as Ka Li Wan gripped a massive sword beneath an expanding barrier above his head. At the perfect moment, she screamed for Aojia Si to die as the blade plunged down, engulfing him in light. The strike's power incinerated him, yet in his final moments, he wore a look of complete satisfaction. The technique caused a massive explosion of light that leveled the area, leaving Ka Li Wan to collapse in silence afterward. Seeing Aojia Si motionless, she sobbed that she had finally succeeded as a vision of her father, Ka Ma Si, flashed before her eyes. Ka Li Wan wept, but Aojia Si suddenly resurrected in an even more terrifying form, praising the power of her attack. His gaze toward Ka Li Wan was filled with twisted greed, leaving her paralyzed with shock at his return. Ziyu intervened by attacking Aojia Si and declaring that enough was enough, which provoked the man to scream in rage. He cursed the persistent human, but recoiled in pain, realizing with horror that the wound on his shoulder would not regenerate. Ziyu skillfully spun a horn and invoked humanity's protector technique number 8, leaping high before delivering a staggering blow to his head. Ziyu then proclaimed that to vanquish an immortal, one must utilize their own flesh, and with that blow, the man's head exploded into nothingness. The system then immediately notified you of Demon King Otka's defeat, as a flood of rewards arrived, including the Skagfricked Otka and Otka's horn. He stepped out. Additionally, he acquired a new ability as his proficiency in the S-rank skill, Undead Summoning, increased. The entire summon line was upgraded to Daywalkers, and you can now summon even more powerful undead. You have acquired the S-rank skill Endless Vitality, the S-rank skill Black Lightning, and the S-rank skill Opera Nova. You have obtained the SS rank skill Phantom Step, along with a final congratulatory message for earning the hero title. The scene then shifted back to the crater created by Ziwu, where Teofan was busy transferring mana to Kaluan while scolding her. "It is over, you fool. Survival error, minimal mana." Teofan then questioned further, asking what would happen now that all her comrades were dead. Kaluan lowered her head dejectedly at the question, but Ziwu and the others were already there waiting for her, asking if she intended to stay behind. That sight made her blush with emotion, and Kaluan finally smiled, realizing she had found the place where she truly belonged. Everything settled into peace except for Marine, who was struggling to take her medicine and complained to James about the bitter taste while he responded awkwardly. He acknowledged the bitterness but insisted she finish it, while Ziwu watched from the side, noting that Lord Valor and his comrades had risked their lives. They had braved death to bring this back, and hearing that, Marine cheerfully asked if her father would grant her a wish if she finished the medicine. James nodded immediately, promising to grant any wish, when Ziwu's voice cut in from behind, asking if his request regarding the debt had been settled, though James quickly silenced him. Addressing him as Lord Valor, James whispered in his ear, suggesting they avoid discussing such matters in front of his daughter. They moved to a more private room where Ziwu, looking dissatisfied, demanded to know if the matter was finished, causing James to hesitate. James explained there was strong opposition from Ritter, which only furthered Ziwu's irritation, as he wondered why those debtors dared to cause such a fuss. James sighed wearily, suggesting it was due to the Sassoni electorate, as he recalled the events that had transpired with the guild master. They claimed to be VIP guests who spent a fortune and questioned if he really intended to go through with it, while James responded with great difficulty. Alex leaned in close, urging James not to be so difficult and insisting he was only asking for a single favor. He reminded James of the close relationship between the Belia Guild and them, as their faces drew nearer to one another. He only wanted an arrangement to meet the Sassoni electorate, and under that pressure, James finally relented and agreed. After thanking the guild master, the scene returned to the present where Ziwu concluded that they had caused everything out of fear. They feared their connection to Sassoni would vanish if the debt was settled, a fact James confirmed gloomily, while Ziwu grew increasingly annoyed. It was ridiculous, and he realized why the Ritter bastards were acting so recklessly. While a conflict between the Emperor and the Bayan family was manageable, involving the Sassoni electorate changed everything. Facing a 2-against-1 situation, Ziwu concluded it was only natural for Van Pergis to be so concerned. He racked his brain for a solution, reminding himself that he, Valor, had once been a top-tier player in the game, and soon, an idea began to form in Ziwu's mind. Meanwhile, James softly suggested whether there might be another way to compensate him besides the transfer of the debt bonds. Suddenly, he slammed his hand on the table, startling James, as Ziwu looked him in the eye and asked if the guild master was any good at making threats. A clever plan was set in motion, while Ritter spent a seemingly normal day in his office, grimacing at a letter and wondering if Sassoni truly intended to wipe them out. His body trembled as he read that if they acknowledged the debt transfer, they would be granted a 2-year extension on the repayment. He had no choice but to approve the transfer to a complete stranger, and as Robin hesitantly agreed they were powerless, Ritter smashed a bottle on his desk in a fit of rage. Ritter clutched the letter tightly and pointed at him, ordering an immediate departure for the capital as his fury permeated every word and gesture. He shouted sternly that even if he had to cling to the Emperor's robes, he would resolve this matter at any cost before returning. Under the gentle afternoon sun, Jiyu walked while checking the notifications before him. The proficiency of his S-rank skill, Undead Summoning, had increased, upgrading the summoned vampires into daywalkers. He then slowly issued a command for Piffin II to rise, and with that call, countless small bats gradually appeared in midair. Piffin II's form immediately emerged from them as he offered his greetings, but Jiyu got straight to the point regarding him and the other vampires. You have all become true daywalkers now, so I shall entrust you with a special mission, to which he exclaimed that it was a great honor. Holding a letter in his hand, he praised the attitude and instructed him to deliver the message containing his will to a man named Rebesha. He reached out his hand in excitement, while Jiyu calmly warned him to be careful and not damage it, to which Piffin II immediately complied. After the subordinate departed with a nod, Jiyu waved him off, and at that moment, someone nearby suddenly called out to him. Asking if he was leaving, James enthusiastically informed him that the requested items were ready before beginning his introduction. This carriage was crafted by the finest artisans and is a luxury only a few nobles can afford. Thanks to a business partner, I was fortunate enough to acquire it. Its beauty piqued Jiyu's interest, and James thoughtfully added that he had included funds for herbs and travel expenses, prompting an impressed exclamation from the young man. Suddenly curious, he asked what such luxuries would be used for, and Jiyu did not hesitate to reveal his intentions. He planned to throw it all in the faces of those wretched Ritters, and asked if James wanted to see the lesson he would teach them, but the man quickly declined. Jiyu noticed Marine peeking out from behind James and patted her head, advising her to mind her health even though she felt better. Marine looked at him with sparkling eyes and mentioned she had something for Lord Valor, which piqued his curiosity. Without warning, Marine suddenly kissed his cheek, a sight that shocked James like a bolt of lightning while Callowin and Mara looked on in surprise. Ji stood there dazed with a flushed cheek as the beautiful young girl softly called it a gift, and they eventually parted ways as the carriage drove off. Once they were out of sight, Marine asked James if he remembered the wish she had once mentioned. Still in shock, he gave a weak reply, but in contrast to his state, she gave a cheerful smile and spoke honestly. She declared her desire to become Lord Valor's bride, causing the image he had of his daughter to shatter instantly. He recalled her childhood promise to marry him when she grew up and cried out, unable to handle the devastating shock. Time passed quickly as the convoy traveled along a dirt road, and Callowin remarked with great interest. She believed the girl would become a warrior, finding it unbelievable that she dared to claim a partner so boldly. Noticing his expression, she confusedly asked if he loved money that much, to which Ji laughed and explained that money makes the world go round, though he was met with skeptical looks. He told them not to look at him that way since they always imitated him. Just as the ring on his finger began to chime, Cuban appeared with a cheerful tone, noting that he had heard Valor was returning from Grossglockner and was glad he had survived. Ji calmly confirmed his safe return to Lord Cuban, who remarked on his usual grumpiness, though the young man dismissed it to ask a more important question. He inquired if those wretched ritters had left yet, and Cuban replied that he had already checked on them using his flock of crows. Cuban explained he was contacting him because of new information, piquing Ji's curiosity about the current situation. A black crow landed softly on the roof tiles, its sharp eyes fixed on the target just as Lord Valor had predicted. They had departed for the capital that morning, and Cuban asked what he had done to make them so furious as Ritter shouted below, to which Ji calmly admitted he had only provoked them a little. After listening, Cuban adjusted his glasses and suggested moving on to more surprising news, to which Zehu immediately asked what it was. He brought unexpected news this time. Kairo Lin, the Rose Demon King, was currently in the capital, prompting Zehu to look out the window and remark how interesting it was. He asked if the news could be spread throughout the capital, causing Cuban to laugh and remark that Master Hua Luo was as meticulous as ever before adding a few more comments. Cuban agreed, noting their close bond, but that only made him more uneasy, so he told him to drop the sentiment and promised to repay the favor later. Cuban remained cheerful and told him not to be shy, but he bluntly dismissed it and hung up, clicking his tongue in annoyance afterward. He muttered about how disgusting the idea of being close was, while Jia Li Wan expressed admiration for Cuban from Brujin Yu. She remarked that his influence was greater than she had imagined, to which he casually replied that such a statement wasn't entirely incorrect. Suddenly, Zehu's gaze became very strange, causing Ma La and Jia Li Wan to react intensely and ask why he was looking at them in such a manner. A sly smile spread across his face as he asked Jia Li Wan her thoughts on making a public debut while their carriage entered the bustling capital of the Wen Empire. As gentlemen and young ladies strolled along the sun-drenched streets, Lei Na began spreading the word, asking people if they had heard the news. He announced that Tima Si's daughter would arrive in the capital today, leaving people shocked since they believed the Demon King had died long ago. He explained that the Demon King Ao Tjia Si had killed Kai Ma Si and kidnapped his daughter, drawing the listeners further into the story. When asked why he would do such a thing, he leaned in and whispered that it was rumored to be because of Kai Ma Si's secret techniques. He piqued their curiosity by suggesting the real reason was even stranger, eventually revealing with a mysterious tone that it was because the daughter was incredibly beautiful. The listener skeptically asked if he was joking just as a carriage arrived, kicking up dust as Lei Na pointed toward it and announced her arrival. Jia Li Wan shyly asked Zehu if this was truly necessary, but he firmly insisted that it was. He claimed her face was a strategic weapon, though she worriedly argued that a weapon should be something like a greatsword or a battle axe. Zehu warned her not to use such coarse language while looking so beautiful, as the growing crowd outside began to make her feel uneasy. She noted how strange it felt to have so many eyes on her, but he insisted it was for the best and told her to follow his lead from now on. Zehu then demonstrated the pose himself, resting his face on one hand while pulling his legs together and placing his other hand on his knee. Even the horse shuddered at the sight as he instructed her to make the shyest face possible, exclaiming how embarrassing it was in an exaggeratedly delicate tone. Jia Li Wan resisted, questioning if he really expected a former commander of an entire army to do such things, but he urged her to just do it for the crowd. Her voice trailed off as she mentioned the dignity of a commander, but Zehu grew irritable and told her he was starting to lose his patience. He threatened to fire her if she refused to comply, causing Jia Liwan to clench her fists while the faces of Sa La, Ma La, and Zehu lit up with anticipation. Jia Liwan slowly followed his instructions, resting her face on her hand while bringing her slender legs together and placing her other hand on her knee. She glanced at the crowd with a bashful expression and softly murmured how embarrassing it was, leaving the townspeople completely stunned and agape. Worried by their reaction, she asked if she had done it correctly, but a second later, thunderous cheers erupted throughout the capital. The sudden outburst turned Jia Liwan pale with fright, yet the continuous cheering brought tears to her eyes. She asked if this was truly what he wanted while, at a grand mansion nearby, all the servants had already gathered together. Kaio Lin gently announced to everyone that a very important guest would be arriving today, as her hand glided along the railing. I deeply regret that this place is not the Rose Palace. To me, this person is more important than any emperor or demon king. Yue Lin then continued with a solemn tone. Therefore, I have a request for all of you, as she immediately began assigning tasks to everyone. Chefs, prepare the finest meal you have ever made, she commanded before turning to the servants and maids. Make this place more magnificent than the Rose Palace. Lao Lun then cautiously informed her, My lady, they are arriving soon, to which Yue Lin replied with slight surprise. Is that so? Without further delay, she gave her final instruction. Now, everyone, do your absolute best to make this the most special day for that person. A flicker of sadness crossed her face as she thought of her master, Lord Kaimo, as the Rose Demon King. Yue Lin possessed a beauty and voice that could captivate the heart of any man. Though she was the envy of the entire demon realm, her true essence lay elsewhere. Using her silver tongue as a diplomatic weapon and her exceptional management skills, she transformed Zhou Si-Tan into a formidable nation. Everyone called her the bride of Zhou Si-Tan, Yue Lin. The scene then shifted back to many years ago, revealing a secret the common folk never knew. Behind the story of her crown, Yue Lin had once confessed to Kaimo that he was the only person to whom she could truly open her heart. She then pleaded earnestly, My heart will never change, so I beg of you. But she was interrupted by Ka Li Wan's voice calling out, Father. The girl immediately hugged Kaimo and asked, Who is that beautiful lady? To which he gently replied, She is my colleague, leaving Ka Li Wan in awe. She really is beautiful, Ka Li Wan remarked before innocently offering a bag of cookies. Please accept this, my lady. I made them with Uncle ETGC. As the small, lovely cookies rested in her hands, the girl added, Since you are so pretty, I'll give you the best one, while Yue Lin looked on with a shy expression. Is that so? It seems I no longer have a place where I belong, Yue Lin murmured before suddenly kneeling down in front of Lady Ka Li Wan. If I ever build a castle of my own, would you name it for me? She asked, and the innocent Ka Li Wan immediately suggested, Since you are so radiant and beautiful, how about calling it the Rose Palace? That suggestion had brought a happy smile to her face, but back in the present, Ka Li Wan was filled with unease because Lord Kai Mo was no longer by their side. And so I have come to see you, Yue Lin said, bowing respectfully to greet Lady Ka Li Wan, the only surviving relative of her former master. She looked up with an affectionate gaze as their meeting continued, and a shimmering aura began to radiate before them. Yue Lin, however, expressed some disappointment, saying, It is a pity. Had we been at the Rose Palace, I could have prepared a much grander feast than this. But the others exclaimed in delight at the lavish spread. This is more than enough, while she turned to address Jiu specifically. I also wish to offer my heartfelt thanks to you, Sir Hua Luo. Bringing back the princess, whom we all believe to be dead, is truly a miracle. He politely replied, It was only natural, as she leaned her chin on her hands cheerfully, saying, I have heard a great deal about you from my close friend, Countess Na de Bai En. She told me you always overcome difficulties in the most extraordinary ways, she continued, her words hinting at a mysterious connection between them that left Jiu blushing with embarrassment. Let us set that aside for now and return to our unfinished business, he suggested, causing Yue Lin to look slightly disappointed as she sighed. What a shame. I actually quite enjoy hearing about romantic affairs, she teased, and they both chuckled, agreeing that discussing business could be just as engaging. As the atmosphere shifted, Ma La and Sa La excused themselves and withdrew, after which Jiu spoke up. Actually, I came here today to deliver a message. It is a message from the Steel Elector Fei Li Pu, Lady Yue Lin, he stated, and she nodded in acknowledgement. I see, so he is still alive, before making a request of him. May I go to meet him in person? She asked, but he quickly declined, explaining, Unfortunately, his current condition is not very good. Because Fei Li Pu is now nothing more than a corpse, he revealed, causing her expression to turn dark and mysterious. Suddenly, she allowed a flicker of interest to show, saying, Then let us get straight to the point, Sir Hua Luo. Jiu calmly recounted the events, repeating Prince Fei Li Pu's words while recalling his own actions. Since I cannot act openly at this time, he had said, after Jiu had used brutal threats to force his compliance, I shall appoint Hua Luo CT Hua Luo as my plenipotentiary representative. Those final words were uttered in his desperation, claiming Cairo Lin would assist him in reclaiming Pang Chi in the near future. As he finished, he set down his teacup, knowing he had to win her over at any cost, even if it meant lying. He continued to calculate inwardly, noting that since Ma Jia Lai Ta suffered from the curse of the one lurking in the grave, Pai Za Mu Ti was clearly receiving support from the Great Lord, meaning she alone would not be enough. Realizing he couldn't kill someone protected by the Great Lord on his own, Jihu even imagined the man falling into dire straits, making it essential to recruit Cairo Lin. He decided to pin all the blame on Pai Za Mu Ti, and as his thoughts concluded, the tea was poured full. That was the entirety of the message from His Highness. After hearing this, Cairo Lin gave a cold snort as if lost in thought, slowly reaching out to touch the hot teacup on the table before finally speaking softly. She stated she had one condition, causing Ji Hu's tension to peak as he asked what it was. She toyed with the rim of her cup and noted that he surely understood her current situation, which he immediately grasped. He wondered if she meant the economic blockade, while Cairo Lin implicitly suggested that if he truly represented His Highness, then even the Emperor could not ignore his words, right? Initially appearing surprised, he replied that such a matter would not be a problem. A moment later, Jihu unhesitatingly revealed his cunning nature, as everything had already been arranged. Meanwhile, at the imperial capital's royal palace, Luo Bin was desperately trying to persuade the emperor. He reminded the emperor of his promise to help them reconcile, but Fu Lan Qi merely replied calmly with an apology, his voice tinged with a sadness that suggested his heart was heavy upon learning the truth. Nevertheless, the emperor maintained that things must follow their proper order, until Luo Bin's gaze fell upon something startling, a conspicuous pile of glittering gold coins right next to Fu Lan Qi. Realizing the situation, he was struck dumb with shock, while the old man mockingly reiterated that he had already given a clear refusal. He mentioned that since they had offered tributes, and the Wei Liya Merchant Guild was supporting them, Luo Bin recalled Li Ti's venomous anger and began to seethe with uncontrollable rage. Just then, a soldier announced the arrival of Lord Hua Luo, and Fu Lan Qi's joy was evident as he asked if he had arrived, granting him permission to enter. The massive doors slowly creaked open, and Ji Hu quickly appeared in formal attire, declaring it a great honor to have an audience with His Majesty. He intentionally approached right behind Luo Bin to offer his greetings, stating he was ready to serve, which clearly pleased Fu Lan Qi as he looked at him. The emperor welcomed him, saying he had been waiting and told him not to mind the other man, whom he dismissed as nothing more than a mere figurehead. However, he expressed a different desire, requesting a private discussion between just the two of them, and though curious, Fu Lan Qi immediately signaled his agreement, questioning if it was truly necessary but ultimately relenting. The emperor watched as two soldiers promptly seized Luo Bin. He struggled desperately, pleading with the emperor that he couldn't do this after all the support the Li Ti family had provided. His efforts only met with his own panicked and confused expression, while in Luo Bin's sight, Jihu was cheerfully waving goodbye. As he was dragged further from the throne and the man, Luo Bin caught a glimpse of Jihu's mouth moving, leaving him stunned as he realized he had been called a fool. Simultaneously, at Ao Ti Jia Sea Castle, lightning continuously struck the ground, and the creatures there were covered in wounds as if they had just survived a brutal battle. Ban Ta Si couldn't help but curse that pig-brained old man, kicking the table in her rage and insisting she had told him she would handle it, certain that someone like that bitch Kali Wa Nua was behind it. As she dwelled on it, her fury became more apparent in her expression and aura, until Kai tremblingly presented a white letter, announcing it as urgent news. Upon seeing it, Ban Ta Si barked out a demand to know what it was now, and the terrified servant hesitantly handed over the letter stating the emperor had imposed an economic blockade on the region. Her scowl remained unchanged after hearing the news, and the entire room fell into a heavy silence as no one dared to speak. Eventually, Kai confusedly called out to her, and Fan Ta Si blankly asked what it meant, while Si Wen whispered from behind that they were finished. Back at the solemn palace, after dismissing Luo Bin, Fu Lan Qi asked if it was done, and he happily replied that everything had been completely cleared up. Jihu then added some flattery, suggesting they look at the capital's prosperity before starting, claiming he felt unworthy to even step foot in a place that reflected His Majesty's great achievements. On the contrary, the old man simply brushed it aside and told him not to be so formal, though in his mind, Frank had already judged him to be a cunning fox. Every action he took was observed by the old man. Despite his short time in politics, Frank keenly noted his plan to use the Demon King's daughter to pacify anti-demon sentiment in key areas. Consequently, Frank viewed him with caution and even considered making them allies, patiently waiting with the certainty that he had come here for a specific reason. Frank smugly thought that he was merely a drunken mouse posturing before a cat. Yet Jia Yu had already anticipated this and felt quite satisfied, wondering if the man was thinking exactly that. It seemed the man knew everything, so he only needed to handle the situation skillfully, knowing that in the end, the old man would be the one devoured. Frank took the initiative to speak, noting that he seemed to be in a very good mood and asking what it was he wanted to say. Waiting for that moment, Jia Yu knelt on the red carpet with one hand on his hip and his head slightly bowed in a polite gesture before speaking clearly to the old man. He humbly requested that the economic blockade on Zostan be shifted to the territory of Demon King Odgath, prompting Frank to ask what he would gain from such a move. He immediately replied that it would result in a friendship treaty with the Rose Demon King, but the Emperor laughed and called the idea utterly ridiculous. He doubted that thousand-year-old widow Spider would ever submit to him, insisting there would be no compromise. Yet Jia Yu remained calm and produced the documents. He solemnly presented the papers with both hands, stating she would comply with the Emperor's wishes, which left Frank in a state of disbelief and deep thought as he read the agreement. Frank asked if he was certain that Roland Dixon had agreed to pay 10,000 florins annually, to which he firmly replied in the affirmative, though Frank's expression darkened once more. When asked for proof that the document was authentic, Jia Yu simply smiled as he had anticipated this, standing up immediately to provide an enthusiastic explanation. He explained that since Odgath was the most hated figure on the continent, imposing a blockade on the Demon King's territory would surely cause the Emperor's fame to resonate throughout the world. Frank gave a cold snort, admitting it sounded interesting, but then struck the scroll against his throne, stating that politics was not a game of emotions, and this wasn't a sufficient reason. This caused him to grit his teeth, thinking of how Zostan was blockaded just because Roland refused to pay tribute. Yet Jia Yu maintained his composure and continued his story. He reminded the Emperor that Odgath had perished in the recent Great War, and began to mysteriously reveal more details. He revealed that those who followed the fallen Demon King were now preparing to declare war against Rome. Adding more flavor to the narrative, he stated that the seeds of conflict had not been fully eradicated, and the citizens of the empire were still living in constant terror. Finally, Jia Yu emphasized that the time had come to make a decision, causing the old man to slowly stroke his chin in deep thought. The old man soon remarked that Valorstedt was truly talented, suggesting that with such a silver tongue, he could easily pay 10 million florins, though he simply replied that the emperor was overpraising him. Simultaneously, the system announced the activation of Mephistopheles' acting skill, allowing him to deceive and manipulate others with his demonic performance. One of Jia Yu's eyes immediately flashed with demonic magic, as he claimed he only wished to repay the emperor's favor with his humble loyalty. As he spoke, the old man slammed his hand against the throne and shouted angrily, calling him a fool for thinking he would be moved by such sweet words. He asked if he dared to test the patience of the continent's ruler, leaving him so shocked that his entire body froze, wondering if the man had actually resisted his ability. Meanwhile, the old man decisively issued an order for the guards to come forward, asking if they intended to let him leave the room alive. The guards immediately restrained him, as he could only cry out in confusion, asking the emperor what he was doing. Ignoring him, Frank ordered the guards to take the scoundrel away immediately, and the soldiers began dragging him off while calling him a devious man. At that moment, Jia Yu was in a state of panic, sweat pouring down his face, as he struggled to understand how things had suddenly turned out this way. However, the place Jia Yu was taken to was actually a banquet hall filled with the sound of trumpets, where Calihuan stood awkwardly alone, while Myra and Sarah were focused on eating. Frank, wine in hand, laughed loudly, saying he had never met a subject who spoke such sweet words. He stood nearby with a forced smile, about to agree, but the old man rudely interrupted him. Frank happily raised his glass and reminded him to call him uncle, saying he would be disappointed otherwise, so Yihao reluctantly complied. This improved the old man's mood even further, as he remarked how much more endearing his lovely nephew sounded now. His boasting continued to echo outside as he offered his nephew anything he desired, whether it be wealth or power. In the garden, Robin bit his handkerchief in fury as the man promised everything, his eyes clouding with intense jealousy. Robin trembled uncontrollably, wondering how things had come to this, while Marco watched the situation unfold with silent apprehension. One of them suggested kidnapping Van Pergis, but Felix fearfully tried to stop him while Marco admitted they were out of options. He lowered his voice to warn that it wouldn't be easy, and that failure would mean the end for their entire family. Robin snapped at the fools for coming up with such an absurd idea as they both turned to look at him. With a wicked expression, Robin urged them to do it immediately, while Yihao finally found a room to retreat to. He collapsed onto the bed in exhaustion. As Calluan worriedly noted, it was because he hadn't turned down a single drink. He boasted about his social skills, recalling how his boss in his past life was impressed by his high alcohol tolerance. Feeling weary, he told her to leave him alone, but before he could rest, Cuba suddenly contacted him with urgent news. Cuba shouted that something terrible had happened, making Yihao groan about his head, feeling like it was going to explode. He tried to hang up, but the other man stopped him, warning that Van Pergis had been tied to a pillar and things were serious. She was currently facing Robin and his accomplices, while the tension shifted over to Otka's castle. Vantas sat on a throne and declared that, as Margaretha Vantas, she had to avenge her father without hesitation. The daughter of Otka's confidently vowed to devour the dragon demon, while other demons gossiped about how their lord could have fallen. She ordered a muster of all able-bodied warriors and commanded strict training without rest. But Sven suddenly spoke up. He suggested that the dragon demon might not be alone, but she ignored the advice and slammed her hammer down with firm resolve. Pointing toward the sky, she ordered an advance on Grossglockner, though Kai hesitantly urged her to be more cautious. Kai explained that the Emperor had imposed an economic blockade and that Van Pergis had recently resurrected the Saintess Margaretha. He added that the blockade on Joustin had been lifted, meaning Jolin would likely take action, and advised her to proceed with care. Vantas ruthlessly trampled Kai, calling him a weakling and telling him not to stand in her way. Kai's screams made Sven sigh in despair, realizing they were doomed, while Van Pergis faced her captors. Though filled with rage, she could only grit her teeth and demand that they kill her instead of keeping her alive. Richter claimed he only came to persuade the Emperor, while Robin confidently noted their fortress was protected by steel and a lake. He boasted that even an attack from Bayan would not be enough to easily bring the fortress down. He even had the audacity to claim that everything would turn out fine, a statement that drew a sharp rebuke from Juan Pagesy. "You idiot, do you honestly expect them to knock politely?" she spat, causing Liubin's gaze to turn menacing as he delivered a brutal kick and snarled for her to be quiet while continuing his outburst. "You pathetic prisoner, you're quite close to that man Waluo, aren't you?" he sneered, his rage intensifying as memories of their previous encounter resurfaced. "The sheer humiliation he forced upon me makes my blood boil just thinking about it," Liubin boasted arrogantly. "I'll ensure you suffer that disgrace in his stead," he declared, to which a weakened Juan Pagesy could only retort by calling him a miserable wretch. He gloated with even more spiteful words, mockingly agreeing that he was pathetic since she was powerless to stop him, even going so far as to grind his foot into her head. "You're all alone now, Juan Pagesy," he sneered, but his taunt was interrupted by a soldier bursting in to report an intruder, leaving him in utter shock. In stark contrast to the warm room, a mysterious army stood amidst the freezing winds outside, as Heza spoke up with an air of excitement. "The entire battalion is assembled and ready to strike at a moment's notice, excluding Bifin too, who is on a special assignment," she announced, while Kelake remained visibly bewildered. "Master, must I participate as well?" he asked, to which Joe replied that since they were now allies, his presence was naturally required. That response sent him into a panicked outcry until he was told to be silent, after which Joe turned his gaze toward the fortress. "Our objective is to rescue Juan Pagesy and eliminate Light. Those scoundrels have crossed the line," he said, summoning his blade with divine energy and noting that he would have spared them had they remained quiet. Joe gripped his weapon tightly as his cold voice signaled the start of the hunt, prompting the army to charge forward under Heza's leadership. Once the situation was under control, Joe prepared to head off on his own, entrusting the area to Heza, who responded with a playful wink and a confirmation of his orders. Kelake attempted to follow him, pleading to go along, but Heza immediately restrained him and insisted he stay by her side despite his protests. "No," he cried out, but Joe firmly ordered Kelake to remain and assist Heza with the cleanup, a command that left the man in a state of shock. He then sped away, leaving a frantic Kelake behind who continued to desperately protest that he didn't want to be there. Meanwhile, Joe focused on the door ahead, cursing the lack of time to deal with such weaklings and urging himself to move faster. Their movements were soon reported via surveillance, pushing Liubin's fury to its limit as he recalled that loathsome face. "I will never forget him," he snarled, snatching a sword from a soldier and muttering manically about using it to slit his throat just to hear his sweet screams of agony. "I'm getting excited now," he hissed before charging out of the room in pursuit of Waluo, leaving the disarmed soldier standing there in total confusion. "My sword," the soldier cried out, while Light could only manage a brief shout before realizing it was too late and reluctantly issuing a new command. "Follow him immediately." he ordered, receiving a quick nod of affirmation, while elsewhere, Juan Pagesy was stunned by the realization that Waluo had come for her. Old memories suddenly flooded her mind of how Waluo had always been there for her, her thoughts growing increasingly tender with every passing moment. He has always stood by my side, she mused before returning to the present and silently gritting her teeth in determination. But now I am furious at my own powerlessness, she thought, just as the pillar she was bound to began to fracture with numerous cracks. Light failed to notice the commotion as he lamented how smoothly things had been going and regretted not going to the capital himself, only to be suddenly jolted from his thoughts. Startled by the nearby noise, he saw that Juan Pagesy had freed herself and was slowly approaching, prompting a shocked Light to grab his sword and call her a monster. She managed to escape. It doesn't matter. She's unarmed anyway, he snarled before lunging at her with a lethal strike, shouting for her to die. However, Juan Pagesy was a step ahead, shifting her weight to gain momentum before shattering his blade with a single, powerful barefoot kick. Seeing the fragments fall away, Ritter was so stunned he froze for a moment, yet he still blustered. Do you really think you can escape? The price for his arrogance was a powerful strike from Van Pergis, a blow so heavy it left Ritter's mind reeling in a complete daze. His teeth were knocked right out of his mouth as his body slumped helplessly to the ground, and she seized the moment to finally speak up. I cannot keep relying on others. I will end this myself, Lord Ritter, she declared, prompting Ritter to cry out in a frantic panic. Wait. Clutching his mouth, he desperately tried to justify himself, claiming he never intended to kidnap her and that his foolish son was responsible for everything. Regardless, Van Pergis was already winding up another strike, asking if he thought she cared before her fist slammed down, shattering the wall into pieces. The ruins behind Ritter left him pale with terror as he called her a monster, though Van Pergis simply remarked how rude it was to call a lady that before her sharp instincts signaled a warning. A mysterious silhouette slowly emerged from behind the destroyed wall, causing Ritter to exclaim with joy upon seeing him. So, you've finally woken up. He remarked that monsters should be pitted against one another, and as the dust settled, all eyes turned toward the figure emerging from the haze. Standing there was Igor, radiating an incredibly aggressive and powerful aura, while Ju raced through the fortress at his maximum speed. While scouting the area, he contacted Cuban to confirm the direction, and Cuban replied that he was monitoring through spirit beasts and that someone named Igor had appeared. Ju repeated the name with curiosity, leading Cuban to explain that he was a human weapon currently being developed by Ritter. He was the one responsible for the horrific massacre at Ritter Castle, a truly savage creature, which caused Ju to mutter to himself after hearing the news. He noted that this wasn't part of the original story, but he was suddenly forced to stop and observe when someone behind him called out, "Valor stage valor." Before proceeding, he carefully thanked Lord Cuban for the information and signed off, to which Cuban cheerfully replied, "All right, good luck." Then Ju's gaze shifted toward Robin's crazed appearance, and without showing any fear, he provocatively snapped his fingers at the man. Robin stopped immediately and began shouting insults, calling him a disgusting piece of trash, completely unaware of the mana beginning to manifest on the ground. He was too fixated on Ju to notice the phantom yelling, "How dare you insult me like that?" before a dizzying punch landed squarely on his head. He collapsed to the ground without any resistance, a sight that Ju found irritating as he quickly hurried away, cursing the amount of time that had been wasted. The atmosphere gradually grew more tense under Igor's absolute power, yet Van Pergis maintained her composure as she faced him. As he slammed a blow into the ground, she performed a backflip to evade it, her graceful movements allowing her to easily retreat to a safe distance. Van Pergis then remarked that his body seemed strangely familiar, asking if he was the one who had ambushed her and dragged her there. She exposed him as a member of the Van Perga monastery and admitted she shouldn't have let her guard down, words that only served to further enrage Igor. He began to howl like a wild beast, bringing a smug grin to Ritter's face, while Van Pergis looked on with a sense of growing confusion. When she wondered what was happening to him, Ritter burst into laughter, telling her that she was the one who had dared to utter that specific word. While she remained puzzled, Ritter aggressively explained with a sinister look in his eyes that it was the word the man loathed above all else. He slowly revealed the word just as Igor charged toward them with a fist raised, screaming the name of the Van Perga monastery. In that critical moment, Van Pergis looked stunned, and her shocked voice soon echoed throughout the fortress as she cried out, "But why?" In contrast to those fierce battles, there was a tray of food with a few simple dishes, causing Vantas to yell, "What is this? Why is the food so pathetic?" Kai, standing nearby, explained hesitantly that their budget was in terrible shape, so they had to economize, which only made Lady Vantas even more furious. "What, aren't we incredibly wealthy?" Kai then reminded Vantas of a few things, urging her to lower her voice. We even had to sell the castle due to the economic blockade, yet her attitude remained completely indifferent. Vantas slammed her fork into the plate and asked about the army's status, prompting Kai to hurriedly report that they had received a portion of the sale proceeds. While the soldier's treatment was finished, she snapped that it wasn't about treatment but training, though the other weakly protested. He insisted they still needed medical care, but she simply snorted and leaned against the wall, claiming that eating meat would heal any wound. Sven suddenly interjected that things were better when Lord Otga's was still there, but Vantas merely barked out an order to them. "Eat that and then assemble everyone for me," she commanded, leaving the two to obey in fear, certain they were doomed. The scene shifted to a flashback where Wu La and Iris looked on in surprise at a young Igor, who declared his wish to join the Van Perga monastery. He nodded firmly as soon as the question was asked, but Wu La flexed her muscles and stated that they only proved their faith through immense weight. "But looking at you, you likely can't even lift 100 kg, let alone the 500 kg for the 3 main exercises, despite your commendable devotion. However, you lack strength." She then judged him bluntly, adding that while he was welcome for other matters, this was a monastery. Returning to the fierce battle, Van Pergis blocked Igor's punch, but he immediately swung his other arm, ruthlessly slamming her into the wall. Ritter watched and boasted that no one could stop Igor's rage, claiming the boy wouldn't even recognize his own father, yet he never expected Igor to strike him directly in the face. Ritter's frail body was sent flying out of the fortress and plummeted below, just as Van Pergis managed to regain her footing. She admitted she didn't know the source of his anger, but she was now facing nothing but Igor's pure, unbridled madness. Remarking that his fists carried sorrow, Van Pergis lunged forward with a fist wreathed in divine power, and the two clashed in a powerful collision. Igor flinched as pain surged through his arm, but the fury in his eyes instantly reignited with even greater intensity. Because of that, Igor began to roar and continued to attack unconsciously, his mind recalling the harsh words from before about proving faith through weight. As time passed, he improved based on those criticisms, even though he was told his devotion was commendable but he lacked strength. One day, while Igor was admiring his progress in the mirror, he was shocked to see his hair falling out in clumps, a memory that haunted him. Igor's body froze for a moment as he was distracted by the memory, allowing Van Pergis to seize the opening and land a flurry of blows on his vital points. To end the fight, she channeled all her strength into her hand and delivered a decisive, powerful strike directly to his face. The impact caused massive cracks to spread across the floor as Van Pergis stood panting heavily over his unconscious body. She promised to fight him again once he could throw a punch without hesitation, but the floor suddenly began to shake violently. Realizing she might have overdone it as the fortress began to crumble, she looked on in alarm while Ziyu heard the commotion from outside. He stopped to assess the situation, wondering if it was an earthquake, just as heavy debris began falling directly toward him. Ziyu quickly summoned his sword, Raplania, and shattered the falling rocks, though the fragments continued to rain down around him. The resulting mess blocked his path, and Ziyu grew increasingly frantic as time ran out, until Kuban suddenly contacted him to ask if he was all right. Ziyu regained his composure and asked about Van Pergis, to which Kuban urgently replied that she was still safe. Kuban warned that the fortress was about to collapse and mentioned he had sent a spirit beast to help him rescue her and escape. A bat quickly appeared at his command to ensure their safety, allowing Jai-Hu to say with relief, "Perfect timing, thank you." As for Wan Pagesy, she was still bewildered by the surrounding crisis, but she quickly composed herself, believing that Hua Luo must be on his way. "I must see him immediately," she thought to herself, intending to finally say what she couldn't before while lost in her own reflections. She failed to notice the movement nearby, and by the time she looked up, countless massive boulders were already plummeting toward her. A sharp sword strike sliced through the air, and Jai-Hu landed effortlessly as the boulders split apart, his silhouette coming into view. Wan Pagesy's face lit up with joy as she cried out, "Hua Luo," to which he replied, "Wan Pagesy," before his gaze shifted toward Yager. Wan Pagesy quickly explained that he was Yager, but Jai-Hu insisted it didn't matter and they needed to leave, as Guba's spirit beast urged them on. "She's right, let's go," he said, feeling a bit flustered by the urgency as he led the way, leaving Wan Pagesy amazed that the large man could fit inside a glove while Jai-Hu comforted her. "Just a little further," he said, and she nodded in understanding, her smile growing warmer from his concern before she suddenly spoke up. "I have something to tell you," she said, but Jai-Hu hurriedly replied, "I have much to say as well, let's continue once we're outside." However, Wan Pagesy insisted it was very important, so he finally relented, giving her the chance to gather her courage and confess. "Actually, Wan Pagesy is just an alias. My real name is Shaikdi," she revealed, but Jai-Hu dismissively replied that he heard her and they should focus on escaping. Suddenly, she shouted her name, Shakti, at him, prompting Jai-Hu to offer a forced, awkward smile in response. "Really? That is a beautiful name," he said, but his eyes simultaneously darted upward in surprise as he repeated the name just a second before the disaster. Everything began to collapse, turning his face pale as Shakti managed to shout a warning. "Hua Luo, look out behind you." Surrounded by falling debris, he stood frozen as the rocks crashed down, creating a shockwave that terrified the spirit beast into screaming that he was dying, though Jai-Hu immediately denied it. He looked up at the now visible sky through the collapsed roof, while Shakti anxiously asked from behind if he was all right. Standing atop the pile of rubble, Jai-Hu replied that he was fine and asked about her, to which she quickly responded that she was okay. Suddenly, Zir appeared from afar, and upon seeing her, he immediately called out for her to come and help them. Once they were airborne, he hurriedly reached out his hand toward Shakti, telling her to take it, and she immediately complied. Their hands strained toward each other as the gap closed, while Zir watched on, marveling at the sight before her. She cheerfully announced that the fortress would collapse in 5 seconds, causing them to panic as he urgently told her to hurry. Shakti also strained to reach closer to him, and through their combined efforts, their hands were on the verge of touching. At that moment, the fortress gave way and turned into a chaotic mess of dust and smoke, reducing their visibility to zero. However, something suddenly soared out from the wreckage, and the three of them finally escaped safely, putting the ruins far behind them. Jai-Hu gazed affectionately at Shakti, having learned that her true name was Shakti, while she was so moved that her eyes welled with tears as her favorability toward him surged. Once things had calmed down, Shakti spoke up, saying how fortunate they were not to have been crushed under the falling debris. He nodded in relief just as Zir reminded him that someone was calling, prompting Jai-Hu to check his ring and find it was Guba. Out of habit, he greeted Lord Guba, but the person on the other end screamed, "Hua Luo," a voice he immediately recognized as belonging to someone else. It was indeed Magalita, who was furiously demanding to know if those Ritter bastards had dared to kidnap Juan Pagesy, leaving him to respond hesitantly. "Actually, she cut me off immediately, claiming she was already on her way to tear them apart herself." Hearing this, Jiu glanced to the side. "Did ye tear them apart?" Not far away, Margaretha fiercely exclaimed that those wretched insects deserved exactly that. Ritter's troops stood dazed amidst the ruins, as she told them to witness the secret art of the great Margaretha, Dean of Van Pega. Atop the crumbling fortress, Margaretha manifested a massive sphere of energy and laughed with excitement as she unleashed supernova. The doomed souls facing it could only gape in shock before the magic struck the earth a second later, the pressure triggering a colossal explosion. Margaretha grew even more triumphant after the strike, boasting of her invincibility, while Jiu looked on with a hint of fear. He decided it was best not to act arrogant around her for a while as time passed, and dawn once again illuminated the administrative center. At the Van Pergis villa in Niederbayern Landshut, Margaretha, Jai Zio, and Jiu stood in the courtyard, each with their own expression. The carriage they were expecting finally rolled to a stop, prompting a bored Margaretha to remark that they had arrived. As another flashy entrance unfolded, Jiu was stunned to see that their armor appeared even heavier than that of the Emperor's elite guards. Meanwhile, a majestic red carpet was rolled out from the vehicle, and the guest of honor stepped onto it with measured strides. Then the handsome Maximilian, Prince-Elector of Bayern, appeared, and Jai Zio politely asked if her uncle was doing well. He choked up as he called out to Van Pergis, pulling the defenseless Jai Zio into a gentle embrace. He then bombarded her with questions, asking if she was hurt, if she had been eating well, and telling her how much he had worried. He asked why she was so thin, to which she awkwardly replied she was fine, but his expression shifted the moment she credited Lord Valor. With blatant hostility, Maximilian fumed and told Valor, or whatever his name was, to get out of his sight immediately. Jiu was shocked by the sudden change in attitude, but Margaretha angrily scolded the man, saying a disaster would have occurred without Valor. She explained that Van Pergis returned safely because Valor arrived so quickly, yet Maximilian still glared at Jiu, muttering that he was lucky. Watching the massive army, Jiu wondered to himself if the man could have truly arrived any faster with such a large entourage. Meanwhile, he was coaxing Jai Zio, asking his beloved niece to stay in his quarters that night. Margaretha immediately told him to stay away from her, leaving Jai Zio embarrassed while Jiu watched the scene unfold from the side. Jiu realized her childhood must have been difficult before they all headed inside, where he was told he would be knighted for his great service. Maximilian solemnly commanded him to serve Van Perges with unwavering loyalty, and Jiu bowed respectfully, thanking the Prince-Elector for the knighthood. He knew the man couldn't deny his role in the rescue, though Jiu noticed that Maximilian seemed quite displeased about the whole situation. Regarding the Ritter debt, the contract stipulated that the Ritter knightly house would compensate Valor by transferring their territory to him. The land certificates were delivered, though Jiu could hear some people behind him grumbling in dissatisfaction over the arrangement. Frank appeared on a screen to silence them, asking if anyone dared object to his beloved nephew, making Jiu realize the truth of the Emperor's lesson on power. Jiu snorted with delight at the feeling of authority before finally collapsing onto his bed, exhausted after such a long day. He rolled over wearily, reflecting on how the Ritter pests were gone, and he was now an official knight with his own territory. A wave of complex emotions washed over him as memories of his time with Xiao began to flicker through his mind. He had watched her countless times, and that radiant smile of hers always left his thoughts in disarray. Yet even now, everything about her felt so fresh. But Jiu's relaxation was short-lived as someone interrupted him, and turning around, he exclaimed in surprise at the sight of a furious Ka Li Wan. Ka Li Wan immediately began to criticize him, asking how he could do such a thing when he was the one who told her to stay close, only to vanish so suddenly. She asked what she was supposed to do, so he tried to calm her down by telling her to relax, but she indignantly replied that there was no way she could stay calm. Suddenly, a hand was placed gently on Ka Li Wan's shoulder as Ryu Lin's tender smile came into view, and she softly began to advise the princess. She suggested that Ka Li Wan step back for now to regain her composure before challenging him again, to which Ka Li Wan asked in surprise if regaining composure meant physical training. She mentioned she had trained many times back at the OTGSC school, but Ryu Lin's tone turned mysterious as she leaned in to whisper in her ear. Ryu Lin told her it wasn't that kind of training, and whispered several secrets that made Ka Li Wan blush deeply, causing her to speak up in embarrassment. Ka Li Wan agreed to leave for now, but told Hua Luo to answer immediately when she called, while Ryu Lin bid her farewell as Jiu watched them with suspicion. He wondered what they had discussed, and once she was gone, he politely thanked Ryu Lin for coming to his rescue. She softly replied that anyone would be shocked by his sudden disappearance from the capital. And as Jiu yawned and prepared for bed, another person approached Hua Luo. This time, Xia Qi appeared in her everyday clothes, yet still looked incredibly beautiful, and with a hesitant charm, she made a request. She asked if he would take a walk with her, and since Jiu could not refuse, he quickly agreed to go with her right away. They walked together under the full moon, and as Jiu remarked on what a chaotic day it had been, he couldn't help but keep smiling awkwardly. An awkward silence fell between them, but he quickly found a topic to discuss, asking if the name Wan Pu Jai Si was actually a fake one. Xia Qi responded with a slight nod and explained that it was more accurately her baptismal name. She added that the festival honoring Wan Pu Jia is called Wan Pu Jai Si, which led Jiu to realize why it sounded so similar to the name of the goddess of mercy. He recalled his knowledge of the game's many deities, such as Ru Ben, the god of justice, and Wan Pu Jia, the goddess of mercy, whose face appeared clearly alongside a hidden figure. There was also O Bai Na, the goddess of nature and life, followed by another mysterious figure, Ma Jia, the god of light. His voice faltered slightly when mentioning the final deity, Akui La, the ruler of space and time, but Jiu quickly shifted his thoughts elsewhere. Since she served at the monastery of Wan Pu Jia, he remarked that the name Xia Qi was truly beautiful, a compliment that made her very happy while he remained lost in thought. He felt the name suited her perfectly, and then she shyly suggested that he could call her by that name whenever they were alone together. Sensing her affection, he agreed and promised that he would use that name whenever the two of them were by themselves. Jiu himself grew increasingly excited, thinking that things were progressing so well they might even reach the point of a kiss. However, just as that thought crossed his mind, something suddenly crashed down beside them, leaving both Jiu and Xia Qi stunned and confused. Xiao Fen appeared in a great hurry and told Hua Luo it was time to go, prompting him to sigh at how miserable his life had become. Meanwhile, Wan Ta Si stood before her demon army and ordered them to assemble, but as they bowed obediently, she wondered why they were all wearing only underwear. Kai quickly spoke up, explaining that they had no money, which led Wan Ta Si to grumble about the fact that they had already sold the entire castle. He shrugged and explained that payment was delayed due to an economic blockade, but she insistently ordered them to stop talking and just handle it. Si Wen then tried to convince her that it was impossible, but Wan Ta Si brushed it aside and decisively pointed forward. Brimming with confidence, she announced that their destination was the demon dragon's lair, as Rose Lochner gestured with her hand. Vantaz powerfully shouted the slogan to confront fear and devour everything before finally pointing toward the sky. and loudly proclaiming that the demon dragon must be hers.